7 years ago, the destruction of humanity occurred. Everyone fled helter-skelter in the face of the terrible disaster called the Dungeon Break. It was the opening of a dimensional gate of monsters into the human world. Various terrifying monsters emerged from that dungeon. And because of this incident, many humans died tragically, including the parents of Han Seong-yun, our protagonist this time. That day Seong-yun felt like he lost everything. He swore to himself with tears of blood that Han Seong-yun would become a hunter and tear those monsters apart. But unfortunately, 7 years later, today, Han Seong-yun found himself sitting contemplatively in the Memorial Park of Destruction, lamenting the reality that he had been expelled from the Hunter Training Center. Today, the head coach directly spoke to Han Seong-yun in front of everyone that Han Seong-yun could no longer be part of the training center. The head coach said that the awakened usually only needed a few months to complete training at facilities like theirs. And after that, they would immediately become hunters. But Han Seong-yun had been studying at that training center for too long, about 7 years. With cruelty, the head coach said that Han Seong-yun's talent was lower than garbage. So he expelled Han Seong-yun from the training center to preserve the training center's reputation. Han Seong-yun was shocked to be expelled like that. He remembered the wicked remarks of his colleagues who always mocked him every time he came to training. They considered Han Seong-yun a foolish loser who couldn't improve his stats for 7 years. Han Seong-yun was furious. He squeezed the can bottle in his hand until it was dented. He was frustrated why his stats weren't improving. At a time like this, Han Seong-yun heard a conversation between a child and his mother. The mother asked how their father died. The child answered that their father died saving people to the end. The child looked proud when stating the reason for his father's departure. Then the mother gently asked what the child should do if he experienced the same thing in the future. With full spirit, the little girl replied that she would become strong and never give up. Han Seong-yun felt as if he had been refreshed with cold water, immediately realizing. He approached the mother and her child who were hugging, then bowed deeply as a sign of respect. Then after that, Han Seong-yun ran fast, determined not to give up now considering he had been struggling for 7 long years. Under the dark sky and heavy rain, Han Seong-yun knocked on someone's door. It was the residence of the head of the training center. Han Seong-yun came to plead for another chance. At least he asked to accompany the hunter exam again because Han Seong-yun refused to give up like this. The head instead was furious. He stared at Han Seong-yun with red eyes, cursing at the young man. The head accused Han Seong-yun of behaving like this because he was unwilling to lose his money all this time. Han Seong-yun firmly explained that it wasn't about the money. But Han Seong-yun was hit hard until he fell into a pile of trash. With a fierce face, the head called Han Seong-yun a trash loser and left the young man alone in the rain. Han Seong-yun's condition was pathetic. He sat resignedly among the dirty trash piles, under the pouring rain. Han Seong-yun dearly wished he had a unique trait, or at least decent talent. Suddenly, the system appeared and praised his strong determination. Han Seong-yun was astonished to see the notification. Especially when suddenly the puddle of water under his feet turned into a vortex and engulfed him. Han Seong-yun screamed for help, but when the head came out, it was too late. The young man had disappeared from his place. Han Seong-yun entered a strange dimension that seemed to engulf him. Han Seong-yun almost ran out of breath. Finally, he entered a dimension without water and floated in it. In this place, the system said that the Tower of Trial had chosen suitable candidates from the Earth. Before his shock could settle, Han Seong-yun was asked to choose the difficulty level to receive a worthy reward. Although Han Seong-yun didn't understand what was happening, he didn't want to back down. His instinct led him to choose, and finally, he would be transferred to the first floor of the Tower of Trial. Han Seong-yun was teleported to a dry and hot desert. Han Seong-yun was given a sword as a weapon. Then the system informed me that the reward for completing this trial was a unique trait. Hearing that, Han Seong-yun was very happy. Because unique trait was something he had wanted for 7 years. When Han Seong-yun wanted to take his sword, suddenly the sand under his feet moved and a sand golem emerged as the difficult opponent chosen by Han Seong-yun. The young man was amazed to see his towering and terrifying opponent. Although so, the system gave him 9 more minutes to survive or defeat the golem. Because he was still shocked by the situation he faced, Han Seong-yun could only run when the large golem lifted one of its legs and almost stepped on him. Before the shock in his chest could settle, suddenly the system informed him that the penalty for failing this trial was death. Han Seong-yun continued to run from the golem. He wondered if he could escape and survive the golem just by running continuously. Looking back, Han Seong-yun realized that the monster's movement was quite fast despite its size. Han Seong-yun concluded that he couldn't keep running for 9 minutes non-stop given his weak stamina. Han Seong-yun tightly gripped the sword in his hand and realized that he should die from running, or at least die from fighting. But before he could seize the opportunity, the golem almost stepped on him. Suddenly, Han Seong-yun remembered the scornful gazes of the people who had belittled him. This young man felt they became giant golems wanting to crush him to pieces. Determination arose in Han Seong-yun's heart again. He didn't want to die because of running away. So the young man turned and ran towards the nearest dune while remembering the tactics he had learned for 7 years. Han Seong-yun intended to destroy the core simply called the life core of the monster. Because the core's location was usually a bit difficult to reach, Han Seong-yun had to climb the hill. When the monster chased him up the hill, Han Seong-yun immediately kicked the golem. Instantly, the monster rolled down from the top of the hill. Han Seong-yun didn't waste this opportunity. He jumped onto the golem's body and landed right near its core. Then with all his might, this young man struck the reddish stone that was the golem's core until it cracked. Han Seong-yun was surprised to see that the hard stone didn't immediately shatter as he had thought. When Han Seong-yun wanted to attack the core again, the monster realized its presence and immediately caught his body. Han Seong-yun screamed in pain as his body was squeezed by the golem monster. In this downfall, Han Seong-yun remembered the condescending looks of the people who had insulted him all this time. Suddenly, Han Seong-yun's determination returned. He lifted his sword with his blood-stained arm. Then, shouting for the disturbing voices in his ears to be quiet, Han Seong-yun threw the sword with all his might directly at the golem's core. The sand golem monster screamed in pain, coinciding with the information from the system stating that Han Seong-yun had successfully destroyed the monster's core. The sand golem was destroyed and Han Seong-yun fell. The young man rose from the sand with disbelief. He truly did not expect to have successfully defeated an opponent. Finally, Han Seong-yun could smile happily even though his body was full of wounds. The system congratulated Han Seong-yun for completing this trait. He was given a valuable point reward and the fast recovery skill that would quickly heal Han Seong-yun's wounds. Han Seong-yun was stunned to receive all those points. He didn't expect all his hard work for 7 years, all the insults he had to endure, to finally pay off with the completion of this mission. Now, Han Seong-yun had become a hunter. But Han Seong-yun realized that he could only achieve all of this if he could survive. Suddenly, a reddish-black mist emerged from where the golem died. Han Seong-yun was astonished to see the golem. When he wanted to touch it, the system appeared and asked if Han Seong-yun wanted to absorb the spirit of the sand golem. Despite his wonder, Han Seong-yun still pressed the yes button until the mist slowly entered his body. When Han Seong-yun finished absorbing the golem's energy, the system appeared again and congratulated him on his achievement. When all the mist had entered completely, the system informed Han Seong-yun that he now had 1/5 of a soul. Han Seong-yun fell silent with closed eyes. He felt the spirit within him. Now Han Seong-yun understood that he could store the spirit if he absorbed it. Without further ado, Han Seong-yun tried to use the energy from that spirit. Instantly, Han Seong-yun's strength and health increased significantly. The young man was amazed to feel his entire body filled with very strong energy. Han Seong-yun was delighted that his stats had truly increased. Considering he had difficulty increasing his stats even though he had tried and trained so hard. At this moment, once again the system appeared and explained the effect of the unique trait that Han Seong-yun had obtained. Namely, Han Seong-yun could absorb the spirit of dead monsters and use it as he pleased. Another effect of this trait was being able to permanently increase stats. Han Seong-yun smiled happily reading all that information. Then, a portal appeared and a notification from the system asked him to wait in the waiting room. Once again, though hesitantly, Han Seong-yun stepped into the portal because he felt he had no other choice. Han Seong-yun was thrown into a room. In this place, the wounds on Han Seong-yun's body, which looked severe, suddenly healed on their own. He returned to full health as before. Of course, Han Seong-yun was surprised to see this. Nevertheless, he still walked to the bed in the room to rest his body for a moment. As he lay in silence, Han Seong-yun began to wonder if he could get out of this mysterious tower. This young man was still puzzled as to why this tower chose him. Suddenly Han Seong-yun woke up remembering something. Han Seong-yun ordered the system to open information about the trial. Then appeared a countdown showing there were 23 hours left to go to the next challenge. Han Seong-yun wasn't surprised to realize there were still challenges from other trials. Then, Han Seong-yun ordered to open information about the community. At this moment, a chat room appeared containing many other members chatting about the trials and others. While Han Seong-yun was busy analyzing the conversation content, suddenly the admin entered and provided important information that points were like currency in the Tower of Trial. Without points, they would not get a drop of water. Han Seong-yun was astonished to read that information, especially when the admin said that points could only be obtained after completing the trial. Han Seong-yun was stunned reading that information. He imagined his dry body without water having to continue running to complete the trial to get points to buy water. Han Seong-yun rubbed his face in frustration. He thought he could become a hunter once he left that place. Finally, Han Seong-yun looked at the sword by the bed and realized he wouldn't be able to survive long with just a sword. So Han Seong-yun opened the store to buy a few more items. Han Seong-yun bought a small shield and began to practice with the shield and his sword. Han Seong-yun realized that all hunters would find it easier to learn skills they had learned before. That's why Han Seong-yun couldn't forget the fact that he was still far from the starting line compared to others. So he continued to practice to catch up with the others. After tired of practicing, Han Seong-yun lay on the floor. The young man's body glowed due to the healing effect from the waiting room that immediately healed his wounds, and returned Han Seong-yun's body to its original healthy condition. With this, Han Seong-yun became enthusiastic about continuing to practice. Suddenly, the young man's stomach growled with hunger. Han Seong-yun then opened the inventory from the system and took out the food reserves he had bought. At this point, Han Seong-yun realized that he had 40 points left because they were used to buy some things like weapons, water, and so on. Han Seong-yun had to get additional rewards soon to be able to be at ease. Perfectly, the time to go to the next trial was only 17 minutes left. At this point, Han Seong-yun saw that the chat room which had been lively was now empty because the participants must have been getting ready to enter the next trial. Initially, Han Seong-yun doubted whether he could pass the next trial. But a moment later, Han Seong-yun's blue eyes sparkled and he was determined to successfully conquer the next trial. Time passed and the countdown began. Finally, Han Seong-yun entered the trial on the second floor after deciding to go there. Han Seong-yun was teleported to a lush green forest. When he arrived at his destination, the system informed Han Seong-yun that his mission was to kill the leader of the ORC tribe within the specified time limit. Han Seong-yun was stunned when standing on a cliff right above the ORC village. He saw for himself how big, strong, and terrifying these creatures called ORCs were. The young man was terrified to think he had to go to that village and kill its leader alone. In the ORC village, these creatures didn't speak the human language. Instead, they grunted like pigs. These ORCs had big green bodies and long fangs. Han Seong-yun observed them from behind the bushes. The young man was analyzing the situation. If he fought against one ORC, it would already be difficult for a hunter, what about fighting many? To defeat all ORCs, Han Seong-yun needed at least a team consisting of hunter rank E. Han Seong-yun thought of retreating and making a better plan first. But then he remembered one way. Han Seong-yun gathered firewood and lit a fire. Then he kept one already lit stick for supplies. Han Seong-yun continued his plan by sneaking closer to the ORC village again. Han Seong-yun remembered that even though ORCs looked like lazy pigs, they were quite clever. Hunters always went hunting in the morning and they would return after sunset. So Han Seong-yun still had plenty of time. The only way to complete this trial, with the highest difficulty level and very limited strength, was with fire. Han Seong-yun ran around the ORC village when the guards were not alert and rested to eat. He ran fast and kept throwing lit firewood. Quickly the fire blazed, burning the ORC village. The ORC monsters panicked to put out the fire. If Han Seong-yun managed to kill some ORC workers, then he wouldn't have to worry when he had to face the ORC hunter later in the afternoon. Han Seong-yun hid and waited for one ORC worker who was alone. Then he stabbed the ORC and absorbed its soul core. With this, Han Seong-yun's skills and strength increased by a few percent. But a moment later, a big ORC guard appeared behind Han Seong-yun. Immediately he fought the monster without hesitation. Initially, Han Seong-yun was surprised and overwhelmed by this ORC monster. But then quickly he activated the stored soul to raise stats and add his strength again. Quickly, Han Seong-yun was able to defeat the big and tough ORC guard. After the opponent fell, Han Seong-yun immediately absorbed the soul core of the ORC guard while still being vigilant around him. As stamina, strength, and agility increased after absorbing the soul core of the ORC guard, Han Seong-yun immediately stepped into the ORC settlement calmly. The ORCs panicked to see a hunter entering their chaotic territory. But Han Seong-yun quickly analyzed that there were 5 ORCs, his opponents. Han Seong-yun only needed to be careful with the guards to kill the elder. Quickly, Han Seong-yun advanced against the ORC workers. He quickly approached the ORC elder. But suddenly an ORC guard was stopping his steps and hit Han Seong-yun with all his might. Han Seong-yun didn't want to give up. He kept fighting the big orc as his final obstacle. With all his might, he directed the sword to pierce the orc's chest until the creature disappeared. When Han Seong-yun had just defeated his opponent, the old elder immediately shot a fireball at him, making the young man shocked and immediately blocked the elder's attack with his shield. When the old elder thought Han Seong-yun couldn't survive his attack, he was shocked to find that the young man was still standing, staring angrily at him. Han Seong-yun managed to survive the fierce fire blast and got the fire resistance skill, ranking F. With this, Han Seong-yun cursed angrily at the old elder. He would not let the boss of the orcs escape. Once he evaded the enemy's attack, Han Seong-yun calmly approached the panicked orc elder. The orc tribe's leader then attacked Han Seong-yun again with a fiery blast from his staff. However, not only was it ineffective, but this time Han Seong-yun even cut off the orc elder's arm along with his staff. The old orc screamed in pain and immediately retreated into his tent. With a fierce expression, Han Seong-yun slowly followed the creature. As Han Seong-yun entered the tent, he saw the old elder embracing 2 small orcs as if protecting them. There was also a small orc crawling under Han Seong-yun's feet, seemingly begging for mercy. Han Seong-yun was reminded of the horrifying incident when his parents died. On that day, Han Seong-yun's parents protected him by urging him to flee and save himself. Lost in thought about the small orc beneath his feet, Han Seong-yun was startled when the orc suddenly pulled out a dagger and prepared to stab him. However, Han Seong-yun quickly struck the creature down. In his heart, Han Seong-yun resolved that even if he were to die and become a ghost, he would still mercilessly kill every monster he encountered. With this, Han Seong-yun completed the second-floor challenge. Upon returning to the waiting room, Han Seong-yun realized he could no longer use his old shield. The young man opened his hologram screen to search for information about other hunters. He noticed that half of the group had been killed by enemies. In the community chat, Han Seong-yun saw someone who could use a voucher to return to Earth. Sharing the information they gathered from the voucher question, the atmosphere in the chat room shifted to an information exchange hub, disregarding minor details as this was the main point. There were devices sold after completing the 5th floor that could be used to return to Earth for a few days, and there was also information stating that above the 7th floor, an expansion of the system would occur, and items capable of permanently returning one to Earth would be sold there. Han Seong-yun was excited to read this information. He imagined becoming a rank A hunter if he returned to Earth with his current abilities. Seong-yun opened his information screen and realized a significant increase in his stats. Now, he was confused because he wanted to return to Earth and showcase his abilities. Han Seong-yun felt saddened by the thought of having to pass through the 8th floor to return to Earth, especially since he nearly died on the 2nd floor. Trying to think positively, his stats had risen to the vulnerable 20s. First, Han Seong-yun discarded his torn clothes and absorbed the 5 souls he had obtained. After absorbing those 5 souls, Han Seong-yun's status on the hologram screen increased, making the young man realize his body was filled with power. Han Seong-yun immediately tested his newfound strength by running around the room, even circling the vast room ceiling. However, because he wasn't accustomed to his newfound power, Han Seong-yun ended up crashing into the wall. The young man realized there was a significant imbalance in his body due to the unexpected growth in strength. Satisfied with his current abilities, Han Seong-yun opened the shop and bought several new attributes such as a stronger shield. He also bought a sword and a robe with magic effects and sharpness enhancements. Now, Han Seong-yun had to adjust to the new items he purchased, so the young man tirelessly resumed his training. He wanted to become so strong that no one dared to approach or harm him. Finally, Han Seong-yun passed through the portal and entered the 3rd floor with a hard difficulty level. The theme of this trial was a duel. Han Seong-yun entered the cave and looked around in the darkness. The system appeared and announced that his opponent would appear in 5 seconds. Since the appearance of the opponent was announced by the system, it was likely to be similar to the golem monster that could come from anywhere. So, Han Seong-yun remained vigilant, readying himself. However, when the countdown finished, the enemy named Guardian Darkness had yet to appear. Suddenly, a black shadow behind Han Seong-yun moved and stabbed his body with a wide, terrifying smile. Han Seong-yun growled in annoyance, staring at the red eyes of his opponent, which turned out to be a doppelganger creature. Han Seong-yun was shocked to see the dark monster stab him. He quickly kicked the creature, but it managed to dodge swiftly. In the dark cave, Han Seong-yun faced this doppelganger creature. The monster had a dark face and body, complete with sharp teeth and a long, protruding tongue. Han Seong-yun glared at the creature angrily. He was relieved that his wounds could be healed with recovery skills. The young man was also relieved that he managed to fight back in time, or else his stomach would have surely been cut by the opponent's weapon. Now facing the creature, Han Seong-yun realized that the doppelganger's alertness matched his own. To find out if his opponent was copying his attack movements, Han Seong-yun had to fight. As they fought and Seong-yun managed to injure the creature, he realized that it not only mimicked its movements during battle but also copied his healing methods. Then, the monster ran towards Seong-yun quickly and copied its recent attacking movements. As Seong-yun understood these mimic movements, he managed to dodge in time. Then Seong-yun counterattacked using his weak swordsmanship movements. The young man blindly attacked the doppelganger, jumping here and there, and exchanging blows. Just when Seong-yun thought he had attacked correctly, suddenly the sword's blade was right in front of his face. Seong-yun was nearly stabbed by the enemy. Fortunately, he managed to fight back and block the attack in time. A moment later, the doppelganger resisted rapidly and fiercely. Seong-yun was surprised to realize that his opponent could become stronger in a short amount of time. But Seong-yun refused to give up. He used the special effect of his clothes to increase his speed. Seong-yun swiftly dashed towards the enemy. He attempted to injure the creature at high speed. Fortunately, Seong-yun's attack succeeded. However, the young man paid a high price as his right arm was severed. Seong-yun was shocked. He panicked and screamed, seeing his arm fall off so easily. But Seong-yun still hasn't given up. He tries to refocus and stares at the doppelganger who suddenly falls silent, not attacking. Seong-yun analyzes that his enemy is healing itself. Seeing an opportunity, Seong-yun immediately thinks of a way to defeat the enemy even without a sword and his right arm. Finally, Seong-yun decides to use his high-speed skill again. He will attempt a crazy method because, according to Seong-yun, it's better to die after trying until the end, rather than remaining silent and resigned to death. Seong-yun runs with all his might while shouting. He doesn't care even if his opponent opens its eyes and prepares to counterattack. Seong-yun keeps running until he finally crashes into the monster. He repeatedly slams the terrifying dark body against the cave wall until the doppelganger's body is irregularly crushed. At the moment when the monster is powerless to fight back, Seong-yun seizes the opportunity to decapitate the doppelganger with his shield. Thus, Seong-yun has won the duel on the third floor. After completing the trial on the third floor, Seong-yun enters the waiting room on the fourth floor. Here, Seong-yun's severed arm has returned. He immediately stretches and tries to punch the wall in front of him until it forms a wide dent. Seeing the mark of his punch, Seong-yun smiles happily, realizing that his arm has truly healed as before. Feeling relieved that his arm has fully healed, Seong-yun immediately ambushes the spirit soul of the doppelganger. This young man is amazed to feel how dense the doppelganger spirit is compared to other spirits he has absorbed. The doppelganger's spirit is so strong that it raises Seong-yun's rank to E. With Seong-yun's rank rising, his skills are also updated. Now, Seong-yun can absorb the skills of opponents he manages to defeat. Seong-yun is astonished to read this notification. Obtaining these skills is not easy. In previous matches, Seong-yun even had to risk his life first to obtain recovery skills. Seong-yun smiles happily. He realizes that even though his chances are not 100%, at least he has obtained this other stroke of luck. Seong-yun tries to enter the fourth floor room chat to see the conversation there. Inside the room chat, people begin to discuss the next trial. Some say that the challenge in the next trial is the integrate trial. It's a kind of teamwork challenge to win. Seong-yun suddenly widens his eyes when he sees someone providing information about the competition between hunters in the next trial. This means they must be willing to kill each other to win. Shortly after, Seong-yun finally enters another dimension to meet other challengers. The challenge on the fourth floor, in general, is to defeat the goblin until their king within the designated time. The penalty for this trial is death once again. Seong-yun is teleported to the fourth floor and meets two other people who will be his teammates. Seong-yun, who is not good at speaking, cannot start a conversation with the other two. Finally, a girl on Seong-yun's left side speaks up and introduces herself as Lee Hae-yeon. She is a hunter ranked E. Then, the big man on Seong-yun's right side introduces himself as a close combat fighter named Lee Seong-hoon. He is a hunter ranked D. Seeing Seong-hoon's arrogant attitude, Seong-yun thinks that this man must have been a hero in his team before. Now it's time for Seong-yun to introduce himself. Humbly, Seong-yun says that he is not a hunter and only a newcomer. This immediately makes Seong-hoon smirk at Seong-yun. This big man immediately tells Seong-yun to step aside and not disturb him later. A short debate ensues between them. Essentially, Seong-hoon belittles Seong-yun greatly. Nevertheless, the young man tries not to be intimidated considering he has often heard similar taunts before. Seong-yun tries to hold back his retort because he sees Seong-hoon as someone competent enough to be responsible for his words. Besides, in this trial, skills are the most important thing. They then enter the large gate as a team. Once inside, they are warned to complete the mission as a team and to finish it before the other teams. As they enter the gate, small goblins immediately swarm in to attack. Seong-hoon, who stands at the front, becomes overwhelmed by facing the goblins alone. He orders Seong-yun to immediately fight and help him. This infuriates Seong-yun even more because he has already cleared the goblins around him alone. Once again, Seong-hoon scolds Hae-yeon for not being able to provide him with a buff. Seong-hoon is truly overwhelmed. Finally, Seong-yun decides to help the big man. He swiftly moves closer to Seong-hoon. At that moment, Hae-yeon realizes that the goblins on her side are no longer attacking. They have all been defeated by Seong-yun alone. Hae-yeon is astonished to see the corpses of goblins scattered around her. The goblins keep pressing Seong-yun, making him angry because they have various dangerous attacks. When Seong-hoon's sword is thrown away, and he is almost struck by one of the goblins, Seong-yun suddenly steps forward and strikes the goblins alone. Seong-hoon is stunned by Seong-yun's agile movements. Once the goblins are all defeated, Seong-yun stands proudly in front of Seong-hoon and tells him to step back and stay away from him. Because Seong-hoon's presence greatly disturbs Seong-yun now. After saying that, with sharp and determined eyes, Seong-yun swiftly runs to slash the remaining goblins. This makes his two companions gaping in admiration at Seong-yun. After slaughtering a group of goblins alone, Seong-yun achieves the Hunter Goblin milestone. After all the goblins are dead, he absorbs their souls while walking casually. Seong-yun realizes that his companions do not notice his unique trait. So, he can absorb their souls without any problem. By using the stored souls, Seong-yun's stats rise again. His stats will increase permanently and his points increase. Seong-yun also obtains the skill possessed by the goblins, which is the Field of View. This means his visual acuity will greatly improve with this skill. Quietly, Seong-yun smiles happily to get this skill. He then approaches his friends and says that he will lead the team. This time, Seong-hoon does not object because he has seen for himself how great Seong-yun is in battle. After everyone agrees that Seong-yun will lead, they explore the area to go deeper. But the deeper they go, the quieter the area becomes. Hae-yeon is even amazed to see such an overly quiet situation because goblins were continuously appearing before. Suddenly, Seong-yun runs quickly to a place. This startles his two companions, and they prepare themselves, suspecting an enemy will attack. However, they only find the scattered corpses of goblins around a fountain. Seong-yun touches the blood of one of the goblins and realizes that they have just died. Elsewhere, there is a fierce battle between goblins and another hunter. Even though the number of goblins is greater, they are still defeated by one of the hunters. The man casually climbs onto the goblin's shoulders and says he's tired of killing goblins since earlier. Then he jumps, and one of the goblins beheads his comrade. After that, the hunter attacks the goblins until they're all dead. While his teammate only praises him from the side. Because that tough hunter feels like he's working alone, he tells one of his teammates to open the entrance gate to the boss's headquarters on the 4th floor. When the large gate is about to be opened, a dimensional wall suddenly appears, trapping them in the area. Only then does a notification from the system appear, stating that they can only fight the boss after successfully defeating the other teams. They are surprised to see this notification. Especially when they see Seong-yun's team approaching. Seong-yun stares sharply at his opponents. He realizes that if he doesn't want to die, he must be willing to take the risk of killing the opposing team. They face each other, ready to start the fight. Seong-yun, who runs first towards his enemy, is determined that he will now do anything to survive and prove himself. Seong-yun swiftly launched towards the opponent. The tough-looking hunter, who seemed to be the leader of the opposing team, immediately instructed his teammate Lee Jinho to fully deploy the shield, creating a protective wall around them. Unfazed by the shimmering protective barrier, Seong-yun leaped and attacked the shield with his sword until it shattered. The three opponents were thrown into chaos, but Seong-yun wasted no time. He launched again towards his opponent, delivering a series of surprising attacks. Witnessing Seong-yun's swift movements left his teammates gaping in silence. The formidable hunter from the opposing team was not easily brought down. A fierce battle ensued between them. Seong-yun was amazed at how his opponent could swiftly parry his moves. The young man attempted to attack from behind, but once again, strangely, the man countered his moves. At this point, Seong-yun noticed a peculiar glow in the man's eyes. It turned out his unique eyes could anticipate the opponent's sword movements. The enemy leaped away, but Seong-yun didn't give him time to rest. He immediately threw his shield to block the man's vision. Then, swiftly, he lunged towards his opponent and stabbed him without hesitation. After his opponent fell, the system congratulated them for completing the special mission. Once the battle was over, Seong-yun and his comrades stood amidst the enemy corpses. Haeyeon noticed Seong-yun's trembling arm and asked if he was alright. With a grim expression, Seong-yun replied that he was fine. However, Haeyeon was certain the young man was in shock from having to kill humans. Seong-yun instructed his comrades to defeat the fourth-floor boss, to which they readily agreed. So, with his own hands, Seong-yun battled the fourth-floor boss, which turned out to be a large goblin. After defeating the goblin boss, Seong-yun calmly descended. Seeing Seong-yun's swift dispatching of his opponents left Seong-hun astonished, regarding the young man as a monster. As usual, after completing a mission, the system would appear to congratulate them. Not forgetting, the holographic screen displayed how many points Seong-yun had earned after completing the mission. So, after the mission was over, they would be transferred back to the lobby. Upon arriving at the lobby, Seong-hun bid farewell and left, leaving only Seong-yun and Haeyeon. Seong-yun initiated a conversation, hoping the girl would return safely. But Haeyeon remained silent. Suddenly, she stated that Seong-yun had only done what was necessary to kill the three rival hunters. It was something Seong-yun had to do in desperate times like now. And if Seong-yun wasn't willing to do it, then Haeyeon would do it for them. Seong-yun was taken aback by her words. Finally, he could smile with relief. Before leaving, Haeyeon sent a friend request to Seong-yun and advised him to find Lee Haeyeon from the White Silver Guild when they returned to Earth. However, Seong-yun remained silent without a response. After Haeyeon left, Seong-yun looked back and had to decide whether to absorb the souls of the three hunters he had defeated. The young man looked despondent. He knew that by absorbing human souls, he could become greedy and merciless. He could cross a line because of that attitude, and he wouldn't be able to turn back forever. But ultimately, Seong-yun chose to absorb the souls of the three hunter humans he had defeated. Because he wanted to become stronger, but he didn't want to kill humans to achieve his goal. Unless the situation forced him, Seong-yun would do it. Because he had no retreat. Seong-yun's dream of becoming a hunter had brought forth his deepest desires. The Tower of Trial had given him an opportunity, so Seong-yun planned to make the most of it. Seong-yun immediately entered the fifth-floor lobby after absorbing the souls. In this lobby, the system had been expanded, and there was a system that would evaluate the rank of each challenger. Seong-yun was intrigued by this new system. So, he tried to write his name to check his rank. Soon, the names of those who had achieved the rank in the fourth-floor trial appeared. Seong-yun searched for his name on the list and found that he had achieved rank 16. Seong-yun was surprised to see his relatively high rank. The system provided information that challengers in the top 50 would be called pioneers. For those called pioneer, they would gain benefits on the 8th floor. If Seong-yun could stay in the top 50 until the 8th floor, he would receive the privilege called Halo. After reading the information satisfactorily, Seong-yun immediately absorbed the souls of the enemies he had defeated. After absorbing 4 souls at once, at this point, Seong-yun felt he had surpassed the limits of an ordinary human. Seong-yun smiled happily, feeling the significant increase in his body. Then Seong-yun bought a return stone from the store in the lobby. This stone could bring players back to their original location for 3 days. To test the stone, Seong-yun planned to bring his belongings as well. Without wasting time, Seong-yun immediately used the special stone to return to Earth. As Seong-yun decided to return to Earth, he was suddenly sucked into a large hole. Seong-yun screamed in terror as the lower part of his body was continuously sucked into the large hole as if he would be turned into a liquid substance first. Finally, the transfer process was completed. Seong-yun saw the light from his room window when he opened his eyes. He realized he was lying comfortably in his bed. To be sure, Seong-yun got up and looked around. He saw his computer desk and some notes he had made. Finally, Seong-yun was sure he had returned to Earth. The first thing Seong-yun would do upon returning to Earth was to sleep. He was very happy to be able to lie back in his comfortable bed. But then the young man realized that his body odor was very strong. Seong-yun decided to take a bath first. As he was about to get out of bed, he accidentally stepped on something. Upon inspection, it turned out to be the shield, sword, and clothes he had brought from the Tower of Trial. Seong-yun enjoyed looking at his weapons. At first, he only wanted to bring them along for fun. He never expected to bring them to Earth. Seong-yun started to worry about this situation because if many people could bring their attributes back to Earth, it would mean there would be more weapons on Earth. This would lead to a drastic drop in prices for hunter supplies. Seong-yun wanted to sell the weapons as quickly as possible. But only people with hunter qualifications could sell weapons. So Seong-yun took his phone and tried to contact someone he knew to help him take the hunter test. Elsewhere, Chairman Huang was observing his people busy training with each other. Suddenly, the chairman's tough phone rang. When answered, it turned out to be Seong-yun. Chairman Huang thought Seong-yun was calling to ask for a refund. Quickly, Seong-yun said that Chairman Huang didn't need to refund the money if he helped Seong-yun take the hunter test. The chairman questioned Seong-yun's ability because, in the previous test, this young man had received the lowest grade, an F. But because Seong-yun said he would pay extra for membership, the chairman immediately fell silent and happily accepted the offer. After all, who would refuse money? Seong-yun smiled upon hearing the chairman's response, and finally, they agreed to take the test together. That day, Seong-yun took a shower and prepared himself for the hunter test. While staring at his reflection in the mirror, Seong-yun was surprised to see his now muscular and well-built body. He realized his body had changed slightly since he became stronger. When ready, and stepping out of his apartment, Seong-yun met a new neighbor girl. Seong-yun greeted her, making the girl smile happily. They exchanged greetings briefly before Seong-yun continued on his way, leaving his blushing neighbor behind, marveling at how handsome this young man had become. That day, Seong-yun stood on the roadside for quite some time looking for a taxi. As he couldn't find one, Seong-yun decided to use a crazy method to get to the test location. Seong-yun jumped from one rooftop to another. He laughed joyfully, realizing he would arrive there faster than by taking a vehicle. At the Hunter Association building, Seong-yun was awaited by Chairman Huang and another man. First, Seong-yun exchanged news with Chairman Huang. He mentioned that he was busy dealing with mysterious matters now, making Chairman Huang curious. But as they were about to inquire further, their conversation was interrupted by another man. This man turned out to be Inspector Kim. He would be responsible for evaluating Seong-yun's test. First, Inspector Kim told Seong-yun that he wouldn't conduct the theory test because Chairman Huang had already observed him for a while. So Seong-yun could proceed directly to the combat test. They then entered the arena together. Seong-yun descended into the arena, while the other two observed from above. Before the match began, Chairman Huang asked Inspector Kim to make Seong-yun fail as quickly as possible. The inspector immediately asked Seong-yun to choose the difficulty level from 1 to 10. Although appearing calm, Inspector Kim had already prepared a monster that would immediately defeat a sword user. Before choosing the difficulty level, Seong-yun recalled his past. He used to always choose the lowest difficulty level and would immediately lose to a small goblin because he was still very weak at that time. But now, Seong-yun chose level 10 difficulty, which surprised Chairman Huang. Knowing that the person who had belittled him for so long was shocked by his choice, Seong-yun deliberately looked up, smiling mockingly at the chairman. Once the difficulty level was confirmed, the test began immediately. A phoenix appeared with its blazing body. Before anything happened, Seong-yun was frozen, unable to move because he was affected by the phoenix's special skill. Meanwhile, from the observation area, Chairman Huang smiled cunningly. No matter how tough Seong-yun would fight later, the chairman was confident he wouldn't win, as his sword had been sabotaged by Chairman Huang until it cracked. Chairman Huang couldn't wait to see Seong-yun fall to the ground unaware of his surroundings. Chairman Huang reminisced when he successfully passed the hunter exam. At that time, he felt like the strongest person in the world, but he quickly realized the gap between himself and his other competitors was widening. In the end, Chairman Huang couldn't keep up with them and eventually gave up. According to Chairman Huang, in the hunter world, being born with talent was everything. So he stopped accepting that reality and stopped trying. Chairman Huang thought that humans would give up when they encountered an insurmountable wall. Chairman Huang believed everyone would. So he suspected Han Seong-yun would act the same sooner or later. In the arena, Seong-yun was surprised when his sword broke just from a small touch from the phoenix's leg. The man knew that no matter how low-grade a weapon was, it shouldn't break so easily. Seong-yun suspected one person. He glanced at Chairman Huang, who smiled mockingly at Seong-yun, making the young man even more determined to defeat the enemy without a weapon. Seong-yun then jumped from the other side of the wall. Just as the phoenix was about to spew fire, Seong-yun quickly slid towards it and stabbed one of its eyes with his broken sword. This caused the phoenix to panic. It flew aimlessly until it collided with a beam right above Chairman Huang. After that, the phoenix flew aimlessly again before crashing to the ground. With this, the test was declared over, and Seong-yun was declared the winner. After the test ended, Seong-yun received an official Hunter Rank C identification card. The identification card was handed over by an association office employee. While receiving the card, Seong-yun asked if he could now enter the world and sell items officially. With a friendly smile, the employee said that of course, Seong-yun could. Meanwhile, in a room, Chairman Huang was angrily scolding the office director. He was upset because Seong-yun passed the test. The director refused to be blamed because he had done his best to sabotage Seong-yun's test. While they were busy arguing, Seong-yun entered proudly and announced that he had obtained his own hunter's license. Without hesitation, Seong-yun entered and stood right in front of Chairman Huang. As a formality, Chairman Huang congratulated Seong-yun for officially becoming a hunter. But Seong-yun didn't accept the congratulations. Instead, he brought up Chairman Huang's C rank, implying that Chairman Huang was the one who should be called a failure, not him. Upon hearing Seong-yun's provocation, Chairman Huang immediately became furious. He directed his fist at Seong-yun but managed to be avoided by the young man. Instead, Chairman Huang was hit hard in the stomach. Then Seong-yun slapped Chairman Huang's face hard as a form of revenge. As Seong-yun prepared to leave, he was stopped by the association director and asked to join as an exclusive hunter in the association. Seong-yun was promised a high salary if he joined them. Instead of being interested, Seong-yun said he knew about the manipulation of the test difficulty done by the director. Seong-yun looked sharply at the panicked director. Seong-yun said he wouldn't make a big deal out of it, but he wouldn't make a contract with someone he couldn't trust like Director Kim. Then Seong-yun walked away, leaving the stunned director alone. 2 days later, Seong-yun saw the news on his laptop saying that people were suspicious of rumors about them being kidnapped to the Tower of Trial. Seong-yun closed the laptop and looked at the phone screen to check the results of his good sales. This young man had made good use of his 3 days very productively. Finally, the system appeared and informed Seong-yun that he would return to the Tower of Trial shortly. When he was pulled back into the tower dimension, Seong-yun was no longer surprised. Instead, he felt happy to feel the sensation of being pulled back into this dimension again. Although he would be busy when he returned to the Tower of Trial. Once free from the large hole, Seong-yun rose again on the bed in the lobby on the 5th floor. Upon waking up, Seong-yun realized he couldn't use items freely both inside the tower and in the real world. So for the time being, Seong-yun would keep the box and the stone he brought into his inventory. In this 5th floor store, there was a magic power potion that allowed Seong-yun to see the details of any object, as well as knowing the honesty of someone's words. Seong-yun was happy to read the information about the item, so he would buy it. After that, he also spent some points to buy a new sword and a minimalist purple shield. Although both items were quite expensive, at least the effects provided were worth it to defeat enemies. Seong-yun immediately tried out his 2 items for practice. After sufficient practice, Seong-yun asked the system to open the gate to the 5th floor trial. On the 5th floor, the difficulty level was hard. The completion mission was to defeat the wolf boss. The prize for this trial was the wolf person headband, while the punishment for failure was death. Without wasting time, Seong-yun immediately slaughtered the gray wolves that were visible. Seong-yun grumbled a little because his opponents this time were very weak. Until finally, several large white wolves appeared in front of Seong-yun. The wolves roared and emitted a terrifying killing aura. Instead of being afraid of being surrounded by a pack of large wolves, Seong-yun smiled happily. This was the challenge from the Tower of Trial that he had always anticipated. The ferocious pack of wolves immediately rushed towards Seong-yun, who jumped at them. Adrenaline rushed into Seong-yun's chest as he finally got this thrilling and enjoyable challenge. While slashing his opponents with his sword, Seong-yun felt himself becoming crazier as he became addicted to the terrifying fight. Seong-yun continued to slash the ferocious wolves without hesitation. Until finally, there were no wolves left around Seong-yun. The young man then absorbed the spirits of the big wolves to improve his skills. Seong-yun hoped that with this, he would soon gain another special trait. Then, Seong-yun walked towards the den of the wolf boss. But strangely, around the corridor, Seong-yun saw scattered corpses of large wolves. Seong-yun approached one of the corpses to find sword wounds. There were even new scratches around the wolf's corpse. To analyze the traces of the attack, Seong-yun used the Eye of Truth skill. With this skill, he found out that the scratches were caused by a very strong aura attack. As Seong-yun fell silent and pondered what could have caused the attack marks, suddenly he heard the roar of a wolf. Sensing that the wolf was nearby, Seong-yun slid, searching for the source of the sound. When he got close, Seong-yun could sense the presence of another stronger wolf. But strangely, the wolf boss had been thrown, defeated by someone else. The system announced that the wolf boss had died. However, the cause was still being investigated by the system. While waiting, Seong-yun was stunned to see the corpse of a large wolf human lying in front of him. Just as the analysis finished, a large figure wearing heavy iron armor appeared. He was an intruder detected by the system from another dimension gate. Now Seong-yun's main mission had changed. Seong-yun's new mission was to kill the interdimensional intruder. Seong-yun was shocked to read the notification on the system. He only now realized that the Tower of the Trial also existed in another dimension. As Seong-yun was trying to digest what was happening, the Iron Warrior pointed his sword at Seong-yun. This meant he was openly challenging Seong-yun to fight. As usual, instead of being afraid, Seong-yun smiled happily at the prospect of facing an unusual opponent. Seong-yun didn't expect to find himself in a situation where other challengers would try to steal his goal now. But Seong-yun felt relieved because the notification message in the system didn't say that he had failed the mission. The enemy in armor finally attacked after taunting Seong-yun. As the enemy approached at high speed, Seong-yun immediately thought of a solution by throwing the carcass of a wolf monster toward the enemy. But the large wolf carcass was quickly slashed by the cunning man. Seong-yun didn't want to admit defeat to the mysterious man's strength. So Seong-yun fought back with the speed he possessed. Now, within seconds, Seong-yun was standing behind this mysterious man, saying, "Got you." Seong-yun immediately slashed the mysterious man's armor with his sword, but strangely, the armor not only remained intact but wasn't even scratched. Seong-yun was astonished. Especially when the mysterious man turned his words around and said, "Got you, back." Seong-yun attempted to block the opponent's attack with his shield, bought at a high price. However, eventually, the shield couldn't withstand the opponent's attack and broke. Seong-yun was thrown far away, crashing into the cave wall. Even his left arm was broken. His condition looked quite severe. The mysterious man talked about class invading. Curious, Seong-yun interrupted his opponent and asked what class invading meant. Seong-yun looked very distraught because this was happening to him. Seeing Seong-yun in such distress, the mysterious man finally decided to explain to Seong-yun what class invasion was all about. So, starting from floor 8, there's a system expansion called class invading. In the 8th floor store, participants can buy tickets to disrupt other people's trials. That's why this mysterious figure descended to the 5th floor to disrupt Seong-yun's trial. Then Seong-yun asked why the mysterious man referred to this dimension as the barbarian dimension. As if he came from another world. The man in the armor replied that it was indeed true. Seong-yun tried to use the Eye of Truth skill to see if the man was lying. The mysterious figure in the armor was not lying to Seong-yun. Feeling irritated to be judged by a barbarian, the mysterious man intended to attack Seong-yun. But because Seong-yun had gotten the explanation he wanted, it was his turn to explain his secret technique. So Seong-yun could endure the pain in his hand because of the pain-tolerant skill he possessed. In other words, Seong-yun endured it on purpose. Because if he released his severely injured arm, the fast recovery skill would automatically activate and heal his wounds. So Seong-yun deliberately pretended to look pitiful to his opponent, willing to say all the information Seong-yun wanted. The mysterious figure was angry at being played by Seong-yun. He immediately infused his sword with his powerful aura. He wanted to kill Seong-yun right away. On the other hand, Seong-yun stepped on the ground, causing it to tremble, and his sword rose upward. Immediately, Seong-yun caught his sword, and with a confident smile, he said that his full power would continue to increase. Seong-yun then used his high-speed skill to move like lightning to attack the enemy, who looked amazed at his many skills. Nevertheless, the mysterious man still tried to block Seong-yun's relentless attacks. They continued to clash in every corner of the cave until finally, the mysterious man couldn't bear it and directed his sword, full of strong aura, at Seong-yun. Fortunately, Seong-yun managed to dodge in time. The sword struck a large rock, splitting it with one blow. Seong-yun realized how dangerous it would be if he were hit by an aura attack of such high rank. But realizing that his stats were higher, Seong-yun believed he could evade it. The problem now was the impenetrable armor. Seong-yun struggled greatly to destroy the armor with his current abilities. But again, Seong-yun refused to give up. He continued to attack the mysterious man with the armor from all angles. Finally, the mysterious man was struck by a very strong electric current and trembled violently. Even the mysterious man vomited blood from behind his armor. It was a special effect of Seong-yun's sword that would paralyze his opponent with a strong enough attack. Seong-yun smiled happily because his long-awaited skill had finally appeared. After being hit hard by Seong-yun's sword skill, the mysterious man in armor fell to the ground. He was powerless, blood seeping from beneath his armor mask. Seong-yun looked at his enemy with a contemptuous gaze. Meanwhile, the mysterious man continued to grumble. The man behind the mask said that he should have won under normal circumstances. He asked Seong-yun how a challenger from the 5th floor could have so many skills. Seong-yun replied that the man was reckless because he only relied on armor and high-level skills without tactics. Seong-yun then raised his sword high to finish the fight between them. But the mysterious one tried to stall by offering Seong-yun information. Unfortunately, Seong-yun no longer needed that information, so without hesitation, he swung his sword to slash the opponent's neck. Blood spurted, hitting Seong-yun's hand. The young man thought he was becoming increasingly numb to killing his opponent. But if Seong-yun hesitated and felt uncomfortable every time he was about to kill his enemy, it would be a big problem for him. Finally, Seong-yun received a notification that he had completed the challenge on the 5th floor. At that moment, the large body and armor of the mysterious man slowly disappeared. Seong-yun hurriedly absorbed his opponent's spirit until there was nothing left. After absorbing his opponent's soul, Seong-yun's proficiency had increased by 15%. Seong-yun was relieved he absorbed his opponent's soul on time. But he wondered why the reward notification hadn't appeared for a while. Finally, the system notification stated that the previously prepared rewards were not suitable for the trial challenge Seong-yun had just won. So all the rewards would be changed. Seong-yun was surprised when he received a reward for rank A. Moreover, he received achievement points as well as a considerable bonus point. Seong-yun understood that the rank C reward had been changed to rank A because the change in the trial difficulty level indicated how strong the challenger was. Seong-yun smiled happily at receiving the rank A reward. Seong-yun then returned to the 6th floor lobby. As usual, after entering the lobby, all wounds and abnormalities disappeared. After that, Seong-yun's name entered the hunter rank order list. The first thing Seong-yun did upon entering the lobby was to take off his clothes and check his inventory. Seong-yun stored his clothes and weapons, then sat on the edge of the lobby, thinking about the dimensional inventory. Seong-yun couldn't afford to be careless. Seong-yun wanted to save his question voucher until the 8th floor. At that moment, the system appeared and asked Seong-yun to ask because there was an administrator who would answer his question. Seong-yun then asked about the floor invasion. And could he be notified directly if there was an invasion? Seong-yun sent his message, and shortly afterward, he received an answer. Seong-yun was slightly surprised by the quick response. Then he read that the floor invasion was a system where challengers could invade other challengers' trials in the first 10 classes. And the system could only be used after reaching the 8th floor, so it couldn't be used now. Then Seong-yun wanted to read more about the climbing breaker information but was denied access. So Seong-yun closed the hologram screen disappointedly. Seong-yun continued to take items from his inventory. He took a chest and a stone he bought from Earth. The young man used the chest to repair his broken shield. Seong-yun was pleased with the chest's performance. Then he used the cleaning stone, which made his body shine. The stone could clean the user's body to every point. Seong-yun was very satisfied with the stone despite its high price. As the time to enter the 6th floor trial dimension was still quite some time away, Seong-yun decided to check the trial champion rankings and the conversations of others in the community. When checking the trial champion rankings, Seong-yun was surprised to see his name suddenly rise rapidly from number 16 to rank 3. Seong-yun felt closer to gaining the benefits of continuous pioneer. Next, Seong-yun entered the community page to check for the latest information from other hunters' discussions. Seong-yun was surprised they were discussing achievements in the killing. As if they didn't care whether to kill or rob opponents or comrades. Seong-yun saw that the community conversation was chaotic now. It's as if everyone was looking at each other with hatred. Suddenly someone informed me that the person who provided information about the 4th floor trial changed his name to Princess Sudi. He was the one making other hunters wary and stabbing each other. Seong-yun was annoyed to hear that name and wouldn't forget it. Not long after, the time to enter the 6th floor trial dimension was opened. As usual, upon entering the portal, Seong-yun would receive information about the difficulty level, time limit, and consequences of failure. After passing through the portal, he saw a vast sea. Above it were many wide platforms as the participants' entrance. Seong-yun stood tall and calm as he gazed out at the expanse of the sea. Then a notification appeared that his colleague would be appearing shortly. Strangely, after the portal opened, Seong-yun's teammate didn't enter the 6th floor. The young man waited in confusion for his colleague's arrival. Suddenly, a spear swiftly shot towards him. Though startled, Seong-yun managed to catch the spear just in time. He pulled it forcefully, revealing a young man at its end. The young man fell to the floor, and Seong-yun immediately scolded him for attacking his teammate, Seong-yun himself. But the young man smirked disdainfully at Seong-yun. He loudly proclaimed that killing was the easiest way to achieve success. Seong-yun was shocked to hear the young man's words. He became angry and asked loudly if he thought it was acceptable to kill his teammate for power. The young man accused Seong-yun of hypocrisy after hearing his words. He shouted for Seong-yun to look around before making comments. Apparently, around them, people were killing each other, including their teammates. Screams of pain, cries, and desires to kill echoed around Seong-yun. This left the young man speechless as his teammate and rival accused him of being hypocritical. Moving on to 2 men shaking hands on the left side of Seong-yun's trail. A short and stout man and a chubby man decided to work together unaffected by other participants stabbing each other. The chubby man lost his vigilance and ended up being stabbed in the heart by the short one. The friendly face of the short man turned fierce as he successfully deceived and stabbed his victim with a sharp object. From his position, Seong-yun watched the events in bewilderment. Feeling distracted and vulnerable, his opponent once again directed a small weapon at Seong-yun. But this time, he received no mercy from Seong-yun. The young man was immediately stabbed back by Seong-yun using his spear. The foolish man was astonished that Seong-yun could move faster than him. Unfortunately, his foolishness and admiration came too late. He died at the hands of Seong-yun. With his opponent dead, Seong-yun gained his achievement, and his strength increased. Seong-yun looked around again. He understood that the challenge in this trial was a combination. But he didn't expect such a challenge in the Tower of Trial. However, Seong-yun had to remain logical and consider that all the challenges in this trial were just events for him to win. In one arena, an ugly man proudly shouted that the trial was made for him, as he possessed magic with the attribute of water. He claimed to have countered his opponent's attacks with his skills. Suddenly, the ugly man noticed Seong-yun's swift appearance. He immediately became wary. He thought Seong-yun wouldn't be able to break his shield, which he claimed could withstand any attack. However, the shield couldn't withstand Seong-yun's immense power. With ease, Seong-yun destroyed the shield with a single strike. Thus, the ugly wizard was defeated by Seong-yun decisively. His soul now belonged to this young man. As Seong-yun absorbed his opponent's soul, he sat cross-legged waiting for another challenger. He didn't want to fight other challengers who seemed stronger on other tiles. Seong-yun thought that the trial on the 6th floor made him think about many things, suspecting others, the reality of low-ranked challengers, and the dark side of the Tower of Trial. However, Seong-yun understood that misplaced pity was true hypocrisy. Although Seong-yun could forgive someone who came to challenge him and tell them to go to another tile, someone would still end up dead. As Seong-yun was still busy contemplating a solution to this chaos, suddenly, an opponent entered his tile area. Seong-yun turned around to see 4 people walking calmly towards him. A yellow-haired man standing in the middle started a conversation with a disdainful smile directed at Seong-yun. Boldly, Seong-yun stated that the 4 of them were just shameless thugs who formed a team to kill others for achievements. Upon hearing Seong-yun's words, it was evident that the man with yellow hair was offended. So, with a sly smile spreading across his face, the man with yellow hair ordered his two companions to kill Seong-yun. He was the one attacking from the side of the man with yellow hair, but Seong-yun was already alert with a sword in hand. Suddenly, the black-haired enemy on the other side attacked Seong-yun with the skill of heart solidarity. With this skill, Seong-yun felt a terrible throbbing in his chest. Before he could fully digest everything, the black-haired opponent stabbed the palm of his hand with a dagger, causing Seong-yun to feel excruciating pain in his palm and drop the sword he was holding. The opponent's special skill made Seong-yun feel half the pain that his opponent felt. Just as Seong-yun's pain was mitigated by the fast recovery skill, suddenly the large, bald-bodied enemy attacked by splashing seawater on Seong-yun. After being hit by the water, Seong-yun's strength decreased by a few %, as did his ability and stamina. Seong-yun received a penalty for this. The young man now knew that being hit by water would incur penalties. With Seong-yun's strength diminished, the four of them advanced simultaneously to attack Seong-yun. At this point, it must be the worst situation for any other hunter. However, a smile spread across Seong-yun's face as he believed that he was not just an ordinary hunter who could be easily defeated. Next, we see a terrifying smile on Seong-yun's face as he faces two opponents at once. Two armored men attack Seong-yun from his left and right sides. The young man said that the opponent's plan to disarm him and lower his stats was quite good. But they made one big mistake. As he said this, Seong-yun caught the face of one of his enemies and slammed his head until it was crushed. While attacking, Seong-yun said that their mistake was choosing him as their opponent. The other three were stunned by Seong-yun's strength. Seong-yun immediately achieved success by defeating an opponent with just one blow. He also gained the skill of contempt for the weak. This means Seong-yun's stats will automatically increase if his opponents fail to surpass his strength stat. Another man wearing armor immediately attacked when Seong-yun seemed distracted. He threw his sword with all his might towards Seong-yun, but the young man quickly moved behind the bald man and kicked his head forcefully. Before his opponent collapsed, Seong-yun added a strong kick to his head, ensuring he wouldn't survive. The large-bodied man fell right in front of his two panicked companions. Seong-yun calmly walked towards them. The black-haired man asked the yellow-haired one what they should do. Suddenly, the yellow-haired one ruthlessly cut off his companion's left leg without hesitation. The black-haired man screamed in pain as his leg was severed. Likewise, Seong-yun immediately fell in pain because they were still bound by the black-haired man's skill. Seong-yun stared sharply at his enemy. He remembered well that the only thing they shared was pain. Seong-yun was grateful because the damage between them wasn't divided. But the problem was that Seong-yun's movements would be restricted if this continued. The black-haired man continued to scream in pain. He cursed his companion for doing this to him. However, suddenly the yellow-haired one mercilessly brandished a sword right in front of his face. Without mercy, the yellow-haired one continued to stab the black-haired one while threatening Seong-yun not to approach him. The yellow-haired one screamed with a panicked face that he would pierce the body of the black-haired one if Seong-yun dared to approach. Meanwhile, Seong-yun could only stand frozen, feeling pain coursing through his entire body. He could still move thanks to his pain tolerance skill. But if this continued, it could be dangerous. Seong-yun thought the only way to stop this was to quickly kill the owner of the heart solidarity skill. So, Seong-yun threw his shield forcefully, and a powerful slash occurred. The object landed directly on the neck of the black-haired one, instantly killing him. Seong-yun also felt an incredible pain as the youth's neck was severed. He fell because of the intense pain he felt. The yellow-haired one saw an opportunity and immediately attacked Seong-yun with sword. Unfortunately, the youth's attack was successfully caught with both of Seong-yun's hands. Staring sharply at his enemy, Seong-yun asked if the yellow-haired one wanted to experience the intensely severed neck sensation. The yellow one grew angrier. He wanted to move his sword and stab Seong-yun, but with his great strength, Seong-yun instead broke the man's sword. Then, quickly, he used the broken sword to sever the yellow-haired man's neck, decapitating him. With this, Seong-yun won the opponent's achievement and earned high points. At this moment, time ran out, and those still alive occupied the platform. Those still alive were entitled to advance to the next trial. Everyone cheered happily upon receiving this notification. They were relieved they didn't have to kill others to win. Meanwhile, Seong-yun began to suspect that this was someone's plan to make many people enthusiastic enough to achieve in the early rounds. Ultimately, the final winner was those who managed to maintain their team. Of course, there were some exceptions. Seong-yun looked at someone on his right side who was lamenting his behavior and blaming others. Yet, he was the one who had killed his teammate. Seeing that person, Seong-yun wondered if he also looked like a monster in the eyes of others. Seong-yun received congratulations from the system as usual. Not forgetting, the system informed him of the prize he received this time, a mystery box that was sent directly to his inventory. After that, Seong-yun could return to the waiting room once he finished absorbing the souls of the 4 opponents he had just defeated. As Seong-yun absorbed their souls, his proficiency in the innate skill necromancy increased to 100%, raising Seong-yun's special skill by 1 rank. Upon entering the waiting room on the 7th floor, Seong-yun immediately received a notification that his achievement list had been created. This intrigued the young man. He quickly opened it and realized there was an S rank on his list. Seong-yun finally read each explanation one by one to satisfy his curiosity. There was an achievement skill called One-Hit Killer obtained after successfully killing one challenger with a single attack. And there were several new skills he gained from killing a person compared to killing a monster. Seong-yun was surprised to receive more rewards from killing than hunting monsters. Seong-yun continued reading and understanding that when he achieved, he would also gain skills, points, stats, and various other rewards. Then, Seong-yun looked at his inventory to claim his victory prize, the mystery box. Seong-yun looked at the box with a puzzled expression. He suspected the contents of the box wouldn't be as great for the 6th floor if the items obtained ranged from rank F to B. Seong-yun didn't expect the contents of the box to be a good prize. As Seong-yun opened the box, a small green creature jumped out of it. Seong-yun smiled slightly at the creature. He wondered what the creature was. And what should he do with it? Feeling intrigued, he attempted to capture it. Seong-yun continued his earnest efforts to catch the small green goblin. Despite Seong-yun's agility, the goblin seemed even swifter. It dodged quickly, darting around and playing with Seong-yun. Seong-yun felt elated when he finally caught the creature. However, the creature was cunning and promptly bit Seong-yun's hand, causing him to drop it with a cry of pain. The creature smirked mockingly, while Seong-yun's expression turned fierce. Initially trying to handle it gently due to its small size, Seong-yun's patience seemed to have worn thin. He leaped into action, adopting a more serious approach to capturing the strange creature. Seong-yun became so serious that he eventually struck the creature's head forcefully, crushing it. From the creature's body emerged a necklace. The system immediately congratulated Seong-yun for obtaining the highest grade item from the random box. The young man was astonished by the valuable prize he received. He hadn't expected a rank B reward. The necklace shone brightly, showcasing its allure to its owner. Then, a notification from the system revealed that the necklace was named the Wrought Iron Pendant. This iron pendant necklace had the skill to enhance metal-related weapons and iron by up to 7%. However, it required mana to activate its skill. The necklace fell into Seong-yun's hands. The young man was curious about his new acquisition. He promptly channeled mana into the necklace, activating its skill automatically. Seong-yun's body immediately radiated as he felt the effect of the necklace. It was now adjusting to its new owner. As their connection deepened, Seong-yun felt the necklace was excellent. He even deemed it better than most grade A items because of its cheat ability to enhance his combat and defensive capabilities. With a happy smile, Seong-yun immediately put on the necklace, realizing he had obtained a pretty good jackpot. However, as soon as he put on the necklace, its glow faded, indicating its mana had been depleted. Seong-yun lamented that such a good item had the drawback of requiring too much mana. So, he tucked the necklace into his clothes and decided to use it only in emergencies. Besides, Seong-yun needed to conserve his mana. Next, Seong-yun wanted to check his innate skill, which ranked 1. But suddenly, a holographic screen appeared, asking if Seong-yun wanted to enter floor 7 now. Seong-yun was surprised by the notification. Previously, challengers were always given time to rest in the waiting room before entering the next trial. He mentioned that it didn't matter if he quickly completed the next trial, but that meant the waiting time for everyone would be eliminated. Seong-yun tried to enter the community to gather information about this. Everyone in the chat room seemed worried and curious about the eliminated waiting time. Some even wondered if they would get a bonus for starting earlier. But from the conversations, Seong-yun concluded that they were unaffected by this because most of them were uninterested and just wanted to go home quickly. Seong-yun wondered if they had become like that because they were from low ranks or because the atmosphere became more tense with each trial ascent. In the chat room, there were also mentions of bandits or criminals who intentionally sold resistance skills. They were considered criminals for ruthlessly killing for personal gain. Seong-yun agreed with that. He also speculated that the criminals wouldn't act for now because Floor 7's trial was a challenge for solo players. So, there was no reason for them to attract attention. In his heart, Seong-yun was determined that killers who used their comrades' lives as tools were people to be avoided and targeted. Moreover, Seong-yun needed to acquire a skill that could be used in any situation soon. After browsing the community, Seong-yun checked his necromancy skill, which had risen to rank D on Floor 6. From the lengthy information on the holographic screen, Seong-yun realized that the basic effect of his skill had changed. Previously, the skill only increased stats. Now, it could also increase mana and defense. This meant that souls absorbed by Seong-yun could turn into something like magic or provide shield defense. Seong-yun hoped to improve the efficiency of his soul absorption skill, but unfortunately, the system said otherwise. Fortunately, Seong-yun still needed defense skills to protect his body. Now, Seong-yun took his sword from his inventory to test how good the new soul shield he had just obtained was. Seong-yun threw his sword into the air and stretched out his hand directly below the sword's path. Although the shield failed to protect him later, at least Seong-yun could relax because the waiting room had a regeneration effect. The sword spun in the air before finally landing right above Seong-yun's arm. The moment the sword was suspended above Seong-yun's arm, it couldn't harm him because of the skill from the soul he had absorbed. This soul belonged to Seong-yun, who had the power to withstand enemy attacks and quickly heal himself. Seong-yun was delighted to see this skill. Then he looked at his stat ranking and realized he had dropped one rank from the previous trial. Seong-yun was slightly disappointed, but it wasn't a significant problem. Because what he needed to become a pioneer was to stay in the top 50. Seong-yun sighed, tired from checking everything in the waiting room. He did a little warm-up before resuming his actions. Not wanting to waste any more time, Seong-yun immediately entered Floor 7's trial. The difficulty on this floor was hard. The time given to complete the challenges on this floor was 40 minutes. The requirement to pass this floor was to complete 3 trials within the given time frame. If the challengers failed to complete the mission, they would die or run out of time. Meanwhile, the reward for completing this trial was a tempting rank A skill. After entering Floor 7's trial, Seong-yun found himself in a mysterious dark corridor. Despite feeling somewhat uneasy for not sensing any monsters, Seong-yun proceeded down the corridor until he saw a glowing end. As soon as Seong-yun emerged from the corridor, he entered the challenge area of the first floor trial. He had to prove himself by conquering his fears. The young man stood on a stretch of sandy desert. Sweat immediately dripped from his forehead as he suspected that the first opponent he had to face was a sand golem. Soon enough, the sandy area around Seong-yun vibrated, and the sand golem he had been anticipating emerged. Seong-yun finally understood that completing 3 trials within the specified time frame meant he had to redo the 3 trials he had already completed so far. The young man remained calm because, with his current abilities, he felt confident in defeating the sand golem even with his eyes closed. Seong-yun wondered if the system deliberately made the challenge this easy so that the participants would quickly advance to Floor 8. But when the sand golem stood before him, Seong-yun realized it was larger than the previous one. Would Seong-yun face failure this time? As usual, instead of being afraid, Seong-yun smiled happily at his opponent becoming stronger. Without wasting time, the sand golem raised its large hands and immediately attacked the young man in front of it. Seong-yun quickly dodged after retrieving his sword from his inventory. He ran along the monster's large arm and attempted to strike its body to find its weak point. After observing the monster's body, the young man still hadn't found its core, hidden within its large body. While busy pondering, the sand golem suddenly spun around and caught Seong-yun in its palm. The sand golem tried to crush Seong-yun by squeezing him tightly. However, the young man utilized his mana and managed to destroy the monster's hand. Seong-yun finally concluded that he needed to destroy the entire body of the monster to find its core. Quickly, Seong-yun leaped towards the monster and slashed several parts of its body. However, the monster's body slowly regenerated as if nothing had happened. Seong-yun frowned at the sand golem's regeneration ability. He had suspected that cutting sand with a knife wouldn't be easy. So the only way for him to defeat the sand golem was to find its core. Suddenly, the sand monster went berserk. It prepared itself, then leaped towards Seong-yun, who ran in panic. The young man had to successfully evade the monster because if he fell, Seong-yun would be hit by a massive sand wave. Indeed, when the monster landed, Seong-yun was immediately pushed by a huge sand wave several meters away. The young man even lay helpless among the piles of sand. This time, Seong-yun was truly annoyed with the creature. He quickly stood up, prepared his sword, and used the triple laceration skill. This skill could strengthen the weapon with mana for up to 3 consecutive attacks. When using this skill, the sword's attack power would increase with each strike. Swiftly, Seong-yun leaped towards the monster and immediately slashed one of its arms. Without wasting time, the young man leaped again and cut various parts of the sand golem's body. In his heart, Seong-yun was surprised that he could cut a monster as large as that with just one strike. He remembered that the owner of this skill was the mysterious man who had intruded into his floor. He used to be annoyed because his floor was invaded by outsiders. But now, Seong-yun smiled and silently thanked the knight in his heart. Seong-yun knew the sand golem would continue to regenerate with sand. So, Seong-yun just needed to keep cutting it relentlessly until he found its core. While continuously attacking the monster, Seong-yun said he would keep cutting, and cutting his enemy. The young man tirelessly continued to cut every part of the sand golem. When he took a break, he realized the sand golem's size had decreased. So casually, Seong-yun said, "By the way, when did you become so cute? Oh my goodness. Our protagonist this time is truly hilarious. Look, just because of his words, the sand golem can even blush." Seong-yun thought maybe the sand used to reshape the monster's body couldn't be continuously obtained from the surroundings. That's why the monster's size kept decreasing. Seeing this possibility, Seong-yun smiled broadly, exuding a killing aura as he invited the sand golem to go on a diet with him. The sand golem screamed as if it refused to be continuously cut. But Seong-yun disregarded that. Relentlessly, the young man attacked the sand golem again and slashed various parts of its body. Seong-yun became more excited because now he knew the monster's weakness. Finally, the sand golem roared, and its size reduced to roughly the size of a human. With its small size, Seong-yun saw the monster's core on its back. No wonder when he had cut the back earlier, it felt harder than other parts. Seong-yun didn't want to waste any more time because this trial had a time limit. Suddenly, the golem's hand was already in front of him. Fortunately, Seong-yun was able to dodge just in time. The young man realized that the sand golem became even more agile due to its small size. It was able to attack Seong-yun quite fiercely. Despite the monster's movements changing very quickly, none of its attacks managed to hit Seong-yun. Until finally, the young man was standing behind the monster and stabbed its core with all his might. The sand golem roared in pain as its life core was destroyed. Now Seong-yun had proven that he could overcome his fear and complete the first trial. As soon as the sand golem's core disappeared, the monster instantly crumbled. At that moment, a bright light appeared behind Seong-yun, immediately indicating to him that it was the gateway to the next trial. Before entering that dimensional gateway, Seong-yun took the opportunity to absorb the soul of the sand golem first. Unfortunately, he failed because his body was sucked into the dimensional gateway too quickly. Despite his disappointment, Seong-yun couldn't do much and simply resigned himself as he was sent to the second trial. In this trial, Seong-yun was asked to prove that he had defeated his ego. Currently, Seong-yun stood amidst the wooden ruins of the ORC village from the second floor. In front of him, fires still burned, consuming the villagers' homes. As Seong-yun stepped out of one of the doors, a group of hunter ORCs mourned the departure of their leader. Seong-yun realized that he had been sent back to the time after he had defeated the village leader and destroyed the ORC village. The hunter ORCs, with their massive bodies and terrifying faces, stared angrily at Seong-yun. Their eyes were red, and they all screamed in unison. Seong-yun knew they had entered the berserk phase, a phenomenon where monsters became wildly furious and uncontrollable. Seong-yun felt truly unlucky at this moment. Because a monster ORC in the berserk phase was equivalent to an E-rank monster. The larger, more terrifying monsters attacked Seong-yun simultaneously. With an angry expression, Seong-yun thought that the monsters didn't deserve to mourn the loss of their own families. It disgusted him. So, the young man immediately activated several skills and began another slaughter. Before long, the hunter ORCs were all slain by Seong-yun. Their corpses littered the ground, worsening the already devastated village scene. Now, only one orc remained standing, with just one arm. Seong-yun asked the creature if it wasn't frustrating to be the only one left alive, witnessing the deaths of all its family. The creature became furious at Seong-yun's words. It immediately raised its sword with the remaining anger and strength it had. But Seong-yun was faster in delivering a blow, beheading it. With this, the system appeared and notified that Seong-yun had proven he could defeat his ego. Seong-yun had completed the second trial. Now he couldn't delay any longer to absorb the souls of the hunter ORCs he had just defeated. Because in a short time, the dimensional hole sucked him into the next challenge. After absorbing many hunter ORCs, Seong-yun's necromancy skill had only increased by 6%. The collected souls had reached 19 out of 30. With this, Seong-yun could smile happily because some of his skills had improved after gaining new soul loot. Now Seong-yun had entered the third area. Seong-yun was asked to defeat his nature. When Seong-yun opened his eyes, he realized he was in the trial area of the 6th floor. The young man glanced around briefly and noticed a slight difference in the layout of the floor. Seong-yun sighed heavily because the floor that appeared seemed mismatched with the challenge the system had stated. But Seong-yun knew he couldn't expect logical things in this tower of trial. To prepare for the next match, Seong-yun took a bottle of health potion from his inventory to replenish his stamina, vitality, and magic power. Seong-yun immediately drank the potion in one gulp. His body instantly felt better after consuming the potion. Seong-yun then tossed the bottle into the water. Suddenly, the water behind Seong-yun surged and lifted the floor tiles behind him. Remembering that he shouldn't touch the water in this trial from the beginning, Seong-yun activated the Assassin's Cape skill to quickly flee from the pursuing water. While running fast, Seong-yun thought that he had fulfilled the criteria for all the trials so far. That meant Seong-yun just needed to pass this trial and find the red-colored capture tile as the finish line. Until then, Seong-yun must not touch the water. Seong-yun thought he was much faster now and couldn't be caught by the water. But suddenly, the stepping stones under his feet were thrown upward by a significant wave of water. Seong-yun cursed inwardly. Because of touching the water, his body lost strength, stamina, and ability. Seong-yun was annoyed because he initially thought the floor tiles would be raised sequentially. So Seong-yun realized this was what he had to deal with for assuming logical things in the tower. To mitigate the penalty impact of touching the water, Seong-yun activated the instant acceleration skill to jump as far as possible. The young man continued to jump from one stone to another, each being lifted high by the waves. Seong-yun was determined to escape that place because he refused to die there. Seong-yun kept jumping from one stone to another until finally, he saw the red, captured tile. Seong-yun became more excited to reach it. But suddenly, the water below him churned and rose, blocking Seong-yun's path. The whirlpool seemed both an opponent and a real obstacle for Seong-yun before he reached his goal. Now the waters continued to attack and chase Seong-yun as they pleased, making the young man struggle to evade the relentless water. Finally, the young man smiled happily when he saw the red, captured tile was very close. Seong-yun just needed to run a little further before he was hit by a strong wave of water from behind. It made him stumble and momentarily lose consciousness. Would Seong-yun end here? Suddenly, Seong-yun's new necklace glowed and automatically protected him from more severe attacks. Seong-yun was surprised that his body didn't die even though he realized he had been hit by a fatal blow. The necklace automatically used the souls of other creatures that Seong-yun had absorbed to replace receiving a fatal blow from the opponent. So because of this, Seong-yun once again escaped from danger. Although surprised by what had just happened, Seong-yun couldn't waste any more time. The young man immediately jumped and ran quickly towards the captured tile. While running from the water waves, Seong-yun received a more annoying notification that the speed effect from his clothes had been deactivated. Now, Seong-yun had to run with his strength toward the red-colored floor. In moments of desperation like that, Seong-yun finally decided to consume one of the orc souls directly. With this, his magical power was restored, and he could dodge more quickly from the water wave attacks. Just as he was inches away, Seong-yun reached the captured tile, and a huge wave rose, blocking his path. Seong-yun was greatly surprised and panicked because now he was surrounded by waves from all directions. Finally, this young man took a daring step. Surrendering himself to fate, Seong-yun leaped into the strong current of the water wall. The young man was thrown out quite high. He screamed as he free fell onto the hard, captured tile floor. A loud thud was heard as the young man's body finally landed on the red floor. Several ORC hunter souls that Seong-yun had obtained were shattered as he used them to save himself from the free fall earlier. Seong-yun winced in pain for a moment. Then he realized there was still an opponent left. Seong-yun stared sharply at several waves of water that had yet to release him. Finally, the system appeared and notified that Seong-yun had successfully overcome his doubts. With this, Seong-yun conquered the third trial, and the water waves slowly broke, drenching his body. Despite cursing, Seong-yun was happy this time to receive congratulations from the system for successfully conquering the 7th floor trial. With this, Seong-yun successfully obtained several items as prizes and a new skill. Not to mention the quite high points. As usual, after the challenge ended, this young man was directed to enter the waiting room. He could take some time to rest and recover his energy. In the waiting room, Seong-yun reconsidered the results of this challenge. He began to feel like he had failed this time, because he had a very hard time completing this challenge. If this continues, Seong-yun is afraid of facing the challenges that will appear on the 8th floor. Because this young man realizes that from now on, luck alone will not be enough. Suddenly, the room vibrated, and a notification from the system appeared. It was announced that 1,000 people had completed the 7th floor mail challenge. The system expansion had begun. So from here, many updates in the system. Even the floor invading system had appeared. These were all things that Seong-yun had been eagerly awaiting. But most importantly for this young man was that he finally had the right to choose Radiance as a pioneer. Radiance is the benefit obtained after becoming a pioneer on all floors. Challengers with Radiance status will be given unique traits, skills, and effects compared to others. Seong-yun was astonished to read the notification from the system. He wondered if the system had ever given something like this to other challengers before. Seong-yun was given 3 category choices, namely Conqueror, Hunter, and Monk. Seong-yun wanted to read the description of these 3 categories first. Of the 3 categories, Seong-yun set aside the Monk category first because it didn't suit him. And finally, he chose the Conqueror category. Because of the effect of this radiance, a unique evolution of traits began. Seong-yun felt a great energy entering his body. The system screen appeared and informed that the choices would be categorized based on the challenger's current abilities. There is the Summoner ability that can create a powerful group of undead soldiers with absorbed souls. There is the Magic Swordsmanship ability that will make related skills mastered 3 times faster. There is also the Creator ability that can enhance talents related to item creation. Wooden structures can also be mastered in just 3 days. After seeing the ability information, Seong-yun chose one, namely the Summoner ability. With this, the system automatically adjusted the ability with Seong-yun. After the combination skill was successfully created, Seong-yun's new status appeared on the hologram screen. With this, Seong-yun's body merged with various effects of radiance. After the fusion was complete, Seong-yun landed back feeling relieved. Now Seong-yun would try out his new skill. With his new status, Seong-yun could combine useless skills to create new skills. This was amazing according to Seong-yun. The young man immediately opened the skill list. For a moment, he seemed confused about which skill to combine. Until finally, Seong-yun chose the skill Contempt for the Weak and the skill Sustain the Battle. Once he was sure, Seong-yun combined these 2 skills until a new combination skill appeared. The hologram screen shone brightly, illuminating Seong-yun's face. What could this new skill be? Han Seong-yun was surprised when he obtained a new skill called Forceful Breakthrough after combining 2 different skills, namely Contempt for the Weak and Sustain Battle, even though he had hoped to get a skill rank E, but instead, he only got rank D. Nonetheless, Han Seong-yun remained happy. Then he combined 2 other skills and obtained the Strengthened Eye skill, rank E, which only increased by 1 rank from before. After acquiring the new skill, Han Seong-yun returned to his bed while pondering what had happened to him as a pioneer, but instead of trouble, he received a reward, which felt strange. However, he tried to forget about it and checked what rewards he received. Han Seong-yun received the Wind's Gray skill as a reward with rank A. The skill he received was excellent, as it could increase speed by up to 10%, and he could stack it 7 times, meaning he could increase speed by 70%, especially since the skill didn't consume his mana. The reward he received was a pair of shoes with 2 small wings. Han Seong-yun liked all the rewards on the 7th floor, but he was quite annoyed when he looked at the shop because the skills sold there were low in quality and expensive. However, Han Seong-yun still bought them, especially skills related to magic. The skill he purchased was Magic Resistance rank with a price of 12,000 points. Han Seong-yun intended to use that skill if he encountered skills like Heart Solidarity. Later, he obtained the Magic Circuit skill. When he installed it on his body, he felt like his entire body was burning because it was engraved all over his body, but afterward, Han Seong-yun's body felt incredibly light. After that, Han Seong-yun stood up, walked away from the bed, faced the wall, and unleashed his power, intending to use the skill he had acquired. He stomped his foot on the floor, creating a wave that cracked the floor. Han Seong-yun wondered about it, as he was sure that the magic circuit must have also increased his physical strength, and he was also proud because he had bought a pretty good skill. Then the system wrote that Han Seong-yun could use dead souls to revive someone who died around him. At that time, the level of those who were resurrected matched the quality and quantity of the souls used. Han Seong-yun was curious about the raising dead skill he acquired, so he tried to use it in a trial. Han Seong-yun said it was time to decide whether to go directly to the next trial or return to Earth. A hunter sat anxiously on one side because he failed to recruit other hunters who should have been in his party when he realized someone was coming, none other than 3 prominent figures. One of them asked the hunter if he still needed party members. After that, they said the hunter should provide his entrance license because it would expire if he didn't enter the gate within a certain period. The 3 who requested the license would replace it with money, while the hunter looked annoyed because it turned out the 3 had already come. The hunter said again that he did not intend to give up the license, but before he finished speaking, one of the 3 immediately cut him off, calling the hunter a stupid bastard and asking why no one wanted to join his party when there were many hunters around. The reason was that he was only a rank E hunter, and how could any hunter want to join garbage like him? Then they laughed at the hunter, and at that moment, Han Seong-yun arrived and asked if there was still room to join the hunter's party. People looked at Han Seong-yun, while Han Seong-yun took out his hunter ID card and showed it to the hunter. Han Seong-yun said he was a rank C hunter and asked if he met the qualifications. The hunter was very happy. He stood up and answered that of course he accepted him. Meanwhile, the person who had immediately grabbed Han Seong-yun's shoulder asked if he didn't see the many people waiting there, saying Han Seong-yun was blind. Han Seong-yun smirked mockingly and asked why that person didn't just join the hunter's party. The person was annoyed to hear what Han Seong-yun said and threatened Han Seong-yun. Han Seong-yun was not afraid of the threat and instead asked the person to release his hand from his shoulder if he didn't want it to be broken by Han Seong-yun. Han Seong-yun tried to intimidate the person by emitting energy so strong that the person's hand lifted itself from Han Seong-yun's shoulder. The person started to get scared and asked why Han Seong-yun could have such strong energy, and doubted whether Han Seong-yun was a rank C hunter like himself. The other 2 praised the person and thought that the energy belonged to him, but the person said it wasn't his, and the 2 others were confused. The person then said that because the association members saw it, he allowed Han Seong-yun and the hunter to this time, then he invited the other 2 to leave. After the 3 left, the hunter was upset and didn't like the situation from the beginning. Seeing the hunter's behavior, Han Seong-yun invited the hunter to enter the gate because no one else wanted to join. The hunter was confused and asked if it was just the 2 of them. In short, the 2 of them entered the gate, and the hunter couldn't believe they were going in. Han Seong-yun asked the hunter not to be nervous because Han Seong-yun could defeat many rank D hunters alone. The hunter was confused and asked if it was Han Seong-yun's first dungeon. Han Seong-yun confirmed, but his heart said that the Tower of Trials was not a dungeon. The hunter then said they had just met, but completing the dungeon was a matter of life and death. He just wanted to say that between a rank C and E hunter, according to Han Seong-yun, who had the highest likelihood of dying. Han Seong-yun remained silent, then the hunter continued to say that most people would think that weaker rank E hunters had the highest death rate, but in fact, it was rank C hunters because rank E hunters knew how weak they were, so sometimes they were more cautious, but for rank C, they felt very confident, hence their death rate was very high. Similar to driving, accidents tend to increase when someone feels overly confident. According to Hunter, the dungeon is much more dangerous than what Han Seong-yun thought. Essentially, Hunter is worried about Han Seong-yun being too confident. Han Seong-yun acknowledges what Hunter says. Hunter then wants to lead the party, although Han Seong-yun also desires it, but reluctantly agrees. The hunter expresses gratitude and hopes Han Seong-yun isn't angry about it. After that, they continue their journey and encounter a lizard man known for his weapon skills. The hunter faces it first while Han Seong-yun observes the hunter's combat experience. They confront the lizard man, but neither reacts, leading Han Seong-yun to believe they're having a staring contest. Han Seong-yun, thinking he only has 3 days left on Earth, decides not to waste time at the entrance. He joins to defeat the lizard man, despite the hunter's attempt to stop him. Han Seong-yun rushes towards the lizard man and swiftly defeats it with an instant acceleration skill. The hunter is surprised, but Han Seong-yun explains he was in a hurry, justifying his involvement. Han Seong-yun then suggests that from then on, he should lead the party. They encounter many more lizard men, and Han Seong-yun effortlessly eliminates them all, referring to it as a massacre with a single strike. The hunter silently watches the battle, referring to it as a fight from a super rookie. Han Seong-yun collects loot from the defeated lizard men, despite the hunter apologizing for not recruiting a porter. While they converse, a lizard man attacks Han Seong-yun from behind, but he easily dodges it. Han Seong-yun then swiftly defeats the lizard man, piercing its head through the entrance gate ceiling. Han Seong-yun suggests they talk outside to avoid danger. Han Seong-yun's proficiency increases by 0.7% after absorbing a lizardman soul, but he realizes it's difficult to increase his proficiency by defeating rank D monsters. They finally reach the boss gate room alone, and the hunter hopes to complete the dungeon with Han Seong-yun. The hunter asks if Han Seong-yun has a plan, but he replies that he doesn't, and they confront the Lizard King. The battle between Han Seong-yun and the Lizard King is fierce. Han Seong-yun acknowledges the Lizard King's extraordinary speed, which contradicts its large size. Amid the fight, Han Seong-yun is hit by the Lizard King's tail, but he quickly recovers. Han Seong-yun uses various skills, ultimately defeating the Lizard King. Han Seong-yun absorbs the Lizard King's soul and gains new skills. Meanwhile, a man yawns, bored because 3 gates have opened simultaneously without any activity. He wonders why his team hasn't received any commissions and envies the raid team. When Han Seong-yun and the hunter emerge from the gate, the man's team members inform him that the third hunter party has completed the raid. The man questions why only the 2 of them came out and suggests they might have left after completing half of the dungeon. However, before the man could finish thinking, he looked toward the gate and was surprised to see that its color had changed to gray, indicating that the dungeon boss had been defeated. The man couldn't believe it and immediately ran towards Han Seong-yun and the hunter, asking if they had indeed completed the raid. In response to this question, Han Seong-yun inquired about the man's identity. The man then revealed himself as the person responsible for the gate in the park, Shin Woo-jin, the team leader of the gate management unit of the Hunter Association. Shin Woo-jin expressed his interest in purchasing ownership rights to the gate and made an offer to them. However, the hunter stated that he couldn't make the decision alone since Han Seong-yun had completed the dungeon single-handedly. Shin Woo-jin was surprised by this revelation and asked if Han Seong-yun, who had completed it alone, was an A-rank hunter, but Han Seong-yun replied that he was only a C-rank hunter. Han Seong-yun and Shin Woo-jin then began negotiating, with Shin Woo-jin offering 1.2 billion won, a proposal that left Han Seong-yun extremely surprised. A woman piled up a large number of files on the table, complaining about how she had been working non-stop since returning from the tower. She glanced at a nameplate that read, Tower of Trials Challenger Management Team Leader, Haeon. She recalled the words of her superiors and pondered over the hidden challengers, realizing how difficult it was to persuade them. She found it challenging to gather just 10 challengers, especially since they all chose the easy difficulty level. She believed that satisfying her superiors wouldn't be easy. She then remembered someone, Han Seong-yun, who she believed could complete the 4th floor alone and regretted not recruiting him. She then checked her phone, surprised to see a message from Han Seong-yun asking to meet briefly. Han Seong-yun, who was at a cafe, checked his bank balance, which now contained 1.3 billion won. He couldn't believe he had earned that much money but found it quite enjoyable. The cafe doorbell rang, and the woman, Lee Hae-yeon, hurried in. Han Seong-yun greeted her, and they sat down to talk. Lee Hae-yeon asked if Han Seong-yun had quit the tower, to which he replied that he hadn't, but he needed help, he needed a guild. He explained that he required a place that allowed him to enter the tower freely, with conditions such as the right to refuse any calls from the guild, no interference in his affairs within the tower, and the freedom to use the guild's dungeon as he pleased. Han Seong-yun then asked if there was a guild that would agree to these conditions. However, the atmosphere changed, and Lee Hae-yeon said that Han Seong-yun's conditions were impossible to fulfill. From the guild's perspective, they wouldn't gain anything. Han Seong-yun realized he had gone too far, but Lee Hae-yeon unexpectedly asked him to join her White-Silver Guild, promising to fulfill all his requests. Han Seong-yun, now on a bus, arrived at Nogyang District, Wujongbu, Chuanbua Mountain. He began to run, considering it as a warm-up. Meanwhile, Lee Hae-yeon arrived at a gate, greeted the guards, and informed them that she had reserved the gate raid for an hour later. She showed her identity card, and they asked her to wait as it would be some time. It was then that Han Seong-yun arrived, causing a strong gust of wind that knocked over nearby objects. Lee Haeyeon couldn't believe that Han Seong-yun had caused such a storm just by running. Lee Haeyeon then stated that she had completed her procedures and asked Han Seong-yun to inform her when he was ready. Han Seong-yun agreed, and the gate raid commenced to test their abilities. Inside the gate, they found themselves in a field. Han Seong-yun attempted to protect Lee Haeyeon, but she assured him it was unnecessary as she was wearing an artifact provided by her guild called the Empress's Necklace, rank A, which could protect her from any attacks. Understanding this, Han Seong-yun could now fight more freely without worrying about Lee Haeyeon. He activated his spiritual eyes skill, absorbed by the Lizard King, allowing him to detect invisible enemies. Then a group of toxic demons from a C-rank dungeon appeared, and Lee Haeyeon informed Han Seong-yun that it was an irregular dungeon. Han Seong-yun easily defeated all the demons, leaving Lee Haeyeon astonished but convinced that her decision to recruit him was the right one. Surprisingly, although his opponents were quite strong, Han Seong-yun easily killed them. Not just one, but all the monsters were slaughtered by Han Seong-yun alone. He felt a bit strange when using the thunder effect power, to the point of forgetting that he had such a skill. Then, in the last monster encounter, we saw Han Seong-yun grabbing its tail and slamming the monster against the wall. It seemed that rank C monsters meant nothing to him anymore. After finishing off all the monsters, he asked Haeyeon to come over because it was safe now. Suddenly, Haeyeon couldn't speak, seeing Han Seong-yun single-handedly defeating all the enemies. Moreover, this was an irregular place. According to rumors, Deadly Poisonous Demon was not a monster to be taken lightly. The monster was recommended to be killed, even by C-rank hunters. But what surprised Haeyeon was how Han Seong-yun could fight the monster alone. If this continues, he will grow stronger, reaching a point where he cannot be compared to his current condition. On the other hand, Han Seong-yun absorbed all the monster souls in front of him. All the souls were used, and his magic power and other stats increased by 1 point. Han Seong-yun thought that if the level of monsters in front of the gate was like this, then the dungeon boss would not pose a threat. Curious and eager to win this raid, he asked Haeyeon to enter the gate leading to the boss dungeon. They walked near a quite large cliff. Han Seong-yun felt strange as to why he didn't get energy from the boss dungeon in this place. Suddenly, a purple-colored light fell from above right in front of Haeyeon. We could see the monster immediately unleashing its strong claws and causing massive destruction. Fortunately, Han Seong-yun swiftly rescued her and took her to the other side. She was amazed by his actions. But there was a big problem. From behind, the monster unleashed a very strong attack on both of them. Han Seong-yun couldn't avoid the attack because he didn't notice the energy. There was a huge explosion right in that area. However, as usual, Han Seong-yun easily avoided the attack by jumping up and stopping at a nearby tree. Han Seong-yun apologized for suddenly moving her, but Haeyeon felt a little embarrassed being carried like that and said that she owed him. Then Han Seong-yun carefully observed the monster. The observation had begun, and then he would finish off this monster. Before leaving, he asked Haeyeon if she used any buff skill on him. But he requested to confirm her skills first. Finding that out, Han Seong-yun immediately threw himself downward and would fight the monster alone. Because this would only take a moment. He landed in front of the monster, which looked fierce. The monster emitted quite strong energy this time. On the contrary, Han Seong-yun used the instant acceleration skill, and due to the exclusive effect of fast boot increasing, the wind gray skill was activated. All movement speeds increased by 70%. Han Seong-yun's speed was terrifying. Suddenly he was beside the monster. When the monster tried to counterattack, he used the 3 laceration skill. At that moment, Han Seong-yun went wild by cutting the monster's body into several pieces. The boss dungeon was killed, meaning the dungeon would be sealed in 3 hours. Seeing that technique, Haeyeon was confused and amazed. Now she was confused because the one who seemed like a monster was Han Seong-yun. After that, they both immediately left the gate. Haeyeon still couldn't believe Han Seong-yun could complete a dungeon of this level so quickly. Haeyeon explained that she had passed the test, and now she could use the Silver Guild dungeon. Of course, their guild wouldn't let go of Han Seong-yun, as someone like him would surely make their guild grow rapidly. Haeyeon walked to the rocks and explained about the Tower of Trial, where initially the difficulty level chosen when called to the tower was not important. For those who have completed missions with the easy mode, they would later be able to adapt to the hard mode, and vice versa. If someone chose the hard trial but couldn't handle it, they were free to choose the easy mode. But apparently, Han Seong-yun's case was quite different here. The difficulty level he passed through was likely deadly. She advised him to be careful because, in the future, the enemies would be even stronger. Before leaving, Haeyeon said that she wanted to accompany him and see him grow over the years. Hearing that, Han Seong-yun felt a little embarrassed. At night, Han Seong-yun was on the rooftop, smiling happily while eating an apple. A notification appeared saying he would return to the Tower of Trial in 5 minutes. While waiting to be pulled into the tower, Han Seong-yun smiled happily because he had been busy these past 3 days, but thankfully his status had increased as expected. Finally, he was pulled into the Tower of Trial. Without delay, he immediately received the 8th trial. Before departing, there was a notification asking Han Seong-yun to choose the turning point of the trial. There were 3 options, but as usual, Han Seong-yun chose Kamba. The reason was that he wanted to improve his mastery of necromancy. The system said that once the user had chosen, they couldn't change it again. Then a very serious notification appeared, stating that Han Seong-yun qualified to meet the administrator face-to-face. The system would select an administrator suitable for the combat type. Finally, the system showed that Han Seong-yun would meet the iron-blooded monarch administrator. Immediately, Han Seong-yun was summoned to a very strange dungeon filled with swords. It turned out he had entered the Iron Blood world. This naturally panicked him, and he immediately activated the Eye of Truth to identify this dungeon. Unfortunately, this dungeon didn't reveal any information except for the administrator. He became even more excited, and suddenly, a red aura sword that could move on its own appeared. It turned out to be the messenger from the administrator, instructing Han Seong-yun to follow the sword. Because he couldn't refuse it, he had to join the war. Eventually, he arrived in front of a house that resembled a warehouse. Without any hesitation, Han Seong-yun immediately opened the door and saw who was inside. To his surprise, there was a woman dressed luxuriously like a great warrior. She was the Iron Blood administrator. Seeing her appearance, Han Seong-yun was quite surprised because the administrator's appearance was very beautiful, but the aura she exuded was terrifying. Suddenly, Iron Blood was already in front of his eyes, even though he hadn't closed his eyes before. Iron Blood was truly curious about Han Seong-yun's appearance because according to rumors, this young man was like a monster. Iron Blood was even impressed by the battle on floor 4. Han Seong-yun was very surprised because an administrator was watching my fight. But it turns out it wasn't like that. Iron Blood only knew the outcome. It is known that the admins also cannot watch fights below floor 8. And the admins are not like gods, they also have no power over the tower. Instead, admins are under the authority of the tower. As long as Han Seong-yun is inferior to the tower, the admins cannot harm him. Moving on to the main conversation, Iron Blood explained that a personal interview was an advantage as a pioneer. They could ask anything without using a ticket. Of course, Han Seong-yun felt a little strange, but he tried to ask about the fight on floor 5. He was almost killed by a challenger from another world. What's strange here is why that person came to my floor when he could invade other floors. Iron Blood said that there was no specific reason. When you invade another world, they can take the prize, but they can also get better benefits. The reason why they can get better benefits is that challengers from other worlds have been in that tower for decades. This means that one day this tower will also merge with other towers. Why could it be like that? After floor 20, there will be many combined trials rather than individual ones. This means that eventually, Han Seong-yun will meet challengers from other worlds. Han Seong-yun concluded that his opponent at that time wanted to kill his rival from the beginning. Then Han Seong-yun asked one more thing, about the Tower of Trial. Hearing that question, Iron Blood seemed quite angry and said that she also wanted to know that. She revealed that the admins were once challengers. Those who die after floor 40 will gain authority, come back to life and become admins. Iron Blood explained that she once intended to reach the upper floors, but without being able to reach those floors, they all died. That made Han Seong-yun feel a little disappointed because he wanted to learn about the top tower. Suddenly, Iron Blood attacked him and choked him. She said that Han Seong-yun shouldn't have said that so calmly. But Iron Blood was surprised again because Han Seong-yun wasn't scared at all. The reason Han Seong-yun wasn't afraid at all was because previously she said that it was my advantage, and I also wouldn't let you attack me easily. Instantly, Iron Blood was very impressed with this young man's actions. Then she offered him a contract as her disciple. Without having a chance to answer, Han Seong-yun was taken back to the resting place. Then in front of him appeared an exclusive store notification. It was a contract made by Iron Blood earlier. Of course, because this is a great advantage, Han Seong-yun wouldn't refuse it. He also received all his stats increasing by 1 point. And received some quite special authorities. Unfortunately, when he opened it, he didn't have the right to open these authorities. To be able to open these authorities, Han Seong-yun must pass floor 10. Even though only 3 can be chosen now, Han Seong-yun seemed to immediately buy one of these authorities. What he bought was Serene Mind. This authority is useful for making rational decisions. Yeah, this is a very suitable authority for him. A few moments later, he immediately went to floor 8. The completion of this mission is to defeat the lich that summoned the skeletons. Upon arriving at the dungeon under the cliff, Han Seong-yun saw many skeletons waiting for him. He wondered if the lich used this strategy to kill opponents. Without further ado, Han Seong-yun jumped down with a very powerful effect, causing a big explosion. Although these skeletons were too weak, because there were thousands of them, it was quite difficult. Han Seong-yun wanted to increase his mastery by fighting all these skeletons, but only a little increased, making him annoyed. Suddenly there was a voice from the controller of all these skeletons, which made him very happy because he could track it now. Then Han Seong-yun used Absorb the Dead. You have consumed and absorbed the skeletons. He created one strong skeleton to fight all these skeletons. Han Seong-yun didn't expect that the artificial skeleton warrior would be very useful. After realizing that, now Han Seong-yun would leave this place and look for the boss's location. Then, at a very high speed, Han Seong-yun headed to some ruins nearby. And sure enough, a lich was controlling all the skeletons. Its appearance was very scary and indeed very powerful. The lich used a book to summon some orcs, but Han Seong-yun easily cut them down like fighting low-level monsters. Then Han Seong-yun asked the lich to summon even stronger monsters. Of course, receiving that insult made the lich very angry. He ordered all the guardians to kill this arrogant young man. But what happened was the opposite. Han Seong-yun managed to kill all the guardians until he cut off both legs of the lich. The lich couldn't do anything and saw that Han Seong-yun was a true monster. Han Seong-yun wanted to end it now, but when he saw the book, he didn't kill it. Instead, he asked the lich to summon stronger guardians. Of course, because he couldn't do anything anymore, he obeyed his orders. However, once again, the lich was surprised by this young man's abilities because his guardians were wiped out in an instant. Han Seong-yun said that this was just the beginning and asked him to summon all the guardians until I was bored. Hundreds of times the lich summoned his guardians, but just like before, all these guardians couldn't satisfy Han Seong-yun. Because he was already fed up, Han Seong-yun finally killed him with a very cruel look. After successfully killing the lich, Han Seong-yun is hailed as a human who surpasses a demon. As usual, after defeating his enemy, Han Seong-yun absorbs the soul of the lich. Having completed floor 8 of the Tower of Trial, Han Seong-yun receives rewards. All stats increase by 2, along with 30,000 points and 300 SP. After receiving the rewards, Han Seong-yun is taken to the lobby of floor 9. In this lobby, the system matures, allowing moderators to observe the trials. Additionally, Han Seong-yun can now purchase rank C skills from the skill shop. After spending some time in the lobby, Han Seong-yun prepares to start on floor 9. Before beginning, he needs a sword skill to replace his sword abilities. To do so, Han Seong-yun opens the skill shop to find a suitable skill. After a long search, he finds the Swordsmanship Class E skill, priced at 25,000 points. With this skill, Han Seong-yun plans to combine it with his Hunter Dagger skill. After a lengthy merging process, a new skill is created named Demon Slayer, classified as Class C. This skill is specialized in killing monsters, with its attacks dealing double damage against them. Additionally, Han Seong-yun acquires other skills to enhance his offensive and defensive capabilities. Unexpectedly, the combination of the 3 skills results in a new skill called Ashen Blood. This skill increases regeneration proportionally based on the user's resilience and reduces pain from attacks by 40%. Han Seong-yun is incredulous at this newfound ability and tests it by inflicting harm upon himself, confirming his lack of pain and immediate healing. Feeling unbeatable with this skill, Han Seong-yun prepares to tackle floor 9, albeit cautiously due to its mana-draining nature when active. Shortly after, Han Seong-yun embarks on the raid of floor 9, opting for the hard difficulty level as he did on previous floors. The theme of this trial is combat within a time limit of 1 day, requiring the elimination of all monsters within the given time frame. The reward for completion is the A-Beast Instinct Class C skill. However, before entering the trial, the system unexpectedly declares it unsafe due to the presence of challengers from the mortal world who have invaded the floor. Consequently, the objective of the trial changed, and Han Seong-yun had to eliminate the invaders to complete it. Upon entering the dungeon, Han Seong-yun encounters an old man named Sunhak, who introduces himself as the commander of the Murim Alliance. Sunhak stands atop a mound of monster corpses, and both parties prepare for a duel as they share the same goal. Sunhak initiates the attack, landing numerous strikes swiftly on Han Seong-yun. In response, Han Seong-yun activates the Wind Grace skill to enhance his speed and instincts, successfully parrying some of Sunhak's attacks. Sunhak is impressed by Han Seong-yun's swordsmanship, finding it hard to believe that a human possesses such skill. Feeling entertained, Sunhak begins to take the fight seriously and unleashes his skills, engulfing the surroundings in a dense black aura, momentarily blinding Han Seong-yun. Unprepared for this skill, Han Seong-yun readies himself and activates a skill to reduce his blindness. However, despite his efforts, he still struggles due to Sunhak's rapid attacks. Before being struck by Sunhak's blade, Han Seong-yun manages to evade. Sunhak is astonished that Han Seong-yun can avoid his blind attacks. Han Seong-yun immediately counterattacks to prevent Sunhak from using the skill again, but his strikes are thwarted. Recognizing Han Seong-yun's fighting style, Sunhak realizes that Han Seong-yun wields a peculiar dark magic. Feeling threatened, Sunhak resorts to his dark powers once more. Panicking, Han Seong-yun braces himself, knowing that failure to evade him could result in his death. Sunhak's next attack is swifter, and despite Han Seong-yun's attempts to defend, he loses his hand. Thanks to his regeneration skill, his hand begins to heal and reattach. Sunhak is once again surprised, as Han Seong-yun uses the dark skill once more, claiming its power is borrowed from elsewhere. However, Han Seong-yun remains silent, focusing on attacking. His relentless assault overwhelms Sunhak, who admits defeat. Despite Sunhak's anger, he activates a skill named 2 Kills, empowering his sword with lightning energy and doubling its attack damage. Additionally, the Fairy Step skill is activated for 1 minute, enhancing his agility. Sunhak launches a ferocious attack enveloped in a yellow aura, but he receives a penalty for floor invasion. All his stats are reduced to 8, and some of his skills are disabled. As a result, his previously activated skills were deactivated. Unable to use his skills, Sunhak resorts to his dark aura to attack Han Seong-yun. However, Han Seong-yun anticipates this and successfully counters, ultimately defeating Sunhak. Despite his defeat, Sunhak's expression reflects his frustration. After Sunhak was killed, the system finally notified that Han Seong-yun had completed the 9th floor tower trial. However, the reward that Han Seong-yun would receive differed from the initial agreement and would be adjusted according to the enemies he had slain. Although slightly disappointed, Han Seong-yun had to accept it reluctantly, as this could happen anytime. The reward he received was a 6th Sense Class C, 35,000 points, and 1,000 SP. Then Han Seong-yun was taken to the 10th floor lobby. Upon checking, it turned out that the skill reward was much better than the promised reward. Before entering the lobby, the system suddenly updated so that administrators could now observe the trials. Seeing this, Han Seong-yun felt pleased because if the administrators observed him, it would be advantageous for him. Then Administrator White Crane Swordmaster wanted to add authority to the exclusive contractor shop. The system then asked Han Seong-yun if he allowed it. Receiving such a good offer, Han Seong-yun was very happy and accepted it willingly. Upon entering the lobby, the system notified them that now he could enter the public area. In the lobby, Han Seong-yun checked the skills given by the administrator. When he checked the skill shop, it appeared that to obtain them, Han Seong-yun had to spend 1500 SP each. The first skill was the ability to infuse mana into weapons and use sword chi. The second skill was bone reconstruction, also priced at 1500 SP, which would reconstruct bones to adapt to any martial art, increasing all stats, and allowing Han Seong-yun to summon 1 iron-blooded cord at a time. As Han Seong-yun still had some SP left, he decided to purchase Bone Reconstruction and Sword Chi Master. The reason he immediately bought these skills was that Han Seong-yun was afraid that he might encounter stronger enemies than Sunhak on the previous floor. So he had to be prepared and buy skills that would be useful for him. After purchasing the skills, Han Seong-yun would try them out. When he used them, Han Seong-yun felt that his sword was lighter and followed his movements. Curious about the public area, Han Seong-yun tried to enter and see what it was all about. Upon entering the chat room, it was finally explained that the public area was where all the hunters in the world gathered, meaning the strongest hunters were also there. Another feature was that they could share authorities with their admins. Intrigued by this, Han Seong-yun entered the public area. There, he saw many hunters who had come to take advantage of it. We then shifted to one of the hunters who had just arrived and headed to the central public area. From afar, it could be seen that some people from other countries intended to do evil things. Indeed, some of them used a skill called Terrorize, which could reduce the stats of the targeted person by 20%. Of course, the man affected by the skill was shocked and silenced. From behind, some of those people came and intended to rob the possessions of the hunter until there was nothing left. However, before doing that, suddenly a female hunter came and stopped their criminal actions. Instead of avoiding the bandits, they threatened the woman not to interfere. Seeing this, the female hunter was scared, and suddenly Han Seong-yun, who was not far from the commotion, stopped the bandits. Seeing that Han Seong-yun was Korean, instead of avoiding him, they became even more determined to commit the crime. Feeling underestimated, Han Seong-yun emitted a killing aura to scare the bandits. Angry with the bandits, Han Seong-yun ended up killing them all. Seeing this, the nearby male and female hunters couldn't believe that Han Seong-yun was so powerful. Then, as the issue had ended, the female hunter bid farewell, while the male hunter thanked Han Seong-yun because, thanks to his help, he could avoid death. But here, Han Seong-yun said that it was nothing because he did it to prevent the bandits from bothering him. Before leaving, the male hunter said to hand over the bodies to him. If Han Seong-yun allowed it, the man would give him a skill as a reward. Han Seong-yun handed over the bandits' bodies. It turned out that the man absorbed some of the bodies with the gluttony skill. And as promised, the man then gave Han Seong-yun a skill called Wings of Steel. Getting this skill, Han Seong-yun was very happy because it enabled the user to create wings on their back, allowing them to fly. Next, they both headed to the public area. On the way there, the man explained that the public area was divided into arenas, auction places, and gambling areas. Additionally, he explained that the currently known other dimensional worlds were Ares, Murim, and Kallian. Where Ares prioritized chivalry, while Murim was similar but more aggressive. As for Kallian, it was the land of elves, fairies, and beastmen. And the reason the man knew this was that to find out such information, he used a question voucher. After some small talk, they finally arrived at the public area. And because their goals were different, they would scatter. Before leaving, the man gave Han Seong-yun his identity card. When he checked it, Han Seong-yun was quite surprised because the man was the manager of the Association of Hunter Challengers. The young man smiled and asked Seong-yun to call him whenever he was curious about something. Both of them entered the public area. When in this area, all abnormal statuses would return to normal and fights between challengers were not possible. The Korean hunter eagerly headed towards the auction while Seong-yun had to visit a certain place. When the Korean hunter asked where Seong-yun wanted to go, with a bright smile, Seong-yun replied that he would go to the arena. Seong-yun entered the arena, where he saw many people enthusiastically supporting some players and placing bets. He realized that the place was bustling like a sports betting area. At this moment, the system explained that this area reminded the Devil's Drag administrator of his memories. The gluttonous Iron Monarch administrator turned away from the disgusting place. Meanwhile, the excited White Crane Sword's master administrator reveled in the atmosphere of the arena. Seong-jun spotted an arena with various red chairs lined up. He realized he needed to go and sit there immediately. Once Seong-yun was seated, the arena system activated instantly, prompting him to choose between betting or fighting. If one chose to bet, they could place a wager on the fights between other participants. One could win or lose points depending on the outcome of the challenger they bet on. The third rule stated that if one chose to fight, they could challenge another participant to compete for a reward. Once a fight was confirmed, the real names and rankings of both parties would be revealed. Fights would only be confirmed when someone wagered a reward such as a skill item or authority. Players would only be matched with others who wagered rewards of equal value. Once a fight was confirmed, one could battle in the Colosseum. The fight would end if one side surrendered, and the individual would be returned to their original location before entering the battle. From the information map, Seong-yun realized that he would be automatically transported to the Colosseum once the fight was confirmed. The essence of the arena lay in rewards such as skill items and authority. Seong-yun became excited and impatient to see the rewards that caught his attention. Meanwhile, on the other side of the room, several people were amazed to see the figure of Huthfire Catherine, a famous and sexy hunter from America. They were astonished because it was the first time they had seen that female hunter. The girl named Catherine was sitting in a player's chair, staring at the screen in front of her while complaining that nobody challenged her to a fight. She suspected it was because she always won. Meanwhile, there would be many people requesting fights if her fight record wasn't displayed. Catherine thought it was only cowards in that place, making it very boring. Instead of wasting time, she preferred to leave, but as the girl with red hair was about to get up from her seat, she suddenly received a notification from the system that she had received a fight request from someone named Han Seong-yun. Catherine smiled, realizing that someone dared to challenge her even though they had never fought before. She found it intriguing. The system informed them that the fight had been confirmed, and they were both transported to the Colosseum. Finally, they faced each other in the Colosseum. Catherine said she liked Seong-yun's bravery in challenging her first. But the red-haired girl warned Seong-yun to be more careful in his choices. Finally, the system announced that the fight between Han Seong-yun and Catherine Bennett was about to begin. The short-haired girl quickly unleashed fire on her right arm and grinned menacingly, saying it was a learning experience for Seong-yun. The girl immediately activated the authority of Birth of Fire upon facing Seong-yun for the first time. The fire she emitted was so intense that it roared like a storm, then with a single swing, she conjured a sizable fireball at Seong-yun. Fortunately, the young man managed to dodge quickly by leaping, but unexpectedly, the fireball continued to pursue and hit him. Catherine was delighted and said it was over. But suddenly, the system activated the authority of Sword Chi Master. With this ability, Seong-yun managed to split the fireball with just one strike. Catherine was shocked to see her attack easily destroyed. Seong-yun stood gallantly in his place. Then he said, "It seems I will be the one giving Catherine a fighting experience." In a serene location, a girl in traditional attire was observing a picture. The image was reflected through the flying water in the light. She could see Han Seong-yun fighting there. The girl didn't expect Han Seong-yun to be so skilled in using sword chi. She also didn't regret giving him a good authority. The mysterious girl felt she had to build a good relationship with Han Seong-yun faster than other challengers. She believed that he could change what I couldn't change. It was there that Han Seong-yun was fighting Catherine in the Colosseum. He started by activating the instant acceleration skill to speed up his movements. Catherine, on the other hand, used the power of fire. Meanwhile, Han Seong-yun still relied on his trusted sword chi. However, Han Seong-yun's cloak was hit by Catherine's fire attack, causing him to fall to the ground. Han Seong-yun was slightly surprised to realize that the effect of his cloak was not strong enough because he didn't use Wind's Grace. Catherine was naturally pleased. She asked Han Seong-yun how long he would last. At that moment, the administrator began showing some support aimed at Han Seong-yun. On the other hand, Han Seong-yun also received a notification about mana usage increasing by 6% because he had been using Sword Chi Master for 3 minutes. Mana usage continued to increase as Han Seong-yun used his sword longer. Han Seong-yun realized that the fight would become more exhausting if he prolonged it. Therefore, the man absorbed Baek Sunhak's spirit to increase his stats permanently. Stamina increased by 2, agility by 1, strength by 3, magic powder by 3, durability by 2. Han Seong-yun also successfully absorbed one of Baek Sunhak's challenger skills. He now had the lightning sword chi skill. This power could make his sword chi have lightning power, strengthening his attacks and even making them deadly. Han Seong-yun tried to understand the power of the new lightning sword chi he had acquired. On the other hand, Catherine underestimated Han Seong-yun, who seemed unfocused as if he had plenty of time to spare. It was then that Catherine tried to attack Han Seong-yun with fire power again. The man tried to save himself. Then, by activating the Ashen Blood skill on his sword, he broke Catherine's attack. Han Seong-yun didn't know if his attack would succeed or not, but of course, he had to try it. Han Seong-yun activated the lightning sword chi he had just obtained and immediately launched an attack on Catherine. The woman quickly activated a shield before Han Seong-yun's attack hit her. However, as Catherine was busy dealing with the counterattack, Han Seong-yun was already behind her, brandishing his sword. Catherine praised Han Seong-yun for being exceptionally strong, and she admitted defeat. With an ending like that, Han Seong-yun was declared the winner of the duel. Therefore, he received the Tempest Sword skill as a prize and was returned to the public area of floor 10. Upon returning to his seat, Han Seong-yun thought that he regarded the duel as a means to train his sword chi, but he didn't expect Catherine to be strong enough to burn his cloak. Han Seong-yun promised to remember Catherine from that moment on. Han Seong-yun tried to check the status of the new skill he acquired, But to his disappointment, it wasn't a swordsmanship skill but a piercing skill. However, he was somewhat relieved because he could finally win a match. Han Seong-yun became excited and began to participate in duels for the second time. He returned to the Colosseum where he encountered a new challenger named Iwaki Yuji, who was ranked 11th in the Japanese server. Iwaki Yuji expressed his eagerness for the match, knowing that Han Seong-yun was currently ranked 3rd in Korea. However, to him, Han Seong-yun appeared like a vagabond, so he assumed the same about his skills. Han Seong-yun smiled, and naturally, Iwaki Yuji was curious about the reason. Han Seong-yun casually mentioned that he had similar thoughts. Quickly influenced, Iwaki Yuji attacked Han Seong-yun with his spear. However, for Han Seong-yun, the attack from Iwaki Yuji, ranked 11th in Japan, was surprisingly weak. Han Seong-yun then thought that perhaps it was because he had become very strong, making Iwaki Yuji's attack feel effortless. Han Seong-yun swiftly countered his challenger's attack and emerged victorious after Iwaki Yuji sustained considerable damage to his body. Subsequently, Han Seong-yun continued to win duels tirelessly until he finally achieved the title of Master of Duels and gained 2 additional stamina points. Meanwhile, in China, a man was surprised during his training when someone reported that the venerable elder Baek Sunhak had been killed. The informant continued that before his death, Baek Sunhak had spoken about a place called the Earth Dimension, which had recently been rumored to be connected to their world, and Baek Sunhak had attempted a floor invasion. Suddenly, a monster emerged from behind the bamboo forest and attempted to attack them. Meanwhile, the man on the rock muttered. It had been 5 years since he had rested from climbing the tower. With his strength, the man drew a hidden sword from behind the rock. He then confidently engaged the giant-sized monster in combat. The man leaped high and stopped right above the monster's head, effortlessly plunging his sword into it. The messenger from earlier could only gaze at the young master with admiration. According to the servant, the martial arts skills of the young master were indeed formidable, to the extent of easily defeating such mythical creatures. After defeating the monster, the young master brought up the Earth Dimension again, finding it intriguing. He instructed the messenger to gather all information about Baek Sunhak's killer. Han Seong-yun had returned to the lobby on the 10th floor. He immediately rested by lying down on the bed. Han Seong-yun observed his stats. Unexpectedly, he gained access to another authority from an unexpected place. Han Seong-yun obtained the authority Wings of Steel, which could grant him steel wings capable of flying with the power of magic powder. Han Seong-yun was delighted to acquire an authority that allowed him to fly freely. However, the problem was that he had to buy the wings, but his current SP was not enough. Han Seong-yun would think about it later, so for now, he absorbed all the authorities he had previously acquired. He activated the Skill Synthesis Authority and created new skills until the entire process was completed. Han Seong-yun was pleased that after a long and tiring day, he could easily and neatly store all his new skills. Han Seong-yun observed the skills he obtained, namely, Defense Counter Shield, Movement Speed Clandestine Shadow Step, and Attack Speed Chaotic Sword Fighting. Han Seong-yun was interested in the defense skill ranked B and immediately activated it. Feeling sufficiently rested, Han Seong-yun re-entered the 10th floor of the Tower of Trials with a hard difficulty level and a teamwork theme. Their goal was to stop the rise of the darkness-devouring monarch. The team would be disbanded after completing the mission. The reward for completing the mission was a potion of skill proficiency. Shortly afterward, team members were placed one by one based on their ranking. The participants were ranked highest to lowest: Kim Sung-hoon, Oh Chun-sik, the hunter Han Seong-yun, and Princess Sudi. The 4 of them began to converse. They were quite surprised to learn that the theme of the trial was teamwork. Chun-sik looked pleased because Sung-hoon also seemed to have climbed the tower. At that moment, Han Seong-yun immediately realized that those ranked first and second had met in a previous trial. Princess Sudi then pointed towards Han Seong-yun, someone she had encountered on the 4th floor. Sung-hoon quickly guessed that Princess Sudi and Han Seong-yun had indeed met on a previous floor. However, judging from their reactions, their encounter hadn't gone smoothly. Princess Sudi confirmed it. They had indeed met on the 4th floor for a teamwork trial, but Han Seong-yun had decided to boost his growth by continuing to kill. The man explained while crying. However, others knew that he was Princess Sudi or Kim Sung-jin. Deceiving others had become his daily routine. He deliberately created conflicts by sowing discord among others and seized the opportunity to claim rewards. It was a survival tactic that he intentionally developed, which had always been successful in the Tower of Trials. The clown administrator laughed heartily at Princess Sudi's performance. Princess Sudi thought Han Seong-yun would be fooled by her acting. She could see the stiff and astonished expression on his face. Princess Sudi planned to exaggerate the acting she had done before. Han Seong-yun tried to deny it, but Princess Sudi immediately added to the story. She claimed that Han Seong-yun had mercilessly killed his team members. Han Seong-yun, of course, had no idea what the man meant. However, Seong-hoon, who heard everything, became emotional. For him, rather than having a team of 4 divided individuals, it was better to have 3 people with good teamwork. Moreover, the Tower of Trials was not an easy place. Seong-hoon wanted to know who between Princess Sudi and Han Seong-yun was telling the truth because he would immediately execute the liar. Han Seong-yun quickly pondered. If he guessed wrong, he would have to fight against 3 people at once, which could be a very bad scenario. At that moment, Chun-sik began to speak. He analyzed Princess Sudi's statement about meeting Han Seong-yun on the 4th floor. That meant Princess Sudi should know Han Seong-yun's real name, who used the name Hunter at that time. Moreover, the system for new nicknames was available in the lobby on the 5th floor. Therefore, if Princess Sudi could tell Han Seong-yun's real name, everything would be answered. Princess Sudi was certainly surprised by the question. She quickly answered that the hunter's real name was Lee Keelman. In her heart, Princess Sudi knew that Han Seong-yun wouldn't be able to prove his real name there. Chun-sik asked Han Seong-yun, who was called Lee Keelman, to speak at that moment. Of course, Han Seong-yun immediately realized that Princess Sudi was lying. He promptly showed his hunter license card. In his mind, Han Seong-yun was ecstatic because he had taken that card when he returned to Earth. He didn't expect the card to be useful at a time like this. He introduced himself as Han Seong-yun. Princess Sudi was very surprised. Meanwhile, Seong-hoon could immediately decide whom he would execute now. Princess Sudi quickly felt cornered at that moment. Princess Sudi also received many negative comments, thus her life was ruined. At that moment, Han Seong-yun intervened. He told Seong-hoon to handle the situation on his own, especially since he was the one aggrieved and feeling extremely frustrated. Seong-hoon, of course, granted him the opportunity. Princess Sudi felt somewhat relieved because only one person would be opposing her, although the 3 of them should have had the chance to attack her simultaneously. This meant she had a chance to defeat Han Seong-yun. The worst-case scenario would be Seong-hoon and Chun-sik struggling to execute the trial that should have been done by 4 people. Han Seong-yun began provoking Princess Sudi, who had said some very intriguing things earlier. Thus, Princess Sudi should take responsibility for what she had uttered. Princess Sudi tried to evade this by stating she was unfamiliar with the term responsibility. The only thing she cared about was survival. Moreover, it wasn't just Han Seong-yun who possessed strength. Princess Sudi started attacking using the sprawling root spirits of the marsh, which quickly grasped Han Seong-yun's legs. Using only his mana resistance skill, Han Seong-yun could eliminate those roots. He then launched a counterattack. Princess Sudi was frustrated knowing her opponent had a mana resistance skill. The battle intensified as they exchanged blows. Seong-hoon asked Chun-sik to step back and keep his distance. Chun-sik refused as he enjoyed being there and experiencing the fight firsthand. Seong-hoon urged him to comply because caution was wise. Chun-sik could only feel sorrow as Seong-hoon eventually dragged him away. He was still unwilling to lose that front row seat. On the 10th floor, Princess Sudi continued her relentless assault while Han Seong-yun tried to evade. Han Seong-yun attempted to strike back, but Princess Sudi claimed the hunter had now become the prey. Confused by Princess Sudi's words, he quickly surveyed his surroundings. Han Seong-yun soon realized that the balls Princess Sudi had used earlier were now reversing direction towards him. Seeing the explosion, Princess Sudi laughed heartily. She mocked Han Seong-yun, who had previously shown off but was now under attack. However, Princess Sudi's happiness didn't last long. Han Seong-yun had used a countershield skill to protect himself from her attacks. Calmly, Han Seong-yun remarked that Princess Sudi shouldn't be surprised because it was just the beginning. Princess Sudi couldn't believe her attacks were countered so easily. It was then that Seong-yun retaliated. Watching the fight, Chun-sik became curious and asked Seong-hoon who exactly Han Seong-yun was. However, Seong-hoon didn't know him. He had never seen a man like him among high-ranking hunters. This only left Chun-sik more puzzled. If Seong-hoon didn't recognize him, then perhaps Han Seong-yun was just an ordinary person. The problem was that an ordinary person wouldn't be able to do what Han Seong-yun was doing. Seong-yun stated that if Han Seong-yun wasn't a high-ranking hunter, then it would surely be difficult for him to fight Princess Sudi. However, upon further inspection, Han Seong-yun hadn't even fully exerted his strength yet. Seong-yun also felt they were at the same level. Chun-sik, of course, couldn't believe it because when they had just arrived on the 10th floor, Han Seong-yun was ranked 3rd or 2nd from the bottom. Seong-yun explained that what he said was still speculation. However, if Han Seong-yun had never been on a good team in previous cooperation trials, then all those skills would still be useless. Meanwhile, the fight between Han Seong-yun and Princess Sudi continued. Princess Sudi even got injured in her hand due to Han Seong-yun's attack. Seong-yun was surprised by Han Seong-yun's fighting style. Instead of killing her, he was just suppressing her. He was a very calm man. Princess Sudi tried to restrain Han Seong-yun. She then tried to persuade him by saying if he killed her, he might not survive the trial. Princess Sudi urged him to think carefully. The trial was supposed to consist of the top 4 ranked individuals. If they were short of one person, in a tower of trial situation that clearly wouldn't provide an easy trial, then their team lacking one person would surely fail. It was at that moment that Han Seong-yun looked towards Seong-yun and Chun-sik. Seong-yun immediately declared that they wouldn't intervene and would let him do as he pleased. However, before Han Seong-yun could finish speaking, Princess Sudi seized the opportunity to grab a sword and attempted to attack. Han Seong-yun was understandably furious upon realizing this and immediately tried to counterattack. However, suddenly a force pulled Princess Sudi's body away. Princess Sudi activates her unique deceit trait, which can boost all stats by 10. Although deep down she wants to conceal her trump card, this time she has no other choice. Princess Sudi immediately attacks Han Seong-yun again. Han Seong-yun employs the shield he possesses to fend off the attack, but Princess Sudi is cunning as she strikes from all directions. Han Seong-yun promptly activates the Wind's Grace skill, increasing his speed by 40%. At that moment, Han Seong-yun also remarks that it would be far better to undertake the cooperation trial as a trio rather than working with trash like Princess Sudi. Han Seong-yun will use the counter shield skill, which will release accumulated damage with a single strike. It's then that Princess Sudi finally loses, and Han Seong-yun obtains his rewards, a Vampire Count's old tailcoat and a Heavenly Blood demonic sword, which he will surely use. At that moment, Seong-yun and Chun-sik approach. Chun-sik immediately praises the man's fighting ability, while Seong-yun ensures that everything is indeed finished. Han Seong-yun states that it's all thanks to the both of them. Then an announcement appears stating that in 10 minutes, the trial will finally begin, and all challengers are asked to prepare themselves. The 3 of them finally step inside. They are promptly greeted by a massive statue of a horse rider. Chun-sik worries that the statue will come to life later. Seong-yun suggests that it might happen since they are inside the tower. At that moment, Han Seong-yun also becomes intrigued, staring directly into the eyes of the horse rider statue. However, they choose to continue their journey until they arrive at a location. Chun-sik looks around and is confident they are in the right place. In that place, there are 3 more terrifying statues tightly chained. They are also convinced that the headless statue sitting right in front of them is the Dark Monarch. As soon as they arrive, the trial for the 10th floor begins. The countdown timer starts, and the Dark Royal Order also appears. They must stop the resurrection of the Dark Monarch. At that moment, the 3 statues that were previously standing suddenly move, breaking free from all the chains binding them. The 3 statues immediately prepare to fight against Han Seong-yun and his team, who are ready. Seong-yun feels confident, stating that his body feels stiff, so he needs to warm up. Han Seong-yun then reveals that their task is to prevent the Guardians from surrendering the heads on their backs to the Monarch. Seong-yun understands, and they divide the tasks so that each of them can deal with one Guardian. Both Han Seong-yun and the Guardians are prepared to attack each other. He hopes everyone will be lucky this time. The 3 men have already divided the task of facing each Guardian one by one. Han Seong-yun is so confident in defeating the statue with a single sword chi attack. However, it turns out the attack is blocked by the Guardian statue. Han Seong-yun immediately realizes that the Guardian is not an easy enemy. He becomes curious about Seong-yun and Chun-sik's conditions at the moment. Seong-yun is fighting a Guardian, but the Guardian escapes easily and tries to run towards the Dark Monarch. Seong-yun quickly stops him with an attack. At that moment, he realizes that all the Guardians are equivalent to bosses. He then advises Chun-sik and asks him not to act recklessly. However, on the other hand, Chun-sik accuses Seong-yun of being reckless there. On the other hand, Chun-sik wears his hat, which doesn't suit him. However, just because he wears the ridiculous hat now, it means the Guardian will die. Chun-sik begins to attack with the arrow weapon he possesses. The Guardian tries to evade and easily approaches Chun-sik. Chun-sik knows that when fighting a mage, he must fight from close range, but that only applies if the opponent is an ordinary mage. Han Seong-yun, who is observing their fighting styles, is quite impressed. Previously, he only met weak challengers. So, seeing Seong-hoon and Chun-sik's abilities also motivates him further. He wants to fight better. Han Seong-yun attacks again, using the Wind's Grace skill to increase his speed. He also uses the clandestine Shadow Step skill to temporarily increase his strength. He also activates chaotic sword fighting so his attacking power increases. Finally, he uses the lightning sword skill. Han Seong-yun attempts to attack the Guardian's face and successfully shatters it. On the other hand, Seong-hoon uses a lightning bomb to attack until the Guardian is defeated. Soon after, Chun-sik also manages to defeat the Guardian after wearing his magic hat. The three Guardians eventually choose to flee. Seong-hoon thinks everything is over after they manage to destroy the Dark Monarch's head, meaning they no longer need to worry about its resurrection. Seong-hoon finally asks them all to tidy up the rest while chasing the three Guardians trying to escape. At that moment, Han Seong-yun suddenly hears a strange sound. The three Guardians form a very strange formation, followed by the arrival of the horse rider statue they saw earlier. The statue runs and turns the previous formation of three Guardians into a platform to jump high. The horse rider statue lands right in front of the Dark Monarch's body. Han Seong-yun and the others immediately turn around, but because they are already too far away, it's difficult for them to stop it. At that moment, the horse rider is ready to jump to attach the Dark Monarch's head. Han Seong-yun tries to summon lightning power into his sword to shoot the head at the same time it attaches to the Dark Monarch's neck. Luckily, the Dark Monarch's head shatters at that moment. Chun-sik is, of course, happy to see it, but they know the struggle is not over. The horse rider, who previously tried to attach the Dark Monarch's head, instead takes the intact crown and puts it on its head. The horse rider then, with its weapon, breaks its head and intends to attach it to the Dark Monarch's body. Realizing something bad is about to happen, Han Seong-yun and the others try to stop it. Three men almost succeeded in attacking, but it turned out the head had already successfully attached to the body of the Dark Monarch. The fusion of head and body caused a massive explosion. After all the conditions were met, the Dark Monarch had successfully risen. Of course, this was very dangerous. Furthermore, their ultimate goal had now changed, which was to defeat the Dark Monarch. The Dark Monarch had risen again, and Han Seong-yun and others had to defeat the Dark Monarch. The monster then used authority because of inviolability, all damage would be nullified for him. Challengers with stats higher than the Monarch could inflict damage. Han Seong-yun was quite confused because it was the first time he knew that monsters could use authority. The Dark Monarch immediately grabbed his sword and began attacking with tremendous force. Of course, Han Seong-yun couldn't believe what he was seeing, even unreasonable abilities. However, because he knew they couldn't inflict damage, it meant there was nothing they could do either. Dark Monarch finally attacked Han Seong-yun, and the man was injured on his side. For now, they had no way out to defeat the Dark Monarch, and that was very troublesome. However, he suddenly thought of something. At that moment, Seong-hoon and Chun-sik ran towards him and made sure of his condition. They also said that they had to find a way to attack the Dark Monarch, but first, they had to defeat the guards. At that moment, Seong-yun asked the two men to help him stop the movement of the Dark Monarch. Of course, Seong-hoon wanted to know the meaning of the request because he felt they wouldn't be able to inflict damage on the monarch, so it would be more effective for him to defeat the guards first. Han Seong-yun said that he had thought of one possible way to defeat the Dark Monarch. Seong-hoon chose to follow Seong-yun's plan. So he could only hope that Seong-yun could finish everything soon because they wouldn't be able to hold back the Dark Monarch for too long. After that, Seong-hoon took Chun-sik and left, and Seong-yun stayed with the guards in front of him. On the other hand, Seong-hoon began to attack the Dark Monarch with the lightning bomb power he possessed. However, as they already knew, any attack would not affect him. The Dark Monarch also activated the authority of a monarch's dignity, where when someone paid respect to him, all unauthorized movements would be restricted. At that moment, Seong-hoon and Chun-sik's bodies seemed to be controlled, and they changed their position to kneel towards the Dark Monarch. That was when the Dark Monarch seized the opportunity to attack them. Meanwhile, Seong-hoon quickly activated the mana resistance he possessed. However, the skill didn't work at all, and Seong-yun immediately protected Chun-sik. The attack hit Seong-yun's body directly and immediately injured him behind the mask. Chun-sik was naturally worried, and he immediately tried to take Seong-yun away from there. As soon as the Dark Monarch was about to attack them again, Seong-yun quickly created a shield to protect them all. He also apologized for being late to help. Han Seong-yun had absorbed all the stored souls, and his stats had also permanently increased after he successfully killed all the guards. Strength increased by 4, agility increased by 3, stamina increased by 3, magic powder increased by 6, and durability increased by 4. The skill counter shield would release accumulated damage at once. He also activated Sword Chi Mater and Lightning Sword Chi. Han Seong-yun finally attacked, and the attack hit the Dark Monarch's body accurately. However, the Dark Monarch refused to lose, and he again used the power of the Monarch's dignity. At that moment, Han Seong-yun's body immediately showed a kneeling position. He tried hard to ward him off with forceful breakthroughs and mana resistance skills. The plan worked because the Dark Monarch's skill no longer affected him. The previously used skill also leveled up to level C. Han Seong-yun and the Dark Monarch attacked each other again. Han Seong-yun could even smile in such a dangerous situation. He felt a great desire to win and a desire to become stronger over time. On the other hand, Chun-sik, who saw the entire fight, felt that Han Seong-yun was a monster. Meanwhile, Seong-yun felt strange because he could now only see someone fighting from behind. However, they had to congratulate Han Seong-yun because he had successfully become the new top ranker. On the other hand, Han Seong-yun had successfully absorbed the maximum damage into the shield he possessed. He only needed to reduce the scope of his attack and focus his energy on the Dark Monarch to increase his strength drastically. He shot, and his attack managed to injure the Dark Monarch's arm. At that moment, Han Seong-yun seized the opportunity to attack. He activated Wind's Grace and chaotic swordfighting play to once again strike the Dark Monarch's head. He successfully defeated the monster. Meanwhile, someone was watching Han Seong-yun's fight. He couldn't believe that a challenger with such an insane growth rate was his contractor. A normal challenger climbing the tower would carefully prepare to avoid risks. After spending a lot of time, they could only complete one floor. However, Han Seong-yun was very different. He was a very valuable person and rarely found in any dimension. At this point, he was at a stage where his desire to grow had been perfectly formed. However, over time, other admins would slowly become interested in Han Seong-yun, so he had to approach them before anyone else to achieve his greatest desire. Han Seong-yun successfully defeated the Dark Monarch, meaning he had completed the 10th floor of the Tower of Trial. Han Seong-yun also received rewards, a potion to increase skill proficiency, 60,000 points, and a total of 2,000 SP, special points. He also became the best challenger and received a special reward of tens of thousands of SP. Han Seong-yun was certainly delighted to receive such abundant additional rewards, but everything was in line with the extremely difficult trial challenges. Everyone was amazed by Han Seong-yun's abilities. Chun-sik also didn't expect that he could defeat the Dark Monarch. Han Seong-yun mentioned that he had the right skills to use and, besides, he was also lucky. Seong-yun felt that Han Seong-yun had surprised them a lot that day. Seong-yun wanted to discuss all of that in more detail after they truly became friends. Seong-yun and Chun-sik sent friend requests to Han Seong-yun, and they parted ways there. After Han Seong-yun completed the 10th floor trial, a notification appeared about 1,000 people who had completed the same level. System expansion was about to begin. The dimensional travel category has been added to the shop. Now, he could go to other dimensions using dimensional travel. Han Seong-yun was certainly interested because it meant he could go to places like Ares or Murim, even though it was akin to suicide. The observation domain had expanded the dimensions of the Earth, and Han Seong-yun was asked to meet the administrator in the lobby. The interface domain had also expanded the dimensions of the Earth, and Han Seong-yun could go to the administrator and make additional contracts, but only one contract could be made, and even that was limited. Additional contracts could also be cancelled at any time. Han Seong-yun tried to think about the possibilities. If he decided on an additional contract, it would mean that the contractor would be disadvantaged. Han Seong-yun, who didn't know the terms and conditions, would disregard it and rearrange all the rewards obtained from completing today's mission. First, he drank the potion to increase his skill proficiency. Han Seong-yun then had to choose which skill to enhance. Without hesitation, Han Seong-yun wanted to increase the level of the Wind's Grace skill by 1 level. After that, Han Seong-yun absorbed the soul of the Dark Monarch, causing his stats to permanently increase. Strength increased by 5, agility by 4, stamina by 4, magic powder by 7, durability by 5. In addition, Han Seong-yun would absorb one of the Dark Monarch's skills, which was mana management. Han Seong-yun finally realized that he was a genius bestowed with magic powder. Han Seong-yun still couldn't believe all the achievements he had gained. Shortly after, he received many invitations from the administrators. Han Seong-yun finally accepted the invitation and entered the Iron Blood World area. He immediately went to the administrator's house, and the woman there welcomed him warmly. The administrator was very happy because Han Seong-yun chose to come to her world. She finally won the bet. Han Seong-yun now understood why the invitation had come together. It turned out they were indeed betting. Han Seong-yun then followed the administrator inside. He asked if the administrator wasn't feeling cold just wearing a towel like that, and the administrator quickly said she wasn't cold. Han Seong-yun began to inquire about the mana management skill he had acquired earlier. He wanted to know if the administrator knew anything about it. The administrator said that she had a good skill. She would explain about the skill before the two of them entered the cabin. The administrator explained that the mana management skill had to be connected with Han Seong-yun, who had to gather as much magic powder inside his body as possible. Han Seong-yun immediately practiced it until the mana circuit had a significant impact due to the activation of the mana management skill. Han Seong-yun felt his physical strength increase several times over. At that moment, Han Seong-yun tested his strength. However, his strength was so great that it caused the administrator to lose the towel she was wearing. After that training session, they chose to enjoy food inside the cabin. The administrator began to talk about how she didn't expect Han Seong-yun to be a man who did cunning things like before. Han Seong-yun was naturally shocked and choked. He quickly denied it, and the administrator teased him. The administrator continued to say that if Han Seong-yun had time, he should try to activate the magic skills he had one by one with mana management. As Han Seong-yun's understanding of mana increased, every magic skill he possessed would also increase in level. Han Seong-yun then asked why the administrator had summoned him there. The administrator began to inquire about the expansion of the system upon entering the 11th floor lobby. Han Seong-yun knew it because it was also the reason he could come to that world without the tower. The administrator affirmed that the addition of the interference domain was not for that reason. The real reason was so that the administrators could actively educate the challengers they guided. Han Seong-yun wanted to know what that meant. The administrator explained that the Iron-Blooded Monarch administrator had used an interference domain and given a challenger authority. That authority was even carved into Han Seong-yun's soul. Han Seong-yun was curious if the administrator could give such authority from the beginning. She immediately said no. Because she could do that, it meant that the administrator had done enough for the tower, so she could do that now. Han Seong-yun realized that the ability to add additional contracts was added, so choosing another challenger was a good option for him. But why did the administrator help him so much? The administrator said she could see Han Seong-yun's potential. Of course, he wanted to hear more. The administrator explained again that the administrator would be rewarded for nurturing the challengers they had guided so far, but the reason was not positive. The administrator invested in the challengers because of their true desires. At that moment, other invitations continued to come from the White Crane Swordmaster's administrator. The administrator realized that someone out there was getting impatient, so they could end their conversation. They exchanged farewell greetings, and Han Seong-yun immediately left to attend the next invitation. He now found himself in the White Crane Swordmaster's place, which was so calm and filled with bamboo trees. Han Seong-yun admired the place, which seemed perfect for training. Coincidentally, he still wanted to train in mana management as discussed by the Iron-Blooded Monarch. Han Seong-yun began training and focused on improving several skills. Skills like 3 lacerations, instant acceleration, and counter shield all improved. Han Seong-yun was certainly pleased, and he also wanted to use the sword chi. However, it turned out that Han Seong-yun couldn't activate sword chi through mana management. He wanted to upgrade the rank of 3 lacerations using sword chi, but he still felt strange. He suspected it was because sword chi was not an authority. However, as the White Crane Swordmaster was still waiting, he had to put aside that issue for the time being. Han Seong-yun immediately went to meet the administrator who had been waiting. However, judging by the nickname, Han Seong-yun felt that he was an old man like Baek Sunhak. However, he was surprised when he finally arrived at the administrator's residence, who had been waiting for him for a long time. She welcomed Han Seong-yun and introduced herself as the administrator of the White Crane Swordmaster. She also said she had been eagerly awaiting Han Seong-yun's arrival. Han Seong-yun was quite surprised by the appearance of the administrator, who turned out to be a young woman. The administrator asked if there was a problem. Han Seong-yun said he was amazed to meet the administrator, with whom he had previously only communicated through messages. The administrator laughed and she invited Han Seong-yun to sit beside her so they could talk. As soon as the man sat down, he could immediately feel the refreshing sensation. He was not surprised why the administrator liked being there. The administrator then said that from here on, I have always been observing Han Seong-yun. She even saw Han Seong-yun fighting fiercely with Baek Sun-hak on the 9th floor. Han Seong-yun understood that the administrator had been watching him all this time to oversee the trial. However, he thought it was a pity if the administrator gave authority to a challenger they had only met once. The administrator immediately denied it. She knew for sure how valuable Han Seong-yun was, and he should also realize it. Although the venerable elder Baek Sun-hak could not achieve lightning sword chi, before that she was also a strong sword master in Murim. Even though I had lost some of my power upon entering the tower, defeating someone like that was a great achievement. The administrator then revealed that Han Seong-yun would no longer be able to deny it because it was she who contracted with Baek Sun-hak. Of course, Han Seong-yun was surprised. He worried that the administrator might hold a grudge against him. As if realizing it, the administrator asked Han Seong-yun not to worry. She understood that he was just a challenger who needed to earn points. The administrator had also contracted with many challengers, but none had been invited to come, except Han Seong-yun. The administrator was aware that Han Seong-yun must have already realized my intentions. However, she still had to say that I wanted to make an additional contract with Han Seong-yun. Hearing this, Han Seong-yun asked what benefits he would gain by doing so. The administrator offered to make Han Seong-yun her disciple. Of course, Han Seong-yun wanted to know the benefits of becoming the disciple of this young administrator. The administrator explained that an administrator could only appoint one disciple in their lifetime. For a challenger who could become an administrator's disciple, it meant a special contract had been formed within the tower. In addition, a challenger who was the administrator's disciple could purchase all the authority from that administrator. Han Seong-yun never imagined that being a disciple would be so important. Yet the iron-blooded monarch administrator had not explained anything to him, even though I was also a disciple of that woman. Han Seong-yun then wanted to know about additional contracts that could be cancelled at any time. If the administrator made such a lifelong contract, then I would be at a disadvantage if Han Seong-yun decided to cancel it. The administrator continued that she had chosen Han Seong-yun to fulfill my true desire. The administrator needed the sharpest sword. The best sword that would not bend or dull. And Han Seong-yun had the potential to become that sword. Han Seong-yun thought about his true desire. The same words were spoken by the iron-blooded monarch. Maybe the true desire was quite simple. So, he wanted to know what the true desire of that girl was. The administrator began to explain about my true desire. She said that the true desires of an administrator usually come from past regrets that are still embedded in their memories. At the same time, the true desire might be an authority granted by the tower to the administrator. Just like the Tower of Trial, it is a test that can only be given to a challenger who has made a contract with the administrator. Once that true desire is fulfilled, the challenger will be rewarded. The administrator said that if my true desire is fulfilled, Han Seong-yun could change the past. Of course, Han Seong-yun was shocked to hear that. The fact that he might be able to change the past. However, that was something impossible to do. The administrator assured that in the end, Han Seong-yun would find out whether what she said was true or not by continuing to climb the tower. Han Seong-yun tried to think about the possibilities. He then asked the administrator one more thing. He wanted to know how far he should climb the tower until the true desire of the administrator was fulfilled. The administrator was somewhat hesitant to say that Han Seong-yun should climb to the highest floor of the Tower of Trial. After considering everything, the contract was eventually made. Of course, the administrator was very pleased because Han Seong-yun made the right decision that would not be regretted. Han Seong-yun did indeed accept the contract. He was well aware of the ultimate goal of the administrators, all of whom resided on the highest floor of the Tower of Trial. In return, he was also acknowledged as the true disciple of the White Crane Swordmaster Administrator. With that, the effectiveness of his authority and skills in the Miram dimension increased as well. Currently, he has become a disciple of 2 administrators, which helped enhance his agility. Han Seong-yun certainly couldn't miss the opportunity to instantly become stronger. Furthermore, he could also receive special rewards. It was then that the administrator asked about someone who continuously searched for him. The administrator became very annoyed because the Iron Blood administrator seemed to not be doing his job correctly. She seemed to already trust Han Seong-yun greatly. The administrator said that she also trusted Han Seong-yun, but she wanted to ask using a question voucher if the man didn't mind. Han Seong-yun certainly didn't mind. After all, he had only been keeping it without knowing how to use it all this time. It was then that Han Seong-yun saw his question voucher depleted instantly. He wondered what kind of question the administrator wanted to ask. The administrator began to talk about the great power known as the Miram Alliance that resided in the Miram dimension. Baek Sun-hak, who had been killed by Han Seong-yun on the 9th floor of the tower, held a high position as an elder of the Miram Alliance. Because of this, someone from the Miram was now seeking Han Seong-yun. Han Seong-yun immediately guessed that someone from the Miram Alliance was trying to kill him. The administrator quickly denied it. Currently, the Miram Alliance was in turmoil due to internal strife to vie for the vacant position of the highest leader. Han Seong-yun became curious about who wanted his death. The administrator said that it was the sword dragon from the Namgung family originating from Shinjuku, Tokyo. That person was dubbed the Blue Heaven Sword Dragon, whose real name was Namgung Hyuk. He was famous among martial arts fanatics who had settled in the Miram dimension for centuries. He was also referred to as a genius. Although Namgung Hyuk indeed wanted to find Han Seong-yun to seek revenge, the real reason was merely curiosity. The administrator didn't know when, but if Han Seong-yun were to meet Namgung Hyuk, he should be prepared to defend his life. After all those conversations, Han Seong-yun was finally sent to the lobby of the 11th floor. He pondered once again on all the administrator's words about Namgung Hyuk. A ruthless killer from the Miram was seeking Han Seong-yun's whereabouts, even though they were the ones who attacked his floor first. It was then that Han Seong-yun purchased the authority of Wings of Steel and a return stone. He felt that nothing had truly changed after learning this new fact. He simply had to prepare himself to level up before facing Namgung Hyuk. After using the return stone, Han Seong-yun would return to Earth. However, upon arriving back on Earth and checking his phone, he was surprised to see many missed calls and messages. Han Seong-yun was asked to immediately go to the Hunter Association. Naturally, Han Seong-yun was curious about what was happening there. He quickly changed his clothes and flew towards the Hunter Association. At the Hunter Association, hunters began to pour out of the building. They were discussing mobilization. There was footage of an incident in Japan. Han Seong-yun arrived, attracting everyone's attention as he flew in. He casually apologized to everyone. Upon arrival, Han Seong-yun was greeted by Haeyeon and another officer. They apologized for inconveniencing Han Seong-yun in the tower. They exchanged greetings, and Han Seong-yun immediately asked why they had called him there. They explained that a major event had occurred in Japan. If Han Seong-yun had already heard about it, Haeyeon was worried he might recklessly fly to Japan alone. That's why they called him there. The man said that there was something to discuss, but due to the dire situation, they needed to get straight to the point. The male officer showed footage from a body camera of a Japanese hunter that had been shared with the Hunter Association. The association had detected strong waves from inside the gate in Shinjuku, Tokyo. They had also dispatched 7 rank A hunters to the scene. Surprisingly, the creature that emerged from the gate managed to kill 6 rank A hunters within seconds. There were speculations that it was a challenger from another world invading the Earth dimension. Han Seong-yun was naturally puzzled. If the human was dangerous, then all hunters should be called to help Japan instead of returning home. The Hunter Association explained that since such a situation had never occurred before, every country was trying to protect their respective hunters. That's why they prohibited hunters from going to the scene. The same thing was happening in their country. That's why they wouldn't send hunters to help Japan. Furthermore, that footage was the only one from the surviving hunter. Han Seong-yun continued to watch the footage. A man was walking there. The stranger began to speak, claiming to be the Blue Heaven Sword Dragon, Namgung Hyuk, who had come to avenge Baek Sun-hak. Han Seong-yun was naturally shocked that they were brought together so quickly. Sensing Han Seong-yun's expression, Haeyeon asked him not to worry because they were not obligated to go. She instead invited the man to eat together since they hadn't met for a long time. Haeyeon made sure Han Seong-yun wouldn't leave, but the man insisted otherwise. He would go to Shinjuku, Tokyo. Haeyeon was very upset because the man always did reckless things. Han Seong-yun had to start considering other people's feelings. He patted Haeyeon's head and thanked her for her concern. However, he still had to go because it was a matter that needed to be resolved. Meanwhile, in Japan, a boy from the past wondered why nobody understood the voice of the sword. He stood there with a cold face, staring at the sword filled with a dark aura in his hand. 3 boys in front of him advised him because one of their companions was injured due to the sword practice they were doing. They thought it was too much for a light sword practice. An old man approached and said that the boy, Namgung-hyuk, had already achieved sword chi at the age of 13. He believed that the boy had achieved more than he had done when he was young. However, the master rubbed his young disciple's head and said that martial arts were not meant to harm people but were a path to surpass limits. So, Baek Sunhak asked Namgung-hyuk not to hurt anyone without reason. The young Namgung could only remain silent, listening to his master's advice. Several years later, this young man transformed into a challenger from the Murim dimension who successfully climbed the 20th floor of the tower. He received praise from everyone, but even so, he still felt unsatisfied. His desire was not satisfied just by climbing the tower. Although many people admired him for achieving such a feat at the age of 17, he still wasn't content. But now, he used a dimension invasion ticket and crossed over to Korea to kill people according to his true desires. Namgung-hyuk apologized to his grandfather because he preferred destroying humans over monsters. Currently, Namgung-hyuk was sitting on top of a car, saying that he had long been unsatisfied with just killing monsters and cleaning them up. Wandering in the Murim world and killing people was also not allowed. But now he was satisfied because he could act as he pleased, and he was sure that Han Seong-yun would make all of this even more enjoyable. Finally, Han Seong-yun arrived in Japan. He was picked up by someone in a luxurious car and escorted by police to the Hunter headquarters in Japan. Upon arrival at the youth's office, he was directed to enter one of the rooms because someone else was waiting for him inside. As Han Seong-yun entered the room, Chun-sik immediately showed a broad smile and said he was glad to meet the young man again after meeting on the 10th floor of the tower. Seong-yun said that Han Seong-yun arrived later than expected. Han Seong-yun entered the room and said that he heard from the association that both of them were there, but he did not expect them to arrive earlier than him. Han Seong-yun asked if they were gathering because of the request to help Japan. Sun Ji-eun replied that he heard an additional challenger was coming from America. Han Seong-yun thought that the 3 of them alone equated to Hunter rank S. He believed that the other challenger appearing in Shinjuku at the moment was an unknown monster who might defeat the 3 of them. So it would be good if the challenger from America was also strong enough. Not long after, the door opened and a girl with red hair entered the room. Han Seong-yun was surprised to realize that the hunter was Catherine. The association officer asked if the 2 of them already knew each other. Han Seong-yun answered more or less because they had met at the tower. With an embarrassed face, Catherine said she didn't want to meet Han Seong-yun like this. Catherine explained enthusiastically that she wanted to meet the young man in a more normal way. Han Seong-yun, who didn't understand the girl's intention, said, "Didn't they meet normally from the beginning? That's why they meet again in a normal way like this." Catherine said it was true, but at least the young man should say it more gently. Sun Ji-eun, who had been watching the argument between them, thought they were like a couple fighting. But Han Seong-yun quickly replied that it was impossible. After everyone gathered, the female officer introduced herself as the association leader in Japan, Ari Chika. Han Seong-yun was surprised to hear that the girl was a leader of the Hunter Association. Because the woman had also picked him up at the airport earlier. So Han Seong-yun originally thought the girl was just an ordinary Hunter Association employee. Now Han Seong-yun realized that Japan must be very desperate for their leader to pick up the challengers themselves. Ari Chika said it had been suspected that no one else would help Japan because the situation was worse than she thought, so she felt they made regulations for hunters' assistance. Chun-sik felt surprised and said that although Japan regulated the hunters, it was unexpected that there were only 4 participants from around the world. Catherine now also realized that the situation was worse than she thought. Ari Chika's hand trembled as she said that currently, no country wanted to help Japan. So she bowed as a thank you because the 4 of them came to Japan when everyone else ignored it. Han Seong-yun immediately approached Ari Chika and asked her to straighten her head back because now was not the time to bow. Han Seong-yun said instead of bowing, the leader could increase their reward now. Then loudly Han Seong-yun asked the leader of the Japanese Hunter Association to double the promised reward. That way, he would actively assist in solving this problem. In his heart, Han Seong-yun thought, he came to that place not because he was interested in becoming wise or a hero. He came because of the reward and the increase he would get when he killed Nam Gong-hyuk. The chairman of the Japanese hunter, Ari Chika, immediately controlled herself and explained that the creature appearing in Shinjuku was an abnormal monster. Because the challengers would endanger their lives, she would double the promised reward, and the situation wasn't as bad as that because they already had a savior. Ari Chika pointed to Catherine and explained that the girl could reverse the outcome of this fight. Catherine explained that one of her authorities was fire suppression. If a stronger enemy than her touched the fire triggered by this authority, then all of the enemy's status would decrease by 10 and some of their skills would be sealed. Catherine was confident with her authority they could win. But of course, if the enemy touched it. Han Seong-yun said that meant they had to create a situation where Catherine could activate her fire suppression. Meanwhile, a journalist reporting from a helicopter informed that currently, they had received news that the S-rank hunter from China Peng Jimin had already gone to Shinjuku and just met with another world challenger. There hasn't been any movement yet, so it's suspected they are discussing. They can do that because the tower challengers can communicate with each other despite different dimensions and countries. At this moment, Nam Gong-hyuk was facing Peng Jimin. The long-haired man asked the Chinese hunter if he knew someone named Han Seong-yun. Instead of answering, Peng Jimin said that Nam Gong-hyuk would soon regret underestimating the Earth's dimension. Nam Gong-hyuk sighed heavily and felt annoyed because what came was insects and not the man he wanted. Unexpectedly, Peng Jimin immediately used the dash skill to run as fast as possible and directly hit Nam Gong-hyuk's face. The wily man realized that his opponent could use martial arts techniques, so this would be very interesting for him. Then suddenly, a big explosion occurred between them as Nam Gong-hyuk attacked Peng Jimin. Chun-sik, who was overseeing their battle from the helicopter, asked why the Chinese hunter was acting alone. Even from a distance, it was already a very bad sight. Han Seong-yun suddenly asked if Catherine could land safely even if they fell from a height. The red-haired girl asked what Han Seong-yun meant by his question. The young man had a very good idea. Catherine finally answered that she had a skill that could divert all damage when she fell. So, for Han Seong-yun, that was enough. Han Seong-yun thought they should be able to deal a lot of damage to Nam Gong-hyuk. At that moment, Catherine had to activate her authority immediately. Then he apologized for his smoothness and immediately held Catherine's waist before they finally jumped down from the helicopter using Catherine's wings of steel authority. Chun-sik said that the young man with the surname Han always did everything as he pleased. Sung-hoon said they couldn't just stay silent, so the two of them also immediately jumped down from the helicopter. As they fell, Catherine said that Han Seong-yun was crazy because he invited someone else to fly without any explanation. Han Seong-yun said it was because China, diverting Nam Gong-hyuk's attention, they had little chance to fight him. Han Seong-yun asked Catherine to use her authority immediately when he saw the opportunity later. Then Han Seong-yun flew faster to descend and immediately attacked Nam Gong-hyuk, who was still focused on fighting the pledge. Nam Gong-hyuk was confused to see the pledge that could flow martial chi at his height even though he couldn't use martial arts. With just one attack, Nam Gong-hyuk managed to push aside the pledge. After one volunteer was successfully removed, Nam Gong-hyuk realized the appearance of Han Seong-yun. Nam Gong-hyuk tried to avoid the attack of the young man with black hair until he was thrown quite far and the bump on his backhand was quite large. When they both stood tall, Han Seong-yun casually said that falling from the sky was something he would never do again. With blood coming out of his mouth, Nam Gong-hyuk asked who the man standing in front of him was. Han Seong-yun smiled and asked why the young man was confused when he always looked for him and wanted to meet him. So now Han Seong-yun had come to fulfill his call, but Nam Gong-hyuk didn't even know who the young man was. When the opponent finally knew who he was, Han Seong-yun immediately activated the authority skill of the sword's chi master. His sharp sword immediately glowed bluish with great chi power. Seeing this, Nam Gong-hyuk was annoyed and considered Nam Gong-hyuk only as a fall sword's chi user. Nam Gong-hyuk clenched both hands and then slammed his fists together until a large bump on the back of his hand burst. At that moment, Han Seong-yun immediately slid to attack Nam Gong. This young man thought as long as his opponent didn't hold a weapon he had to take the initiative to attack first now. But suddenly Nam Gong-hyuk emitted a very large energy that immediately caused an explosion between them. Fortunately, Han Seong-yun managed to avoid the attack with the barrier he created. He felt grateful for not facing the attack directly. Nevertheless, his barrier had suffered quite severe damage. Han Seong-yun realized that his counter shield had been destroyed with one attack. Because of this, Han Seong-yun would have difficulty using the abilities of the counter shield later. Han Seong-yun wondered if that was what real sword's chi was. When seeing his opponent using recovery, Nam Gong-hyuk said, Nam Gong-hyuk could only use magic skills from the tower. Ignoring his opponent's words, Han Seong-yun immediately activated the lighting sword chi skill to attack Nam Gong-hyuk with one powerful sword swing. When Nam Gong-hyuk wanted to block the attack, Chun-sik and Seong-hoon attacked from both sides of the wind direction. Although his opponent's attack was quite fast, Nam Gong-hyuk managed to dodge to the side faster. At this moment, Catherine appeared to attack with fire suppression. Catherine was stunned to see her swift attack ineffective against Nam Gong. Moreover, Nam Gong-hyuk managed to dodge very quickly. Suddenly Chun-sik warned Catherine because at this moment Nam Gong-hyuk was flying over all their heads and raising his hands full of energy while saying he would eliminate the insects that disturbed his enjoyment. At that moment, the instinct of a hunter who had gone through many life-and-death battles said that they would not be able to withstand that attack. Nam Gong-hyuk exerted all his strength on the sword he brought before finally attacking Catherine, Chun-sik, and Seong-hoon. The three of them tried to escape, but Nam Gong-hyuk's attack hit them first, creating a fairly large explosion. Yesterday, the White Crane Swordmaster Administrator held Han Seong-yun's hand until energy flowed. She said this was a small gift from her. The young woman gave a simple mana injection to Han Seong-yun while shaking hands. But suddenly the energy flowing from the contractor turned stronger. The White Crane Swordmaster Administrator explained that the energy she had just given was not just a simple mana injection because it maintained an emotional connection. As the White Crane Swordmaster Administrator slowly released their touch, she asked if Han Seong-yun could feel the difference. Han Seong-yun said he felt the first one was just a simple mana injection while the second felt like the contractor was inside him. The white-haired girl smiled sweetly and said, now Han Seong-yun had to apply it to his sword. But the young man had to use the technique after leaving the contractor's place. Otherwise, he would be disadvantaged because of the intervention of the administrator. Han Seong-yun used the technique to deflect Nam Gong-hyuk's powerful attacks. The system explained that skills and authority were not manifested through sword chi but through self-realization. Han Seong-yun had used the first sword chi from the earthly dimension. The Tower of Trial sent praise to the challenger, Han Seong-yun. The achievement of unification with the sword has been successfully achieved. Due to the increase in mana consumption of the sword chi master authority, the penalty has been lifted. Now, Han Seong-yun stood calmly holding a sword full of spiritual energy. Han Seong-yun was delighted because he finally saw the perfect form of his sword chi. Han Seong-yun turned around and asked if his friends were okay. Catherine answered yes, thanks to Han Seong-yun. Catherine realized that Han Seong-yun had used attacks at the same level to fend off Nam Gong-hyuk's attacks. According to her, both men were truly monsters. Suddenly Nam Gong-hyuk burst into laughter and said, that's how Han Seong-yun's attacks should be. Because earlier he had felt disappointed with Han Seong-yun's mediocre attacks. According to Nam Gong-hyuk, the harder someone worked to build a castle, the more fun it was for him to destroy that sandcastle. That's why Nam Gong-hyuk became more enthusiastic about attacking Han Seong-yun. This made Han Seong-yun even more overwhelmed in holding back Nam Gong's attacks. While holding back the opponent's attacks, Han Seong-yun thought, until now, all the challengers from all over the world were very annoying. But according to him, Nam Gong-hyuk was truly a psychopath. Han Seong-yun even jumped back far enough to near his companions' positions. Han Seong-yun apologized to his friends because he had to ask them to stand further away and find a safe place. Because if there was a situation where he had to protect all his friends, then he would not be able to focus on fighting. Initially, Catherine wanted to refuse, but Seong-hoon said that even though what was said by Han Seong-yun was annoying, the young man was right. But when they had a chance later, they had to execute the fire plan again. That was Seong-hoon's request even though he couldn't help Han Seong-yun further. Finally, the three of them ran back to find a safer place. Meanwhile, Han Seong-yun had to fight Nam Gong-hyuk. They both jumped from one side to the other. The energy collision between them was so strong that it was able to destroy the glass of the surrounding buildings and even throw cars in all directions. Above the sky, which was originally peaceful, suddenly there were several explosions as a result of their very fierce battle. Chun-sik, who was hiding with two other companions, finally understood why he was instructed to hide and retreat earlier by Han Seong-yun. Catherine argued that the power among them was equal. But Seong-yun felt that Han Seong-yun was slightly behind, and he worried that if this continued, Han Seong-yun might lose and die. Meanwhile, amidst his fight, Han Seong-yun suspected that he could stand against Nam Gong-hyuk to a certain extent if his sword chi leveled up. But it turned out he was still pressed as he is now. Han Seong-yun remembered the words of the White Crane Swordmaster Administrator who suspected that Nam Gong-hyuk possessed a swordsmanship to rank A, while Han Seong-yun's swordsmanship skill was only ranked C. However, the White Crane Swordmaster Administrator said that even without his swordsmanship skill, Nam Gong-hyuk would still be a very strong figure. Han Seong-yun felt very small in front of Nam Gong-hyuk. Suddenly, Han Seong-yun fell in front of Nam Gong. This made Nam Gong-hyuk ask why Han Seong-yun fell? Had he given up already? It turned out that Han Seong-yun became weak because he used too much stamina to recover. The young man realized that if he used more stamina, it would affect his fight. Seeing Han Seong-yun weaken, Catherine immediately threw a bottle of potion made by Chun-sik. Han Seong-yun managed to catch the bottle, but as he was about to drink it, he was suddenly kicked by Nam Gong-hyuk and thrown far away, and the potion bottle was caught by Nam Gong-hyuk. Then, Nam Gong-hyuk quickly drank the potion. Afterward, he thanked me for the potion. This incident made Catherine and Chun-sik very angry. Nam Gong-hyuk said that humans always have some kind of hope. Just like Han Seong-yun now. Nam Gong-hyuk expressed the feelings of people who want to win a fight, want to do their best, or maybe survive. Nam Gong-hyuk laughed at thoughts like that. Because when he sees someone's expression change from optimistic to desperate, that expression is the only thing that makes him feel pleasure. Nam Gong-hyuk's expression when he said this was truly terrifying. He seemed like a psychopath who was very happy to see his victim desperate. Nam Gong-hyuk started to get angry because Han Seong-yun still showed eyes full of hope. The fight continued even though Han Seong-yun seemed overwhelmed before. He was even cornered to the point where he could only lean against the wall. However, Nam Gong-hyuk was still surprised because even though Han Seong-yun couldn't move, he still showed the same gaze. That's why Nam Gong-hyuk finally attacked Han Seong-yun's eyes and ruthlessly injured him. Of course, Han Seong-yun was struck by his current eye condition. Moreover, he could no longer recover because his stamina was also depleted. He could only make one more attack after gathering all his strength. The problem now was he couldn't see anymore, so his attack would surely fail. Han Seong-yun didn't know what to do. On the other hand, he heard the voices of some comrades coming to help him. However, Han Seong-yun knew that if his friends approached, they would only be slaughtered by Nam Gong-hyuk. Han Seong-yun immediately shouted and asked them not to approach. Seeing this, Nam Gong-hyuk immediately understood. The reason Han Seong-yun still looked hopeful was because of his comrades. Catherine tried to attack Nam Gong-hyuk, but the man easily counterattacked and injured her. Seong-hun, who saw this, was worried and tried to help. He tried to attack Nam Gong-hyuk, but the man just knocked him down to the ground. After that, Nam Gong-hyuk immediately took Catherine hostage. He started by injuring the girl's shoulder area, who then screamed in pain. Nam Gong-hyuk said that he could smell the scent of his burning companions. Han Seong-yun, who was very angry, asked the lecherous bastard to stop. Seeing Han Seong-yun begging, Nam Gong-hyuk became even happier. That's when Chun-sik appeared and immediately froze Nam Gong-hyuk's hand with his power. He took the opportunity to quickly take Catherine away from there. He also planned to provide minimum emergency treatment. Nam Gong-hyuk was certainly very angry because of his still frozen hand condition. However, he quickly broke it and immediately chased after Catherine and Chun-sik who were still running. Seeing this, Chun-sik once again used his magic to create a protective sphere and sent Catherine as far as possible, while he would hide again. However, unexpectedly, Nam Gong-hyuk caught him first. The evil man immediately attacked Chun-sik. Meanwhile, on the other hand, Han Seong-yun felt so frustrated. What he was experiencing now felt no different from what happened 7 years ago. He was disappointed in himself for not being able to protect anyone. That's when suddenly rats began to appear in an incredibly large number. The rats realized that the fight would soon bring destruction. Han Seong-yun, who only had one attack left, took the opportunity to take all the souls from the rats to replenish his stamina. Han Seong-yun immediately asked Nam Gong-hyuk to stop. The evil man who had just cut Seong-hun's hand, of course, did not listen. Instead, he liked Han Seong-yun's worried expression. However, suddenly a very powerful blow hit Nam Gong-hyuk. The perpetrator was a mysterious person who used the authority of fire suppression, which would cause someone's abilities to drop drastically when touched. The man turned out to be someone from China named Ping Jamin. Jamin took the opportunity to flee with Seong-yun from there. Meanwhile, Namgung-hyuk, who intended to retaliate against them, apparently could not use his power because of the attack he received earlier. Namgung-hyuk, who was angry, finally used forceful battle, which was a unique trait to form a combat area with a radius of 30 m. Everyone except him and Han Seong-yun would not be able to enter the area. Namgung-hyuk planned to use combat chi because his sword chi was sealed. Of course, he was very confident because Han Seong-yun had lost his sight now. On the other hand, Han Seong-yun tried to concentrate using his third eye or spiritual eyes. With that, he could see Namgung-hyuk's attacks. He could also see the walls formed within a 30 m radius and even all the rocks in that area. Han Seong-yun realized that he could see everything after losing his sight. Until now, it turned out he hadn't used his spiritual eyes properly. It felt like he was opening his third eye. Han Seong-yun managed to find his true spiritual eyes, and even the skill had leveled up to rank B. The same went for the sixth sense skill used to fight using the senses, which rose to rank B. Han Seong-yun was quite surprised because he had forgotten that he even had the skill. But now it has evolved and all his senses have become clearer. Moreover, it turns out that Han Seong-yun also raised the level of the Demon Slayer and Ashen Blood skills to rank B. Han Seong-yun became more confident. He believed he could fight against Namgung-hyuk, who could reduce his opponent's abilities. The fight resumes between Namgung-hyuk and Han Seong-yun. Namgung-hyuk is puzzled by Han Seong-yun's movements, which seem to improve, and his sword appears sharper. At that moment, Han Seong-yun activated several of his skills, such as Clandestine Shadow, Instant Acceleration, and Wind Grace, all useful for increasing speed. Then, Han Seong-yun also activated the Chaotic Sword fighting skill to enhance his sword attacks. However, Han Seong-yun knows that despite using many skills, their strengths could be considered equal. This could be very dangerous for him. If it continues, he will exhaust his stamina, and Namgung-hyuk's reduced abilities will soon return within 10 minutes. Han Seong-yun must end the fight before the fire effects given by Jamin completely disappear. Han Seong-yun tries to think of a way and realizes that the only thing that can turn the tide in close combat is an unexpected variable. Han Seong-yun throws his sword recklessly, and Namgung-hyuk disregards it as a desperate attack. Namgung-hyuk easily strikes Han Seong-yun until he falls. As his body falls, Han Seong-yun activates his iron-blooded sword skill. The sword appears, and with his foot, Han Seong-yun immediately impales Namgung-hyuk's body. He can feel the sword piercing his dantian. He must recover himself quickly. Right at that moment, Jamin's authority fire suppression and Namgung-hyuk's forceful battle have also expired. Seeing this, Namgung-hyuk is determined to stop playing around, and next time, he will end their fight seriously. Namgung-hyuk opens the gate to his residence, and everyone realizes he will return to the Miram dimension. Watching Namgung-hyuk slowly walk into the gate, everyone is naturally worried. If they don't kill Namgung-hyuk right then and there, the Earth might face disaster in the future. All of Han Seong-yun's comrades do not want anything bad to happen, so they agree to stop Namgung-hyuk's attempt to escape. He, hearing this, is naturally angry when everyone thinks he will run away. Namgung-hyuk immediately unleashes the sword flame technique to attack them all. Han Seong-yun quickly stands in front of them all and protects them with the counter-shield skill until it breaks. Even Han Seong-yun's arm is shattered from bearing Namgung-hyuk's attack. Catherine, witnessing this, is naturally worried. As well as Chun-sik, who immediately tries to heal him. However, Han Seong-yun asks them to stay vigilant because Namgung-hyuk is still among them. Namgung-hyuk, hearing this, begins to speak. He tells Han Seong-yun that he could have killed him from the beginning in one strike. He then asks if Han Seong-yun wants to see the end of their fight. Han Seong-yun feels irritated, but he cannot deny Namgung-hyuk's words at that moment. He ultimately chooses to leave, and afterward, Han Seong-yun immediately collapses to the ground. All of his companions try to approach him at that moment. Meanwhile, in the Miram dimension, Namgung-hyuk's arrival is greeted by his guards. Upon arrival, he also collapses and coughs immediately. Seeing their young master injured, the guards naturally call for a healer. On the other hand, Namgung-hyuk is naturally very angry. He is determined that whatever happens next, he will make Han Seong-yun fall into despair. Meanwhile, in a hospital in Tokyo, Han Seong-yun wakes up from his sleep. A woman greets him at that moment. She also answers Han Seong-yun's question about where they are now. She continues that Han Seong-yun is not allowed to move yet because he is severely injured. Of course, is still so unbelieving of all the sacrifices Han Seong-yun has made, even losing his eyes and arm. Han Seong-yun immediately activates Ashen Blood, and instantly his hand returns to its original condition, and his body quickly improves. He immediately wants to know the whereabouts of all his friends. The first person Han Seong-yun visits is Catherine. Too excited, she opens the curtains in the room where it turns out the girl is being assisted by a nurse in treating her wounds. Of course, this makes Catherine scream very loudly. In the hospital corridor, Chun-sik is walking with a cane. He is lamenting his life at that moment. However, he suddenly meets Han Seong-yun and immediately asks what is on his friend's face. Han Seong-yun's face is red because he was slapped by Catherine, who was too excited. Han Seong-yun immediately seeks Sung-hoon's whereabouts. Chun-sik says he saw him briefly in the morning. The man must also be in a bad condition because he lost his right arm. Finally, Han Seong-yun searches for Sung-hoon's whereabouts. He turns out to be on the hospital roof. Sung-hoon greets him with the nickname Sword Phantom. He is then surprised to see Han Seong-yun's left arm return to normal using a skill. Sung-hoon is truly surprised that Han Seong-yun has such a skill. However, on the other hand, Sung-hoon lost his right arm. It's then that Han Seong-yun apologizes. He hopes to be stronger so that none of this has to happen. Sung-hoon, of course, reassures him. He doesn't want Han Seong-yun to worry about him. Besides, he has the skills to compensate for his loss. Han Seong-yun realized that all this time he had been climbing the tower like a madman to become stronger, as if possessed by something. It's as if his field of vision was limited by the tunnels inside the tower. Sung-hoon reassured him that it wasn't a futile endeavor. Instead, that was what made Seong-yun stronger. However, those who are strong indeed must help the weak. That was a principle that Sung-hoon firmly held. Han Seong-yun learned a lot from this fight. He remembered important things that he had forgotten. Sung-hoon was relieved to hear this. He knew that Han Seong-yun wasn't a madman with ill intentions. Previously, when they first met, Sung-hoon admitted that he couldn't even read Han Seong-yun's mind. It was then that Sung-hoon also offered a cigarette to Han Seong-yun. The man refused and said he was avoiding cigarettes and alcohol. Han Seong-yun, who turned to Sung-hoon, suddenly became very surprised to see the man who had already removed his mask. Han Seong-yun was very surprised to see Sung-hoon's face without a mask. Sung-hoon casually introduced himself. As time passed, Han Seong-yun and others were busy conducting interviews after successfully driving Nam Gong-hyuk out of Tokyo. Eventually, Han Seong-yun gave a necklace to Catherine as a gift. They all then parted ways there. Han Seong-yun put back on the tailcoat he had worn before. The clothes seemed to have been repaired a bit as well. All the equipment he had was also in perfect condition. Han Seong-yun felt he had to make sure of its condition because he had to prevent disasters. Han Seong-yun then lay down on the bed. He was still thinking about the 3 days he had spent in Tokyo. He didn't want to be famous at all. However, the problem was that as soon as he looked at his phone, the battle video had already spread. The video came from a recording of a Japanese Hunter Association helicopter. Han Seong-yun saw some comments on the video. Some people were starting to call him by the name Sword Phantom. Han Seong-yun now understood where Sung-hoon got that name from before. But on the other hand, Han Seong-yun was even more surprised that Sung-hoon turned out to be the Lightning Emperor. The Lightning Emperor was a very influential figure even among the 30s rank hunters in Korea. He was a legend of Korea who destroyed gates faster than anyone else. Last night, Sung-hoon asked Han Seong-yun to contact him if anything happened, whether he needed guidance or even for trivial matters. After feeling rested enough, Han Seong-yun was determined to become stronger so that he deserved to be called the Sword Phantom. Han Seong-yun immediately went to the Tower of Trials and entered the 11th floor lobby. He realized that he learned a lesson after fighting Nam Gong-hyuk, which was about stamina. Ashen Blood was now one of the strongest skills he had, but it couldn't be activated if he didn't have enough stamina. Therefore, he had to acquire a stamina recovery skill. Han Seong-yun tried to buy a new skill, but none of them were good enough for him so far. In the end, he just bought them all. Some of the skills he bought were automatic stamina recovery, which could restore stamina every 180 seconds, moonlight absorption, which could restore stamina when exposed to moonlight, and sunlight absorption, which could restore stamina when exposed to sunlight. There was also excess growth for physical and stamina recovery, calling of blood for stamina, and HP recovery when absorbing enemy blood. Han Seong-yun was quite pleased because he could buy all the necessary skills, but there were still points left. The next step was to activate the authority skill synthesis. Han Seong-yun combined appropriate skills and dynamics. He combined moonlight absorption and sunlight absorption and made it into the skill photosynthesis. This caused the skill to mix well and increase in rank, albeit slightly. Han Seong-yun thought about combining it again with the calling of blood. It turned out to produce the skill blood-tinted contract, which allowed him to extract HP, stamina, and mana from the blood of living creatures he killed. However, Han Seong-yun wasn't too happy because the skill rank didn't increase and the advantage of photosynthesis disappeared. Therefore, Han Seong-yun bought the previous skills again because there were still plenty of points left. This time, he tried to combine the blood-tinted contract with the newly purchased Calling of Blood. Eventually, he succeeded in creating the skill, Truth Seeker of Blood, which was ranked B. Han Seong-yun noticed that the function of the Truth Seeker wasn't just about extraction, but also about gaining strong blood control abilities. Curious about the blood control abilities mentioned, Han Seong-yun immediately tested it himself. He injured his hand and found that he could control the movement of the blood that flowed out. Han Seong-yun tried to control the blood and even its shape could be changed at will. He kept trying and finally realized that he could extract blood from his body without having to hurt himself. Although, of course, he still had to cut himself if he needed a large amount of blood. The Truth Seeker of Blood skill would surely be very useful for him. Furthermore, Han Seong-yun spent his time improving the Eyes of Truth, which resulted in the skill upgrading to Flame Dragon Eye. Using this ability, he could even see each strength possessed by his current attire. Han Seong-yun could see everything that he hadn't seen before. Han Seong-yun could also see the sword in his hand, which was the Heavenly Blood Demonic Sword. However, it turned out that when the owner reached the realm of Sword Flame, the ultimate skill would be unlocked. He then realized that it was what allowed Namgung-hyuk to destroy the entire Shinjuku area. Initially, he thought it was because Namgung-hyuk had reached a level capable of harnessing the true ability of the Heavenly Blood Demonic Sword. However, now Han Seong-yun knew that it was not just a good sword, but also had hidden abilities. Han Seong-yun finally entered the 11th floor of the Tower of Trials with the theme of mentality verification. The challenge on that floor, which numbered 7, had to be completed within 7 days. The winner would receive the Old of Mirror Verification prize. As soon as Han Seong-yun entered the floor, someone welcomed him at the Temple of Verification. The man then said that Han Seong-yun would be tested by the God of Verification and the trial would continue until he died. Han Seong-yun had decided to take on the God's trial rather than be an ordinary adventurer, meaning he was ready to accept the consequences. Han Seong-yun wanted to know what to do to complete the first trial. The man instead asked if Han Seong-yun didn't know the rules of the trial of Ares' 7 leading gods. Han Seong-yun indeed did not know, but he guessed it was a dimension of the Black Knight that had previously invaded the 5th floor. The man casually mocked Han Seong-yun as a foolish adventurer. In the end, he had to explain. Han Seong-yun needed to prove his physical strength, belief, and mental fortitude. Where the body would be an easy challenge and the mind would be a difficult challenge. The way to complete the trial was to meet the high priest in each trial room. Han Seong-yun just needed to step forward into the next room by either killing or convincing them. Han Seong-yun made sure once again that it meant he just needed to get past them by any means. The man didn't give a straightforward answer. He just said that Han Seong-yun would find the answer himself. The man then began the first trial by attacking Han Seong-yun. At that moment, Han Seong-yun could see that the man might be around the challenger level, earning the pioneer title. Without hesitation, Han Seong-yun used his new skill, Truth Seeker of Blood, and shot blood from the tip of his hand like a pistol right at the man's head. With one strike, he finally managed to defeat the priest named Johan. Several administrators immediately praised Han Seong-yun's abilities. However, upon seeing some names, he realized he had garnered enough attention because this trial was related to the priests and even the gods. At that moment, he also saw the administrator of the White Crane Swordmaster disappointed because he left without saying goodbye. Of course, Han Seong-yun was puzzled because he couldn't contact him. After that, Han Seong-yun got an item from Johan's body like a small mirror. The administrators were quite surprised to see it. At that moment, Han Seong-yun used his Flame Dragon Eye skill and found out that it was a mirror containing the High Priest's divinity. In addition to basic information, with that skill, Han Seong-yun could see another explanation that appeared, namely, the divinity in the mirror could guide its user toward destiny. Han Seong-yun was certainly curious about the meaning of that explanation. Even though what he saw, the mirror seemed like a one-time use barrier. Han Seong-yun tried not to think too much and continued his journey. However, as soon as he entered the room, a voice greeted him. The mysterious voice never expected that an adventurer whose name wasn't even known could arrive so quickly. She immediately knew that Johan must have died. Han Seong-yun certainly wanted to know if the woman was indeed the priest for the second challenge. The woman confirmed and introduced herself as Jane. Jane admitted she was glad to meet Han Seong-yun and immediately attacked him. Han Seong-yun, seeing the girl, immediately attacked her, realizing that it was also a process of proving one's body. Jane confirmed while continuing to attack. Han Seong-yun had just begun to fight with Jane. However, he felt so familiar with the sword chi technique used. The technique resembled his own from before. Therefore, Han Seong-yun immediately activated Authority Sword Chi and Lightning Sword Chi. He quickly attacked Jane and injured her hand. Jane was certainly surprised because an ordinary adventurer like Han Seong-yun could use aura perfectly. Han Seong-yun, of course, said that he could also do it like Jane. Jane then said that the priests use divine power bestowed by the gods. Of course, she was surprised because someone without divine power like Han Seong-yun could use sword chi extraordinarily. Suddenly, Jane attacked again even though her hand was already severely injured. Han Seong-yun was annoyed to see this because Jane became quite troublesome. However, he remembered the priest Johan's words that he didn't need to kill to pass the trial. Han Seong-yun asked if Jane would change her mind to let him pass the trial. Jane said it depended on Han Seong-yun. Anything could happen if he had some great persuasion skills. Han Seong-yun asked again about the total number of body trials. Jane was certainly annoyed because Han Seong-yun seemed to underestimate her and acted as if he had already won. Jane attacked again and refused to answer Han Seong-yun's question. At that moment, Han Seong-yun activated the instant acceleration skill. He quickly grabbed both of Jane's hands and held them above her head. Jane was confused and surprised by Han Seong-yun's movement. Now, Han Seong-yun took control, forcing the woman to reveal the process of the verification trial. Jane was curious if Han Seong-yun would do something to her. Of course, he quickly denied it. At that moment, the administrators commented and waited for the continuation of the drama before their eyes. However, Han Seong-yun was quite disturbed by that question. He wanted to know if there were adventurers who came there just to do something like what Jane thought. Jane, in turn, asked if he thought there were no other people out there with such thoughts. To Jane, Han Seong-yun was a very naive adventurer. Han Seong-yun didn't want to discuss that further. Instead, he asked about the process of the verification trial. Jane finally explained that there were only 2 body trials left at the moment, while the belief trial would start on the 5th and 6th trials. The last one was the mental trial in the 7th order. However, Jane asked Han Seong-yun to surrender before reaching the end of that trial because so far, no one had successfully passed the 7th trial. Everyone who underwent that trial would either end up insane or dead in a pool of blood. Han Seong-yun made sure that all of Jane's words were honest. Jane finally decided to stop. She was satisfied enough because she could feel the great match. At that moment, Han Seong-yun asked Jane. If there was a way for him to pass the trial without having to kill Jane, he would do it. Jane said there was no such way. Han Seong-yun made sure Jane wasn't afraid of death. Jane immediately said no. Besides, she would return to the god side. Feeling that there was nothing more to debate, Han Seong-yun finally killed Jane. He also absorbed the spirit belonging to Priest Jane. However, for some reason, Han Seong-yun felt strange. Han Seong-yun soon entered the next trial. A man named Lucilian immediately introduced himself as the verification process for the God Sword. He would be responsible for testing Han Seong-yun's martial arts prowess and ensuring that he was indeed worthy to proceed to the next trial. As Lucilian drew his sword, Han Seong-yun was astonished to see that it was a sword flame. Knowing how difficult the 3rd trial was, Han Seong-yun could only struggle to risk his life. They both began to fight, attacking each other with great sword power. As the fight began, Han Seong-yun quickly realized that Lucilian's physical abilities and sword attacks were inferior to his own. However, it was his sword chi that was now shattered. After seeing Namgong Hyokyu's sword flame, he thought it was an advanced skill, but it seemed that he was too strong. Meanwhile, Lucilian's sword flame was not an advanced skill. Han Seong-yun tried to attack, but no matter how many times he tried, his sword chi would still lose. The battle continued until Lucilian said that although Han Seong-yun's aura was very strong, his sword could not be destroyed. The only ones who could destroy the sword were those who could face something intangible. Han Seong-yun tried to think about it again. How could Lucilian use sword flame even though his abilities were inferior to his own? To him, it felt like someone dumber was getting a better score. It was frustrating. Han Seong-yun continued to think about something intangible like what Lucilian mentioned. At this point, Han Seong-yun could only try to destroy the sword no matter what. Another fight broke out between them. Lucilian again revealed that only those who could face the intangible could make a sword bend. Lucilian once again said that this was the essence of a sword with an aura of absolute power being born. On the other hand, Han Seong-yun remained determined to destroy Lucilian's sword. Finally, he managed to break the sword and also cut off Lucilian's arm. Of course, Lucilian was surprised and Han Seong-yun now understood the difference between sword flame and sword chi. The source of the sword flame's power was a strong determination that could be manifested. On the other hand, Lucilian laughed heartily. He said that Han Seong-yun's sword flame was genuine. Unlike his own, which was unstable because the sword was just borrowed from the god. Han Seong-yun was a little confused because Lucilian seemed happy at that moment when praising him. Lucilian was more concerned with Han Seong-yun's achievements than his death. The man seemed driven by a purpose, whether it was belief or because he was indeed mad. Lucilian then said he didn't expect Han Seong-yun to learn so quickly. He could even feel that Han Seong-yun had proven his martial arts. He asked Han Seong-yun to continue to the next trial and hoped he could remain consistent. Han Seong-yun finally killed the man to end his suffering. He had also successfully absorbed Lucilian's spirit. With that, Han Seong-yun managed to master the authority of necromancy by 100%, and his level rose to rank B. Han Seong-yun was curious about what skill he would acquire this time. After attaining a B rank in necromancy authority, Han Seong-yun was increasingly surprised because he acquired a sub-effect that allowed him to absorb authority from stronger opponents. Naturally, he was thrilled to gain such power from the necromancy skill. He became more curious about the effects that would be added later once the skill reached ranks A and S. Han Seong-yun also noticed that his stats were steadily increasing. He was very pleased because he was now at a level he could never have reached as a student. Now, after absorbing the souls of 3 priests at once, the stats would be permanently added. Strength increased by 8, agility by 6, stamina by 7, mana by 8, and durability by 9. Han Seong-yun also absorbed Lucilian's skill, granting him indomitable will, which could enhance physical ability and concentration. After adjusting himself, Han Seong-yun prepared to continue that trial. He then walked and opened the door, but he didn't see anyone there. Shortly after, a flying priest greeted him. The priest said he was sure Lucilian had died when Han Seong-yun entered his room, which was unexpected. The administrators immediately warned him to be cautious because this priest was the strongest. Without waiting long, Han Seong-yun immediately attacked the man. The priest knew that Han Seong-yun didn't want to talk to him, so he would accommodate him by directly engaging in the 4th trial. He introduced himself as a priest under the guidance named Kairan. He would soon start the body verification trial for Han Seong-yun. Realizing that his opponent was much stronger, Han Seong-yun immediately activated the indomitable will skill. Han Seong-yun could see how much greater Kairan's energy was compared to the previous priests. Without further ado, Kairan began to attack, and Han Seong-yun could only dodge. He also quickly activated the Flame Dragon Eye skill. Now he understood how Kairan's attacks continued to bounce off the mirrors, relentlessly chasing him and becoming very troublesome. Han Seong-yun felt he had to attack first before Kairan's light ray skill attacked him again. Han Seong-yun tried to attack, but Kairan easily knocked him back using the wings on his back. At that moment, Kairan immediately attacked Han Seong-yun with the sword flame in his hand. Han Seong-yun recognized the pattern of attacks used by Kairan. Initially, he would attack from a distance using light rays. Even if his opponent managed to dodge, he would use the mirrors around the room to reflect light from unseen angles. Then, he would use his wings to create a strong wind from close range to disrupt the opponent's balance. Finally, Kairan would attack with the sword flame. Han Seong-yun found the attack pattern very annoying. He admitted it was difficult to destroy all those mirrors, especially since it would be more dangerous if they shattered. The reflections would spread and make it even harder to dodge. The administrators were also curious about what would happen to Han Seong-yun. Some were even curious about how Han Seong-yun would die eventually. Han Seong-yun also saw comments from the iron-blooded monarch administrator, who was annoyed because the priest seemed to be stalling, and the White Cran Swordmaster administrator, who was curious about his next move. Kairan was about to unleash his new move, which would undoubtedly be difficult. He even asked Han Seong-yun to withstand his attacks as much as possible. Shortly afterward, he attacked using several light rays at once, and the explosion was unavoidable. However, Han Seong-yun quickly used the counter-shield skill to absorb the attack. Without waiting long, he immediately redirected the attack back towards Kairan, who promptly pierced through it. Of course, Kairan was very surprised by this attack. As far as he knew, Han Seong-yun had not learned magic. Kairan wanted to know if Han Seong-yun had authority from the gods. However, Han Seong-yun was unaware of it. Finally, Kairan admitted that Han Seong-yun did not flee or lose in the match at all. Therefore, he declared that Han Seong-yun had completed all the tests and met the requirements to pass the body verification. At that moment, Han Seong-yun absorbed the soul of Priest Kairan along with the authority he possessed. The man finally gained divine power and authority, which would be added to his body. Han Seong-yun felt proud because divine power was the strength used by priests, similar to mana. He felt the energy in his heart, but he couldn't move it yet. Divine power was different from mana. The administrators began to comment on the divine power in Han Seong-yun's body. They were genuinely curious about the power of divine power. On the other hand, after successfully absorbing the spirit from Priest Kairan, Han Seong-yun's stats also increased. Strength increased by 4, agility by 3, stamina by 3, mana by 4, and durability by 5. Han Seong-yun then continued his journey, knowing that this time he would enter the trial of trust. As he entered, a voice greeted him again, claiming to be someone obsessed with martial arts. Of course, Han Seong-yun immediately wanted to know what it meant. It was then that the grandmother inside the trial said that Han Seong-yun desired to keep winning and becoming stronger without limits, and even becoming the strongest one day. In his mind, Han Seong-yun admitted that he did want to become stronger, but becoming the strongest seemed exaggerated to him. As if hearing his thoughts, the grandmother said that he wasn't exaggerating. For her, it was the culmination of hard work. At that moment, Han Seong-yun tried to attack the grandmother. With ease, the old woman said that Han Seong-yun should be more patient. Moreover, the test was not to assess Han Seong-yun's physical abilities but to prove his conviction. Han Seong-yun, still angry, seemed indifferent to her words. He continued to try to attack the grandmother. In his heart, Han Seong-yun realized that the old woman shouldn't be able to move so fast. Han Seong-yun soon realized that his mind might have been attacked by the old woman. Han Seong-yun realized that his mind had been attacked at that moment. He immediately felt as if he had no control over himself. As far as he could see, the grandmother suddenly grew larger and then effortlessly swallowed him whole. The grandmother seemed to be savoring the taste of Han Seong-yun's body. But suddenly, the grandmother said that he had passed. Of course, Han Seong-yun was confused. The grandmother then explained that Han Seong-yun had passed the 5th trial and was asked to proceed to the next trial. Of course, Han Seong-yun wanted to know how he passed. The grandmother explained that the 5th trial was metacognition. In other words, only those with strong willpower are eligible to see the contents of their minds. The grandmother could see a strong desire in Han Seong-yun. A powerful urge to kill anyone if it could make him stronger. The grandmother could feel it in the deepest layers of Han Seong-yun's mind. She also said that Han Seong-yun could kill to rest happily by the god's side before getting too old. Of course, Han Seong-yun immediately refused. He didn't want to kill if he could escape without doing so. That was very clear. The grandmother certainly didn't expect it. I felt like I should have made Han Seong-yun undergo all his trials seriously beforehand. The grandmother once again said that Han Seong-yun passed. I bid farewell and even hoped that Han Seong-yun would succeed in completing that trial of verification. Han Seong-yun finally walked towards the corridor indicated by the grandmother. The further he walked, the darker it became around him. Han Seong-yun ended up in a location devoid of any light. It was then that he heard a voice greeting him so closely in his ears. The reflexive man tried to attack the voice's owner. Han Seong-yun immediately had a bad feeling. As if reading his mind, the voice reiterated that Han Seong-yun was indeed in the realm of thoughts. The grandmother, previously known as Mrs. Henner, was the one who implanted seeds within Han Seong-yun to make him fall into his realm of thoughts. Han Seong-yun was a little confused to hear the name Henner and suspected it was the grandmother he had met before. As if answering his question again, the mysterious voice affirmed. Henner was the old priest he had encountered earlier. However, the voice asked him not to worry too much as it would protect Han Seong-yun's body from the outside. Han Seong-yun certainly didn't feel pleased because it was the presence of the woman that worried me. The woman sounded offended hearing Han Seong-yun's words then. To me, Han Seong-yun was being rude by speaking like that to a woman. She could even stab Han Seong-yun's throat if she didn't mind. Han Seong-yun immediately asked how to prove the belief he held. The woman chuckled softly and looked at how sweet Han Seong-yun was. Nevertheless, she would still explain. She then introduced herself as Priest Aileen who would start the 6th trial. That was when Han Seong-yun, who was initially in an empty room, suddenly found himself above the ocean. Han Seong-yun then fell into the water and seemed trapped there. Aileen was sure that the pain felt by the man was so real. So, what the man needed to do now was to find a solution. Because if not, he would truly feel the agony of drowning, but without water this time. Han Seong-yun immediately understood and activated the Serene Mind Authority to maintain his peace of mind. Han Seong-yun immediately felt better and now just needed to concentrate on holding his breath. He also felt something strange at his fingertips. He tried hard to figure out what it was. Aileen, seeing everything, could only praise Han Seong-yun for his determination. I didn't expect the man to react by using his body to protect himself even while in the realm of thoughts. Han Seong-yun was very strong, and of course, Aileen felt the need to hide the fact that I almost got killed because of him. Han Seong-yun, still concentrating, tried to restore his bodily senses. Eventually, Han Seong-yun was able to control his arms again. Aileen, of course, couldn't believe it because the man should have been numb in there. I was more amazed because Han Seong-yun did it in just 2 hours. Of course, Han Seong-yun didn't expect to have spent 2 hours because according to his estimate, he had only been there for 1 minute. Aileen continued that in the real world, time indeed passed faster than in that realm. Of course, Han Seong-yun was worried. He remembered that the time given to complete all the trials was 7 days. He might fail and die because of the penalty if he exceeds the time limit. He hurried to find a way to see the realm of thoughts as soon as possible. He planned to regain consciousness with the Serene Mind skill and activate other necessary skills. Using the Flame Dragon Eye skill, finally, Han Seong-yun could see everything. He was actually in a sea of blood. Aileen was surprised to see Han Seong-yun's abilities. Han Seong-yun successfully saw his realm of thoughts. Aileen was even more surprised to see steel wings on Han Seong-yun's back. I was curious whether Han Seong-yun was truly human because humans wouldn't possibly have steel wings on their backs like that. On the other hand, Han Seong-yun looked around after flying using the wings of steel. Han Seong-yun saw his realm of thoughts, which was difficult to describe in words. The view was insane and unpleasant. The man then asked if it was he who did this horrible thing to his realm of thoughts. Aileen naturally affirmed. Han Seong-yun still didn't understand how I could prove it because he still didn't know what kind of relationship existed there. Aileen finally explained about the proof of faith, which was the path of self-recognition. Humans didn't understand much about their own beliefs. They didn't even understand what they believed or thought. The goal of the trial was to confront the realm of thoughts created through the process of belief, thought, and action to overcome the dark past and become stronger without losing the humanity they possessed. That was what Aileen knew from Han Seong-yun's mind. Han Seong-yun still didn't understand, so Aileen continued and said that being honest with one's desires sometimes was the right path to take. Aileen bid farewell to Han Seong-yun. Han Seong-yun continued his journey to the 7th trial where as soon as he arrived, the god of verification immediately noticed his arrival. He suddenly remembered Jane's words who had previously said how no one had ever succeeded in passing the 7th trial. The god of verification with its incredibly large eyes became aware of the existence of the adventurer Han Seong-yun. Somehow, the man suddenly became very sleepy. Han Seong-yun immediately realized that this experience was different. He seemed to be facing an absolute creature that he couldn't fight against. Han Seong-yun's body quickly gave in to the struggle for survival. Yet, he had only received a glance from the god of verification. Han Seong-yun finally understood what it felt like to stare into the eyes of a god. At that moment, Han Seong-yun was on the verge of giving up and saying he wouldn't do it anymore. He envisioned a shadow where he could only cry alone in a room. Han Seong-yun had even harmed himself and activated the Ashen Blood skill. Then he realized he didn't want to do foolish things like being continuously trampled without doing anything. Han Seong-yun believed that there must be a way to overcome any difficult trial. It wasn't impossible that the Tower of Trial was also built on the same principle. Han Seong-yun still didn't know if he could cut the eye of the god of verification or not. However, if there was even a slight chance, even just to get 1 centimeter closer, he would cut that eye. Han Seong-yun immediately tried several times, but of course, it was all in vain. On the other hand, the god of verification was astonished by Han Seong-yun's courage. He could see that the man had good mental strength after all this time. He could also see a man full of confidence. The god of verification would remember the existence of the adventurer Han Seong-yun. The eye then declared that the 7th trial would begin at that moment. After that, the eye of verification disappeared just like that. Han Seong-yun was puzzled, but it was also the first time he could see the deity he had only heard of before. In the end, Han Seong-yun saw a mirror that could connect him to the future. He would also undergo a synchronization process where Han Seong-yun's assimilation level would gradually increase. Soon the mirror showed a large mouth, and Han Seong-yun entered it without hesitation as a sign that he was ready to undergo the verification trial. That's when Han Seong-yun's body fell into a place with someone quite familiar. It was Priest Johan from the previous first trial. Priest Johan was looking for his mirror. However, suddenly, the location changed. Han Seong-yun could see his other self reflected in the previous mirror, walking in the middle of the city. Han Seong-yun panicked, feeling he had to find a way back. But before he could return, he saw his other self suddenly killing one by one the people in the city. Han Seong-yun, witnessing this, became angry, and involuntarily, the assimilation process increased forcefully. Han Seong-yun's chest felt so painful as if torn apart. He could feel a nauseating mix of emotions in his chest, a combination of guilt, madness, and anger. Not done with that, Johan suddenly grabbed Han Seong-yun's shoulder from behind. Quickly, he accused Han Seong-yun of being someone who had taken his mirror. Johan immediately gripped Han Seong-yun's head, making him scream. All skills hindering Han Seong-yun's mind were completely sealed. Johan kept asking about his mirror while on the other hand, Han Seong-yun was already shackled, feeling worried. He was undergoing a mental verification, and mental protection was crucial. He didn't know what to do if his serene mind skill was blocked like this. Han Seong-yun tried to overcome his problem, but it only forced his assimilation level to increase to 20%. This caused unbearable mental shock. He even obtained an abnormal status of chi deviation. Han Seong-yun was still confused as to why his mirrored self was doing such cruel things. Although he admitted he was obsessed with power, he couldn't do such things. However, now Han Seong-yun had to focus on eliminating the chi deviation that could cause his mana circuit skill to decline. That's when Han Seong-yun felt how overheated his mana circuit was. Suddenly, Han Seong-yun was in a different location again. Now he was in the world of Mirim. He could see his other self asking for all the leaders of the Mirim alliance to be summoned. His other self also said he would forgive everyone there if they followed his orders. Then someone appeared. He claimed to have heard about a madman dubbed the Sword Ghost roaming the Mirim. Upon seeing the figure directly, he admitted that the man fit the title of Sword Ghost perfectly. A fight broke out, and everyone in the Mirim was killed. The man who had previously fought against Han Seong-yun's other self was also severely injured. However, he was puzzled by the Han Seong-yun in front of him. Han Seong-yun had previously said he would forgive all the members of the Mirim alliance but ended up killing them all mercilessly. He wanted to know if Han Seong-yun felt no shame, but of course, it didn't affect him. Han Seong-yun said that careless people like them were just resources for him to fight. Resources that wouldn't tire him or make him sick. They were all just at that level for the other Han Seong-yun. At that moment, the assimilation level increased to 30% forcibly. The original Han Seong-yun felt pain. He also realized that after dozens of location changes in the mirror and after killing thousands of people and still holding strong, he had become like a monster shrouded in madness to become stronger. A mad monster that never lost. Inside the mirror, Han Seong-yun continued to come and kill in various dimensions. Even dimensions smaller than the Mirim. At that moment, the assimilation level continued to increase until it reached 50%. Han Seong-yun realized that if he continued like this until the assimilation level reached 100%, he would lose himself. At this point, he could already feel the extraordinary pleasure of being his mirrored self. Hearing that, this administrator was slightly annoyed because the White Crane administrator had said something too far. Nevertheless, Han Seong-yun still asked why the first administrator didn't inform them about the desire. Finally, with a heavy heart, the woman said, "Because I was afraid." The woman explained that perhaps at the moment Han Seong-yun underestimated himself, but the administrator had seen how obsessed the youth was with progress. So, for the contractor's development, the woman thought it best for the youth to go directly to the deepest desire trial and challenge it like an ant. However, the administrator couldn't deny that the reason I had no other choice but to do it was because Han Seong-yun had talent. However, this young man instead thought with a sad face that he had no talent at all. Yet the administrator explained that soon the youth would know how much he had underestimated himself because the trial on the 12th floor was related to talent. Talent is an achievement that cannot be changed and a gift given by the heavens. In the hunter world, it is divided into 3. Skill acquisition, stat increase, and trait enlightenment. All 3 are called the 3 gifts for hunters. And Han Seong-yun was not born with any of these 3 gifts. The youth remembered a past when he couldn't acquire skills, his expertise didn't increase, and he couldn't even get a unique trait. But after he entered the Tower of Trial, many things seemed to have changed, but in reality, they hadn't. The reality was that he was a talentless loser who couldn't develop. According to him, the iron-blooded monarch administrator was wrong about one thing. Han Seong-yun had talent. This young man sat in the lobby, lost in thought with a gloomy face. He thought that if he had talent, he would have already become a famous hunter even if he hadn't entered the tower. This young man remembered the words of the iron-blooded monarch administrator reminding him that the trial on the 12th floor was a battle against himself, so he would soon know what his abilities were like. Han Seong-yun opened the hologram screen and concluded that Trial 12 was about how he objectively saw himself. So this could be an opportunity to improve his fighting abilities. Han Seong-yun took a bottle of potion he received as a reward from the Japanese government after the Namgung-hyuk incident. It was a skill proficiency increasing potion. He had 3 bottles because Catherine gave him 1 bottle as a gift. After he consumed the potion, his skill proficiency increased to C. The skill he wanted to improve further was magic management. It was a skill Han Seong-yun obtained after hunting the Dark Monarch in the 10th floor trial. The youth thought that since this is the foundation of other skills, there's no harm in mastering this skill further. Now his mastery of magic management had increased by 10% and was still being increased. Then the reward he received from the 11th floor trial was a mirror that could serve as a reminder for challengers about who they are. When Han Seong-yun used the flame magic eye to look at the mirror, he saw a terrifying future shadow of himself. And Han Seong-yun had already suspected that. Han Seong-yun also acquired the fighting concentration skill, A+. This skill instilled A-class fighting experience and increased its mastery by 11%. According to Han Seong-yun, this was quite a good skill. The system appeared and announced that the topic of this trial was to surpass limits. The 12th floor trial would soon begin, and the completion deadline was 48 hours. The condition to pass this trial was to kill the simulated versions of challengers within the given time. The failure condition was the death of the audience or exceeding the time limit, and the reward for completing this trial was the ancient Emperor Ash Crown. Han Seong-yun immediately entered the room, and the system informed that the award given by the God of Darkness had sensed an intruder in the ancient palace. So a guardian fighter had been created. The intruder must think about how much they know about themselves. Because now the vampire Count Old Tailcoat had been replicated. And the challenger must kill another version of himself created by the God of Darkness. Han Seong-yun recalled the message from the iron-blooded monarch administrator reminding him that this imitator could not only mimic his appearance but could also copy Han Seong-yun's fighting experience. In other words, the imitation version of the youth also knew all the strategies he had used so far, and the imitator could even copy his talent. So Han Seong-yun was truly in danger if he underestimated his talent. Han Seong-yun quickly attacked his imitation and wanted to ascertain how great his talent had been all along. Upon hearing the name God of Darkness, Han Seong-yun wondered why he kept getting involved with the gods. This young man also felt that his imitation was so perfect that it looked terrifying. Based on the advice given by the iron-blooded monarch administrator and what he heard using his question voucher, it seemed that one replica could only copy one item. And the item chosen by the vampire Count Old Tailcoat was defense. Han Seong-yun immediately attacked his counterpart to see how great he was. Han Seong-yun immediately activated several skills and increased his speed by 70% to attack the creature. When Han Seong-yun used the fighting concentration skill, he felt as if time around him slowed down. His speed became so extraordinary that this black-haired youth smiled happily. Then he activated the burning sword power to attack his calm imitation. But in the last moments, his imitation suddenly moved aside quickly and wielded iron-blooded swords. Han Seong-yun had suspected his replica would use that sword and would likely use a counter-shield next. Sure enough, his imitation used both weapons. Han Seong-yun thought that the combination of these two weapons was the replica's only choice. But this young man was surprised when the replica changed its shield into a sword. Han Seong-yun was shocked to see this movement because he had never used dual swords. Han Seong-yun was amazed to see the imitation using such techniques in a real fight. Because changing the counter shield required a lot of mana and mental power. This was why Han Seong-yun didn't use this method. So he was surprised to see his imitation using such inefficient methods. Of course, Han Seong-yun himself had thought of using double swords like that, but he was still worried about using such techniques in a real fight where life was at stake. The Han Seong-yun imitation immediately leaped towards him and attacked him blindly. A fierce battle ensued between them. When swords clashed, creating ear-piercing clangs. At this point, Han Seong-yun thought that his imitation was superior in pure skill. Even several times, the attacks from his imitation hit Han Seong-yun's body, but this black-haired youth managed to dodge in time. Han Seong-yun thought that his replica could be so powerful because of his indomitable will skill. This ability enhanced his physical and mental concentration when facing stronger opponents. Once activated, enlightenment became easier to attain, and mental protection abilities were strengthened. Han Seong-yun knew he was superior in terms of items, but because of this indomitable will absorbed from Lucilian and used by the replica, it made his replica truly troublesome. Therefore, if the physical abilities of the replica were higher than Han Seong-yun's, and if the replica maximized its fighting concentration and demonstrated that transcendental focus, then everything would make sense. However, the biggest problem now was the swordsmanship employed by the current replica. The skills used by the replica were executed with twin swords, but it was undoubtedly his swordsmanship skill. Focused on analyzing his replica's abilities, Han Seong-yun became careless and was thrown to the hard floor. At this moment, Han Seong-yun was convinced that the swordsmanship skill used by his replica belonged to Nam-gong-hyuk. Although Han Seong-yun had only just met Nam-gong-hyuk, he remembered his abilities very well. It was a terrifying mastery that helped Han Seong-yun understand his arrogance in underestimating skills. It wasn't just a skill or power but a pure technique. This technique made Han Seong-yun wonder if what Namgung-hyuk said about its surpassing skills entirely was true. Since Namgung-hyuk's swordsmanship didn't rely on skills, Han Seong-yun assumed he couldn't learn the technique himself. Han Seong-yun now realized that the true talent spoken of by the iron-blooded monarch was about today. He realized that the system's assessment of the situation was not in his favor, even though he was still superior in that regard. Han Seong-yun saw his replica coming to attack him. But he was still immersed in thought, wondering if he had truly progressed. With frustration, he activated the fighting concentration that could increase the user's focus tenfold. With this skill, Han Seong-yun could counterattack his replica with full force. Another sword duel ensued between them. A fierce battle was inevitable, until eventually, Han Seong-yun sustained an injury to his waist. Han Seong-yun stepped back for a moment, thinking that the creature was not on his level, but its strength was monstrous. To confront such a formidable replica, Han Seong-yun activated his concentration to increase 15-fold. Swift as lightning, he moved from behind his replica and attempted to attack from above. Han Seong-yun even activated wings of steel to fly at maximum speed and raised his concentration to 17 times its normal level. Han Seong-yun screamed in rage and attacked his replica from above. But the replica moved swiftly, exploding its arms. Due to the explosion, Han Seong-yun's vision was obscured by smoke, and his attack missed the clone again. Han Seong-yun was frustrated that the creature could explode itself and escape like that. Unexpectedly, the clone was already standing behind Han Seong-yun, launching a substantial attack. In the final moments, Han Seong-yun thought he would die from such a swift attack. But quickly, he evaded with his concentration skill increased 20-fold. The system warned Han Seong-yun that he had entered a state of concentration that exceeded the limits. After standing up straight again, Han Seong-yun laughed suspiciously. He said this fight was very annoying because he had almost died. Han Seong-yun's laughing eyes now turned terrifying. His eyes turned red. He cursed because the clone was playing with him so badly and almost killed him. At this moment, Han Seong-yun's body was being controlled by his alter ego from the future. This happened because Han Seong-yun had entered a state of concentration that exceeded the limits. As a result, he would experience significant mental recoil effects.